We all remember Yu-Gi-Oh like this, or even like this. But in general, whether it's any of those options or every other generation since, we all know Yu-Gi-Oh for the use of the Duel Monsters card game that they all play. It's the heart and soul of Yu-Gi-Oh, the real bread and butter. But there was a time where Yu-Gi-Oh wasn't really even about a card game, but rather about a different type of game, or should I say games plural, where the consequences can come at the cost of one's mind, or worse, one's life. The original run of Yu-Gi-Oh, which can be read through the first 7 volumes of the manga, or viewed through what is dubbed as Season 0 of the series, is a very different experience than what you may perceive Yu-Gi-Oh as if you've never looked into it. This isn't the Yu-Gi-Oh you generally would think of when someone brings up Yu-Gi-Oh. While it features the same characters you basically come to know and love throughout the regular Yu-Gi-Oh series, these are slightly different versions of them that eventually were slightly changed and molded in to fit what Yu-Gi-Oh would become after it. I first took a look into the origins of Yu-Gi-Oh and what Season 0 was back in my original Yu-Gi-Oh series deep dive, but I never went into a great amount of detail regarding it, and along with that, the original manga. While what Yu-Gi-Oh became is something that I love a lot and means so much to me, I feel it means even more to me because of how much this version affected me growing up, and how it built a stronger attachment for me to Yu-Gi-Oh as a series overall. Aside from the main TV show and the trading cards, the manga is how I personally really fell in love with Yu-Gi-Oh, more specifically manga in general. It was my first ever manga that was purchased for me, the first one that I read through, and this is my original one right here that I got from back in the day. Ooh, first printing. So when I did find out that they actually animated these pre-Yu-Gi-Oh Yu-Gi-Oh stories in the 90s, I sought out the series immediately. So while many others know about Season 0 and the real origins of Yu-Gi-Oh, there are still people today that don't, and I have found myself surprised that when speaking about Season 0 in the past, how many people had no clue about it or only vaguely know what it is, and don't really know what it's all about. So today, I would like to extend my original Yu-Gi-Oh series where I covered the first 5 seasons of the show by jumping back in to take a cheeky little deep dive to speak on Season 0 some more, as well as go over the differences between the manga and the anime adaptation. It's a very different and darker experience than what Yu-Gi-Oh would come to be known for, so whether you do know what it's all about or have never experienced the actual origins of Yu-Gi-Oh, I hope you enjoy taking a look back on what technically started it all for the late great Kazuki Takahashi. Hold on, we just got a letter. A sponsored letter. I wonder who it's from. When I think of denim, I think of comfortability without compromise. Denim! I'm talking about denim that is flattering and comfortable, all at an accessible price. Denim! Denim that elevates your confidence to the next level. Denim! We're talking traditional stretch, straight, rigid, and slim styles, or even baggy and trucker styles. With plenty of color options like Pacifica, Santa Cruz, Tahoe, black, washed black, cream, and more, the perfect denim fit is out there for you. Denim! You can get your first pair of denim for just $29 by going to fabletics.com/JordanFringe or by scanning the QR code on screen and becoming a new VIP member. On top of this, becoming a new VIP member will get you 70 to 80% off your first order, as well as access to 20 to 50% off all products all day, every day. Plus, there are VIP only sales that happen every single month, and your VIP purchases go towards credit, allowing you to unlock a 2-piece outfit or any single item up to $100. And you also have the option to skip or pause the monthly payment between the 1st and the 5th of the month, and still shop the VIP prices up to 50% off the non-VIP price. Denim! I'd never really been a big fan of wearing denim until Fabletics, but Fabletics does denim differently. From the jeans to the jackets, Fabletics has me feeling right for the season, being dripped out in denim. Denim! So click my link down below, that's fabletics.com/JordanFringe, or scan the QR code on screen to unlock some amazing deals. Get yourself some denim that feels good to wear and looks great, along with all the other benefits that come with signing up to be a VIP member. Over the past year, Fabletics has changed how I view the clothes that I wear. I genuinely love Fabletics, so to have them as a sponsor blows my mind. Also, I truly appreciate everyone who has supported them using my link. It means a lot to me, so thank you so much, and thank you to Fabletics for sponsoring this video. Denim! Now, to get to Season 0 of the series, we need to understand the original manga run of it. While the US wouldn't start getting these manga volumes until May of 2003, which is after Yu-Gi-Oh as we mainly know it would already come out swinging hard in the US, this manga originally started in 1996 in Japan, being serialized in Shueisha's weekly Shonen Jump magazine. On the surface, these were stories told about a kid who enjoys playing various types of games. From board games to card games and even to puzzles, Yugi Moto is all about it. But he's not someone who has a whole ton of confidence in himself himself or has a lot of friends, so we focus on him after he ends up solving the puzzle piece placements of this ancient relic called the Millennium Puzzle, and from there, his life is changed forever, with the spirit of an ancient pharaoh whose personality takes over this kind-hearted student and plays games with dangerous consequences with the various bad people or those with darkness in their hearts that cause problems for Yugi and his friends or acquaintances. As the series progresses, we see Yugi find more confidence in himself and build a tighter friend group through the often dark and sometimes wacky situations we find these characters in. Within these stories featuring what would become the iconic friend group surrounding Yugi, some of their names are different, as it was all before they were translated specifically for the regular anime when that would eventually come to the States. So while Yugi-Moto is still technically Yugi-Moto, characters like Taya and Tristan are their original names of Anzu and Honda. And of course, the goat of all goats, Joey Wheeler, is known here as Jinochi. Before we get to each of the episodes in the anime, we need to understand what the base concept of the manga was really all about.
Fine, I accept your challenge. It's time to duel!
To understand how different Yu-Gi-Oh truly started out, we have to look at the original 7 volumes of the manga, where throughout Weekly Shonen Jump in Japan, the series, which translates to The King of Games, would be released as a horror manga. This world we get brought into and the characters within it are much like we would see in the original series that you'd be most familiar with. We just wouldn't have them as we know them in a traditional sense just yet. It focuses on Yugi and the variety of games he likes to play, and through the spirit of the pharaoh coming to him with the Millennium Puzzle, another type of game starts being played when it comes to all the bad actors out there in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh that do cross Yugi or his friends' paths. These shadow games, if you will, would elevate the stakes of whatever's at hand, whether that was getting stabbed in the hand, having your mind completely corrupted and destroyed, sight censorship, poisonous ice puck explosions, or even burning alive an escaped prisoner who holds our main characters at gunpoint. The results, more often than not, were deadly, as Yugi, or the embodiment of this game-craving pharaoh, would make sure that those who deserve punishment would be punished, and that made it satisfying to see, rather than just having this level of lethalness for the sake of it. More horrifying than the horror found in these early manga volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh here is if you were a fan of what Yu-Gi-Oh soon would become, and then you go back and discover where it actually all came from, seeing these sometimes more adult situations play out and your perspective on these characters you know and love being flipped a bit. And I feel that for many in the US, and a lot of other parts in the world for that matter, discovered these original stories for Yu-Gi-Oh post getting into the main anime or card game. So there definitely was a bit of a shock here when you know Yugi and his friends were playing duel monsters and not Yugi trying to stop a serial bomber from killing Anzu. As the manga was starting to find an audience and having an ability to connect with the readers as the concept of the series was interesting enough to keep you invested, if not for the sheer fact of seeing how Yugi's opponents would be dealt with, things would slowly start to change once another major connection happened between the readers and what they loved about the series. Yugi here though is portrayed as this weaker, smaller than most kid who becomes this hero-like champion of various different games until some sort of justice is dished out in graphic form. It was inspiring in how it dealt with friendship, weird with how it handled the more adult circumstances and setups, but most of all captivating with how it began to world build, bringing in more characters to set up parts of who we'd know them as in the main series proper. And while the shift would begin to happen thanks to the popularity of the Duel Monsters card game that would be played in the manga, and ultimately turn Yu-Gi-Oh into what we know it is today, everything else that was in the original 7 volumes worth of stories was really cool to dig into. Shonen Jump, especially when it came to the United States with monthly Shonen Jump, meant a lot to me growing up, and aside from the Yu-Gi-Oh cards that would sometimes be included, being able to read new chapters of Yu-Gi-Oh along with every other manga series in it, month to month, made falling in love with collecting, reading, and loving this manga something so easy to do. I talk more about my introduction into it all in my Shonen Jump video from a while back, so I won't just reiterate it all here, but Yu-Gi-Oh just became this great vessel for me to get into manga, and I really appreciate seeing and getting to understand the weirder origins of the series, and funny enough, really enjoying it for what it was. It holds a special place in my heart for both thinking it's amazing and just overall feeling nostalgic for it. That appreciation extends to the animated version of what would come to be known as Season 0 of Yu-Gi-Oh, which would end up being produced by Toei Animation. So let's go ahead and officially dive into the anime adaptation of the manga and see what all the differences between both mediums are. We start off the series in Egypt with the discovery of this special golden box that the archaeologists have a weird experience with, believing it to be related to something they refer to as the Shadow Games, claiming it to be the puzzle of darkness as we then jump cut to Yugi, who is a student in class at Domino High School. While it's lunchtime and the other students are spending their time socializing or playing sports, Yugi finds himself alone at his desk building a house of cards. But once that falls over and he declines going out to play basketball with the others as he says he would just be the reason that their team would lose, he thinks to himself about his want for having a friend or two to play some sort of games with. Something that's more his speed, you know? Then we see him pull out that same gold box from Egypt, claiming it to be his personal treasure, one that he always carries with him but claims that he should also be keeping it a secret. So then, why are you carrying it around and then blatantly pulling it out in class to solve its mysteries? It would be a shame if another student came around and then totally made things all worse for you right now. Jinochi, right on cue, ends up snatching the box from Yugi, essentially bullying him and teasing him over this box and that he's not really being a man, which is where you can first see that really big height difference between Yugi and everyone else, with Jinochi easily being able to play keep away by himself so Yugi can't get it back. When pressured by Jinochi to come at him and be a man for the sake of the box, Yugi screams out that he hates fighting and violence. And Jinochi's like, alright, relax, why are you yelling? I'm right here. As Honda then makes his introduction, being at odds with Jinochi, as he wants to do good and be this role model student, with Jinochi then teasing him over this. Jinochi, however, gets bored of talking with Honda, asking Yugi if he can take a look in the box, to which the kind-hearted nature of this kid has him saying, sure, but just don't lose any of the pieces inside, it's very important to him. When Jinochi looks into it, he's not very impressed, calling it boring, with Anzu then appearing to take the box from them and bring it back over to Yugi, calling them out for bullying him, but both Jinochi and Honda are distracted over the fact of a girl named Miho appearing, who at first mistakenly thought Anzu was yelling at her, but that wasn't the case, and Miho is just kind of sad because of not bringing in her own food for lunch, and the line in the cafeteria being way too long. This causes both boys here to go off and try and find her some food because, well, they're boys. But mainly it was a way for Honda to be at the service of another student, while Jinochi tags along to avoid more yelling from Anzu. I would like to point out that I think it's pretty cute to see how happy Yugi does get when Anzu comes around, excitingly calling out her name, and one thing I do love about Season 0 is the closeness factor that these characters share throughout it, coming off in a more slice-of-life comedic is there something more here or not type of way, whereas in the regular Yu-Gi-Oh series following all of this, it really feels more just like a chill friendship that at some points has something more going on, but it's way less focused on. For Jinochi and Honda's little adventure now, they end up running into Ushio, who is basically this strict hall monitor that's even taller and more menacing than how someone like Jinochi looks to Yugi, making it a good way to show this scaling of power and what's a real threat or not. Yeah, Jinochi is a bit of a bully, but he's not like overly threatening, he just talks a big game, as where someone like Ushio has this level of aura around him that makes you know not to mess with him. Ushio, after overhearing a bit of their conversation, makes it very clear that bullying is bad, okay, and then walks away, making it feel like he's not the type of person who is going to just remind you of the same thing twice in such a nice way if he has to. In the meantime, we see that Anzu ends up hanging out with Yugi, getting some time to talk to him about sticking up for himself, but when the conversation leads to Yugi looking a little too down in the dumps, Anzu switches things up, wanting to know what the box is all about anyway, with Yugi very excitingly getting to explain to her that this is some sort of puzzle and that his grandpa owns a game store where they have games from all over the world in it, but Yugi found this box covered in dust and left in the corner, getting permission to keep it, mentioning the lore about it being discovered in Egypt. What had Yugi so curious in the first place to want to solve the puzzle in general is that on the front of the box, it basically says whoever solves this puzzle shall be granted one wish. As they're having fun discussing things, we cut back to Jinochi, who ends up revealing that he had taken one of the pieces of the puzzle, and it's like the main piece from it too. All this after Yugi expressed how important to him not losing any pieces was. So now with Jinochi already in a sour mood from Anzu yelling at him, Honda annoying him, and Ushio low-key threatening him, he talks to Honda about stealing this piece from Yugi, leading to Honda calling him a scumbag essentially, questioning if he even has a conscience, before Jinochi reminds him to go and figure out the food situation for Miho. And I love that there's just this quick cutaway to her just standing there going, man, I'm so hungry. Now alone, Jinochi decides to toss this piece out of the school window and into a canal below, putting this anger towards Yugi based on him getting pissed off about Yugi's childish nature. With the school day coming to an end, Yugi gets stopped by Ushio, who insists that he should be Yugi's bodyguard based on these claims of bullying that has happened to him, with Yugi downplaying anything about it and not even truly considering Jinochi a bully in the first place. Regardless, Ushio is still keeping his eyes and ears out for this stuff. He has his own way of dealing with things. We next end up getting some more lore about the history of the puzzle thanks to Yugi's grandpa, as Anzu goes over to the game shop after school with Yugi as we hear about how all the others who dealt with the box in Egypt ended up dying in mysterious ways, leading to to Grandpa having this little faith in Yugi even solving the puzzle and putting it together, which kind of sucks to see Grandpa be like this. But you know what also sucks about him here? Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but Gramps here in Season 0, and I guess just in general the Japanese version of Yu-Gi-Oh, is ridiculously pervy. Anyway, not to drag on that point for too long, Grandpa reads more from the front of the box, talking about the person who solves it being able to gain the powers and knowledge of darkness, trying to freak Yugi out a bit more, but that doesn't stop him. He's still going to try and solve it, ending up working on it all night. We see that Grandpa doesn't really want him to finish solving it based on this inheritance of the Shadow Games themselves, but Yugi's nearly there, as we see the puzzle starting to really take shape as he's passed out at his desk. The next day at school, Ushio ends up taking Yugi to see something he did for him, as we see both Jinochi and Honda, now beaten and bruised, laid up against the wall, as Ushio acted as a bodyguard for him, wanting to teach them a lesson for bullying, which, by the way, Honda really wasn't, but that's besides the point. Jinochi asks if Yugi's happy now, but Yugi claims that he didn't ask him to do this. But then Ushio pushes Yugi out of the way to beat up Jinochi some more, causing Yugi to take a stand now, stepping in front of them to protect them, as Ushio tries encouraging him to join in on beating them up instead, but Yugi claims them as his friends. Ushio is all like, alright then, I guess you're weird too, and in fact, you need to now pay me for my services as a bodyguard, saying that he needs 200,000 yen for it, which at the time would roughly convert to about $1,600. And what the heck? What average high school kid had that much money to begin with, especially in the 90s? There's just no way Yugi here could afford that, let alone anyone else in this whole school probably. So now Yugi's stressing, not sure how he can come up with the money, but on the bright side, that puzzle is nearly complete. But on the not so bright side, again, Yugi realizes that he's missing the final piece. We also see while Jinochi and Honda are walking together that Jinochi is feeling a type of way regarding what Yugi said earlier when he stuck up for them, having the words about friendship ring in his ear. In the meantime, while Yugi's frantically retracing his steps and looking for this final piece, he ends up running into Ushio, who asks about his fee, with Yugi saying that there's no way that he can pay that. At the same time, we see that Jinochi had jumped into the canal to get that final puzzle piece back, with Honda noticing that Yugi is being walked somewhere by Ushio. So once Jinochi gets back out, the two of them go after Ushio, coming across him now having roughed Yugi up, much like Ushio did to them earlier. They both run over to help Yugi and make sure that he's okay, with Jinochi placing the final puzzle piece in Yugi's hand, as they then go and try and stick up for him, charging into a fight against Ushio. Yugi inner monologues about how the true wish he did make seems to be coming true regardless of the puzzle, and that's him wanting true friends, feeling a sense of that from what Jinochi and Honda are doing. Ushio ends up beating them up again and heads out, but Yugi realizes that Jinochi placed the final piece of the puzzle back in his hand, with him now reaching out to push it into place. As it now begins to glow, it shoots a beam of light into his forehead, as we then see Yugi's shadow grow tall on the wall behind him, with a symbolic Egyptian eye marking appearing on the forehead. This is like the dude's version of a magical transformation sequence, with us seeing little Yugi fall into the shadow, as once this is all over, we hear Yugi call out that it's time for a game, as all of a sudden Ushio is no longer on the ground, he's hung out on the side of a building by some rope, as this new version of Yugi, Yami Yugi, stands on top of it, claiming that what Ushio wants is up there. With him not even questioning what just happened, he just begins climbing up because he just wants that money. Rather than Ushio just getting the money that easily, Yami Yugi challenges him to a shadow game, showing off that they are both attached to this rope as he slides down to balance them at equal hanging heights, with a line of playing cards spread out as well, with them needing to take turns flipping over the cards and only climbing up the rope based on the number on the card, which will cause the other person to be lowered by that same amount. The first person to reach the top wins the prize, which here is the money. This goes back and forth until Yami Yugi's basically at the top and Ushio is at the lowest point he can be, as he flips his final card and it ends up being the Joker card, which counts for nothing. And rather than playing fair and losing, Ushio says screw it and starts trying to climb back up, as Yami Yugi warns him of the consequences for doing so, but Ushio tries to swing at him, as then Yami Yugi starts falling towards the ground with a smile on his face. It's very freaky, but you know, he's the good guy, right? I think. When Ushio realizes that the money was actually just some more playing cards, Yami Yugi says that the door of darkness has been opened, as we see Ushio fall to the ground, as Yami Yugi, who has caught himself from falling further, says that the purpose of these shadow games is to see a person's true character, and for Ushio's own greed, he shall now be consumed by the darkness, with him falling into the canal that is also infested with some sort of monsters that end up presumably eating him. Now, you're probably thinking two different things from all this. One, that was pretty dark, and two, that's not how it happened in the manga. There are differences from the manga version to the anime version, with here that the game they are playing in the manga being in relation to a knife that the character shows goes off as a threat. He ends up cheating in that game as well, opting to try and get Yami Yugi with his knife, and because of this, Yami Yugi ends up punishing his greed with him only seeing things as money, where in reality he's just playing with and tossing up in the air leaves and garbage. So Yami Yugi essentially messes up his mind rather than just basically killing him. And also, for the end of this episode, we see that he didn't kill Ushio. It kind of ends in a similar way with his mind being messed up as he's screaming and crying on the ground thinking that what he is seeing is real, and the rest of his friends are like, hey, what's wrong with him? I don't know what's going on. So some similarities there, a little bit different of an execution, but there's also so many other changes here, like the order of events of when Jinochi got the puzzle piece back, how it was given back to Yugi and where Yugi finished the puzzle, and so much more. So this series is not a one-for-one take on the manga. There are plenty of changes ranging from small details to full-on shadow game setups. And for the ending of the episode, we do get a really nice moment between Yugi and Jinochi, where Jinochi expresses that he has a treasure of his own now. It's something that him and Yugi can share, but it's something you can't see, with him expressing that it is friendship. And if that's not the sweetest ending to this, then I don't know what is. Either way, that's basically the first episode of the series. Overall, I do think it's a great introduction into this version's world of Yu-Gi-Oh! We get to meet the whole main cast and understand a bit about them, and get set up for what all this Yami Yugi and Shadow Games business is all about.
We'll see about that! I will destroy them all!
Continuing on from the aftermath of Yugi unlocking the powers of the puzzle, we see that his grandpa is worried about the warnings of this dark knowledge infesting Yugi's brain, but Yugi makes it seem like it's all good, and that there's nothing out of the ordinary that should make grandpa worry. While that's all going on, a prisoner by the name of Tetsu ends up escaping from prison and begins trying to go on a crime spree. I say trying because every time he comes up empty-handed. It seems some other criminal has beat him to the heist that he was going to go on. Back at the school, Jinochi ends up thinking that Anzu and Miho are being a bit weird, shadily going and doing something after school, as he tells Yugi and Honda that they may be participating in some escort-related services, to which Honda could never see his crush, Miho, in such a light, as he goes and follows them in the hopes of protecting her specifically. But then he starts joining in on these after-school escapades after whatever happened from that. So after joking about thinking Honda has joined them as some sort of escort, Jinochi and Yugi follow all of them and end up at Burger World, as inside the restaurant they are greeted by all three of them who now worked there, as they seemingly get embarrassed about having a job like this and are worried that Jinochi is going to let the whole school know. And you may be thinking to yourself that this is nothing to be embarrassed about. When I was in school, getting a part-time job was looked at as being, more adult, a way to have some money of your own, and getting a chance to learn about the real world beyond school. But here, Jinochi brings up that the school rules forbid students getting part-time jobs. So technically, all three of them here are breaking those rules, all for their own reasons, with Honda only doing it because Miho wants expensive things. Either way, their manager here reminds them that these are customers and they have to snap back into their roles as employees. We get to hear about why Anzu is working here, as after she graduates, she wants to have the money to go and study dancing in New York, which aligns with the great dancer she is that we get to see when she's hanging out with Yugi in the main anime series down the road from here. As Jinochi and Yugi are eating their burgers, an investigator comes into the restaurant looking for the criminal that escaped and claiming him to be a master of disguise, and that he's potentially hiding here as a customer. So while this escaped criminal is a criminal, the other crimes he tried to commit he couldn't because some other criminal beat him to it, but he's still getting blamed for them. Either way, he's still bad and apparently has a gun on him. And potentially a dead giveaway factor as to who the criminal is here is based on that criminal getting hit with a baton on his right calf when escaping, leaving a possible bruise or mark there, with Anzu coming up with an idea to spill out a basket of toy cars that go all over the restaurant so that they can go and pick them up from under the tables and sneakily try and find this marking on any of the customers' legs. Because all of this is what these high schoolers totally should be doing in such a situation with an armed and dangerous criminal. Well, it's really Anzu, Jinochi, and Honda looking, with Miho and Yugi hanging back and watching as Yugi calls them brave, kinda wishing he had more of that instinctual bravery himself. Anyway, the plan didn't really help. Anzu gets too handsy with a rude customer who has his feet on the table, as the investigator explains to the customers what's really going on. The only way the criminal gets outed is after they realize he's allergic to eggs, as then Anzu talks about the buns for the burgers having egg in them, leading to the disguised criminal to freak out and get caught by the detective. Anzu lied about the eggs in the buns on purpose for this guy to expose himself, but even though they have the right criminal here, that's not where this whole thing ends, as Tetsu falls on top of the restaurant manager and then notices that that guy has a bruise on his right calf, as he then rips the manager's shirt when getting back up, exposing this giant spider tattoo on his back, and then calling him the Yellow Spider, but like that spider was like purple or something. Whatever, who cares? This new criminal is the other criminal that has been on the loose and committing crimes that Tetsu has been getting blamed for that he didn't commit but wanted to. He takes Anzu hostage at gunpoint, as he then calls Tetsu the Hedgehog as his criminal nickname. And you gotta appreciate the time where there was all these criminals that had these cool nicknames, because people committing crimes today just end up being some dude named Eric or something. If your name is Eric and you have a criminal record, let us know in the comments below. Anyway, this guy explains to Tetsu how he knew what crimes he was going to commit, leading to how he committed them before him, as Tetsu remembers that he's been eating here before he went to commit those crimes, and ate these burgers no problem, feeling stupid that he outed himself over something he already knew wasn't true. But Tetsu really isn't important anymore because we're focusing on this other guy, as this other criminal puts a blindfold on Anzu, sitting her in a booth next to him as he demands that everyone stays on the ground aside from Yugi because he looks small and weak and he can have this unassuming kid do what he commands, wanting him to bring some booze and some smokes, with Anzu worried about Yugi being in trouble from this, leading to her being slapped in the face by the criminal, which was a big mistake, as Yugi's bravery moment comes out in the form of Yami Yugi taking over, initiating a shadow game with the criminal. For the setup of the game, Yami explains that they can each move only one finger of their choice, with the criminal choosing his right hand index finger, showing off that he's ready to use it to pull the trigger of his gun. Yami ends up choosing his right hand thumb, which confuses the criminal as to what Yami could even do with it, as he just starts pouring his alcohol into the glass in front of him. Yami then says once the game starts, you can do whatever you want, as we see the criminal's finger on the trigger, but when it does start, Yami uses his thumb to flick open and ignite the lighter, reaching over the table to light the guy's cigarette as he waits to shoot because he'll take having his cig lit for him since he can't use his other fingers right now. Yami then tells him to keep the lighter, dropping it right on top of his pouring hand as the booze is still pouring out and beginning to overflow, and with it being highly flammable, he's trapped from moving his hand, as if he does, it could lead to him setting himself on fire. Yami starts rescuing Anzu from the situation, as the guy is currently stuck with what to do, knowing that firing the gun will shake the lighter and cause it to fall and spark the fire, but instead of playing by the rules of the game, he uses his other hand to place the gun on the table so that he can just grab the lighter, saving himself from burning. But Yami won't let cheaters win, so when the guy picks his gun back up to fire it at Yami, it's soaked in booze, causing it to ignite when he fires it, which in turn sets himself on fire. But this is just an illusion that only the criminal can see and feel. He's not really dying here, it's just the punishment of the shadow game. So while the day is saved here, the big moments to take away from all of this are what Anzu experienced while being blindfolded, noting that she heard a distinct difference in the voice of who was saving her versus what she knows Yugi sounds like, as she wonders who that was or if there's anything deeper to it. Now, when it comes to the manga, holy moly, things are way different. For the story there, the escaped criminal is the main bad guy that we deal with, and the setup in getting to the whole Burger World incident is mostly the same, minus the existence of Miho and not having Honda involved. It's just Anzu working there. The criminal, who has his prison number of 777 tattooed on his head and is feeling like the stars are aligning for him based on him escaping, just ends up coming across Burger World, coming in to take Anzu hostage in order to just get some free food to eat before he continues his escape, which is just kind of dumb to risk your escape over a few dollar burger, but to each their own. The same type of shadow game is played with the lighter being put on his hand and making it stuck, pouring out booze all over the table and himself, but rather than cheating, the guy just questions his luck, dropping his cigarette from his mouth onto the booze and lighting himself on fire. Oh, and here, it's not just an illusion. We know that this fire, and the criminal's presumed death from it, is real thanks to Jinochi witnessing it happen, calling out that the idiot criminal set himself on fire. So it's a way more brutal ending to that story, versus what we see in the anime itself. Also for Anzu, when questioning the voice she heard who was responsible for saving her, she is thinking to herself that whoever it was, she's fallen in love with them, claiming to never forget that voice. This is one of the early on iconic moments from the manga that really stuck with me from the first volume for how it handles the characters, the danger of the situation, and the final outcome, amping up the gruesomeness of these shadow games. It's just crazy that the guy who doesn't cheat ends up really being burned alive, while the cheater in the anime ends up only thinking he is, but you know, whatever, I'm just saying. One of my favorite moments in the manga is here where Anzu squirts a bottle of ketchup onto Jinochi and Yugi's burger that spells out a warning to them about if they ever tell anyone that she works here, that they're dead. There's just such a menacing look from Anzu in the manga that's burned into my brain, and I am happy that it was translated well enough into the anime. I do love how sincere Jinochi comes off in this moment though, as after understanding why Anzu is working here in the first place, and her not wanting this to get her in trouble at school, Jinochi verbally promises that he wouldn't do that to her. He wouldn't get her in trouble, and if he did, he promises that he'll force himself to eat 10,000 burgers, which to some may be a good thing. Doesn't sound like the worst punishment, but all that to say, it was a good early moment in the manga that shows us that Jinochi is a good dude at the end of the day, and I am glad it comes off just as sincere in the anime as well. Now, there are a whole bunch of moments that didn't make it from the manga into the anime, or moments that were completely changed from the manga to the anime, and there are a lot of these moments that I really loved growing up and that really means something to me now and I feel so nostalgic about that just aren't in the anime, or they're just completely changed for it, that you really do only get to experience now through the manga medium. So coming out here on the channel for members only is going to be a bonus video where I go over some of my favorite moments from the manga, but really get to see some of the big moments that didn't get an anime adaptation, as well as even a whole character that was just cut out and never given a chance to shine in the anime. So feel free to become a member of the channel to get access to this bonus video once it drops here in the next day or so, and I truly appreciate everyone who has become a member to help support the channel. Episode 3 really ends up being this loose proof of concept for how the regular first episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime starts, with it being about this card game called Duel Monsters that a lot of people are into, with Yugi here teaching the others at school how to play it, as we also see that there is a special playing field that can affect the monster that you play by changing its stats depending on where it's placed on the field. We also get our introduction to Seto Kaiba, who we see as this wealthy kid that is going around and collecting all these rare cards, transferring between schools to acquire them, as we see at the start with him getting the Dark Magician card. Also, yeah, he has green hair here for whatever reason, but anyway, when he transfers to the school our main characters are at, he ends up hitting it off with Yugi, as they bond over their interest in duel monsters, with Kaiba coming off as a nice person in general at the moment. He invites Yugi and the others over to his mansion as we see so many rare cards that he's collected, wondering if Yugi has any of his own, with Anzu then noting that Yugi's grandpa has a shop with rare cards in it as they all head over there now, with the rarest card his grandpa has being the Blue Eyes White Dragon, shocking Kaiba to see it, knowing that he needs this card in his collection no matter what, offering Yugi's grandpa a whole briefcase of rare cards as a trade for it, but he doesn't accept, claiming that the card means a lot to him as it was a gift from a close friend. Of course, Kaiba begins to obsess over this card, wanting to figure out a way to get his hands on it. The next day at school, Kaiba had Yugi bring that card in so that he can have a chance to look at it once more, but in doing this, he sneakily tries to swap the Blue Eyes for a fake version of it, thinking he could get away with it, but we see that Jinochi and Honda notice him doing this. At the end of the day, we see Yugi walking home somewhat sad while looking at the card, learning from Anzu that Jinochi and Honda went to play some duel monsters with Kaiba. But what's really happening is that they find Kaiba on the roof of the school as they're confronting him about what they saw, accusing him of stealing the Blue Eyes card from Yugi. This ends up getting physical, with Kaiba's bodyguards beating up both of them, as Yugi ends up getting there right after, seeing them defeated as Kaiba stands there smirking, claiming that he's being accused of something that he didn't do, but Yugi, in the most innocent and nicest way possible, tells him to basically cut the crap, saying he knew that he switched out the card and didn't say anything, as he was just hoping that Kaiba would do the right thing and return it properly to him, and it would have been water under the bridge, as Yugi now begs for the card back, but Kaiba pushes him down, as his bodyguards continue roughing him up, eventually causing Yami Yugi to come out, beat up the bodyguards, and head after where Kaiba went, with Jinochi and Honda waking up to the bodyguards being knocked out in front of them, which only confuses them as to what just happened. Yami catches up with Kaiba and challenges him to a Shadow Game version of Duel Monsters, with Kaiba feeling this different presence coming from Yugi, and for the Shadow Game version of Duel Monsters, they each will have 2,000 life points, and whoever hits 0 first loses. So, you know, a basic standard version of how the card game itself would originally work. But in the duel, the creatures on the cards are coming to life, changing the dynamic impact of the battle, as well as laying out that initial seed of an idea inside of Kaiba's mind for how Kaiba Corp would eventually create the holographic technology that we would be used to seeing for the regular Yu-Gi-Oh anime. We get to see some iconic monsters from the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh make their first technical appearances, like Skull Servant, Battle Ox, and even Mystical Elf, who for some reason also has green hair just like Kaiba. We also get to see Summoned Skull as Yugi plays it as his strongest card, and geez, this is the most terrifying looking version of Summoned Skull I have ever seen. Kaiba tries using the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but it has this struggle in wanting to listen and work for Kaiba, as he doesn't have the heart of the cards, so it just melts or something, with Yami then using Monster Reborn to bring it back to his side of the field, nearly defeating Kaiba, as we see him scrambling to find a way to end the match in a draw instead of losing, resulting in no punishment happening from the Shadow Game. But what did happen was this marking the start of the heated rivalry between Kaiba and Yugi, so that's pretty cool. I love looking back on an episode like this to see the origins of how we actually got to the original episode of Yu-Gi-Oh for the main anime, as we can look here to see all the little things that did transition over from this series and be retooled and used in the regular anime, as well as kind of see what gets cut out about and what just completely changed. Speaking of changes, there were plenty of changes made here from the original manga story. In the manga, we actually see that it's Yugi's grandpa that is talking about the Duel Monsters card game to Yugi and his friends, only at this point it's not called Duel Monsters yet, with it being referred to as magic and wizards. Magic. Wizards. What does it all mean? Kaiba then also just appears as a character that enters into the shop, and as someone who already goes to the same school as all of them. He also has his Kaiba attitude to him that makes him already mean to Jinochi, starting the hatred those two will have against one another for a very long time. He sees the Blue Eyes White Dragon in the shop, tries to offer the briefcase of cards, and it's rejected all the same. Well, maybe just done a bit more dramatically. Then the next day at school, he tries swapping the card, but Yugi directly notices and ends up confronting him. But instead of a softer school bag hitting him, Kaiba hits Yugi with this heavy metal briefcase, something he still likes to do to people like we see in the Yu-Gi-Oh R manga. In their shadow duel of magic and wizards, Kaiba actually loses here, with the punishment turning him into a card, which would be a similar premise to what Pegasus does throughout the regular anime's Duelist Kingdom arc. Being trapped in this card brings Kaiba into the world of the creatures themselves, where Yami admits that he'll probably experience death in this world, but regardless of that, it's all just in his head, a nightmare that he has to experience, something that won't really kill him, with Yami hoping this will help Kaiba learn about the heart of the cards, or something.
The title of King of Capsule Monsters. I think I've warmed up enough.
Now for this next episode, it's a good example of how the anime can vastly differ from the manga, as we aren't seeing little changes here and there, because this episode is in fact an anime-only episode. Here we get to focus a bit on Honda's love for Miho, having him waiting to meet her as he thinks that it could be related to them being together, her confessing her love for him, but instead it's for a favor, one that he ends up willing to do anyway because of how all she has to do is bat her eyes and talk about what she wants, and Honda will do it. This bit reminds me of the one time we get to see Miho in the manga, as she goes by the nickname of Ribbon based on the ribbon that she wears in her hair. Her appearance in the manga is in chapter 7, which by the way is another storyline that happens in a different episode, so I'll get to all this later. But here we see that Honda has this big crush on Ribbon and ultimately gets rejected by her. So here in the anime, it reminded me a lot of that moment of these two meeting up and Honda having these big lovey-dovey feelings for her. While Miho in the anime is technically based on Ribbon here in the manga, the character's personality is completely different, and obviously she has this major role to play in the series compared to her just basically being a one-off background character in the manga. What Honda agrees to is waiting in line to hopefully get this limited edition D-Shock watch for her. He's not too thrilled about it, but he'll do what he has to do, you know? Yugi happens to walk by, spots Honda as he asks Yugi to wait in line for him for a moment so that he can go and use the restroom. Honda's gone long enough that Yugi ends up having to be the one to get the watch at the end, and luckily it was the last one, but unluckily that causes others in line to be upset. But none more upset than this poorly dripped out hypebeast watch collector who gets all up in Yugi's face about him not even being into the watch collecting hobby, and that he's a poser and doesn't deserve it. But Honda comes back around to save Yugi from this guy for now. Later on, once Yugi and Honda stop by an arcade, the same hypebeast guy ends up pickpocketing Honda, but before he fully sneaks off, Yugi spots him and tries to go confront him. This goes about as well as you'd think. Yugi gets beat up, but Yami Yugi comes out to save the day, just in time, challenging the guy to a shadow game where the winner will be whoever can stop the timer closest to 10 seconds. And naturally, this guy loses, and then decides he'll try and just steal the watch, but you know, cheating isn't allowed, so Yami gets to show off a bit of the body horror aspects of the OG Yu-Gi-Oh stories by turning this guy into a watch, essentially, showing that his innards are watch gears now, and he has fully ascended into the watch god. I mean, just look at his eyes. What else would you call him now? All we get to see for this person afterwards is a glimpse at his watch collection now being all smashed up, with his mind being pretty broken, as his partner is crying out his name. So that's pretty dark in many other ways. I don't know if he'll ever be okay, but hey, Miho gets her watch, so that's good, hooray! There's also this brief moment early on in the episode where we see Grandpa feeling happy as he sees that Yugi has all these friends now, and is excited to go out and be with them at school or outside of school, and I just found it to be a really sweet, sentimental moment as we're getting to see Yugi fitting into a friend group, as if he were the final piece of the Millennium Puzzle helping to complete it. Actually, that analogy will be relevant soon enough. Episode 5 is where things start getting a bit more story-driven, giving us more of a deep dive into the Egyptian and lore that is baked into Yu-Gi-Oh! We get to see things starting off with the arrival of the character Shadi, a person we get to see and understand a lot more the longer Yu-Gi-Oh! Goes on with how they transition them into what Yu-Gi-Oh! Ultimately becomes, as his role is pretty important there. Before we get to see his purpose here though, we first see that there is this special ancient Egyptian exhibit happening in the city that is being hosted by Yugi's grandpa's friend, Professor Yoshimori, as well as the owner of the museum, Mr. Kanekura. With our main cast all being there to check it out with Yugi's grandpa, Mr. Kanekura takes notice of Yugi's Millennium Puzzle, and he simply just must have it for display for the exhibit, getting Yugi to reluctantly agree to lending it to him for the day as a display piece. And now during the day, while they continue to check out the exhibit, Shadi ends up appearing to Yugi, as they're both looking at the remains of a mummified pharaoh that's now out on display, causing Shadi to cry, but claims them to not be his tears as he explains that this pharaoh has had his eternal sleep denied for being taken from his grave and being placed on display like this. Part of Shadi's business here is dealing with Mr. Kanekura, as we see that aside from being a part of this expedition and exhibit, he is making shady private deals to make a fortune on this stuff, which ends up including Yugi's Millennium Puzzle that he borrowed, trying to sell it off before he would have to give it back. As the day goes on and the exhibit is nearly closed, Yugi waits outside hoping that the guy will come out with his puzzle, but we all know that's not going to happen. And on the inside, we see Mr. Kanekura in his office, waiting for the would-be purchaser of the puzzle to enter in, but when the door opens, the unconscious body of the purchaser falls onto the floor as Shadi enters, introducing himself as the servant to Anubis, claiming that because of Mr. Kanekura's greed, another tomb of the Valley of the Kings has been defiled, and he will now be judged accordingly, with Shadi placing another Millennium item, the Millennium Scale, on the table in front of him to weigh his sins, pulling out the Feather of Ma'at to begin this judgment. When the sins of this guy weigh too much during what is technically a shadow game, he loses, resulting in him seemingly being eaten by a monster that had strapped him into the seat so that he couldn't go anywhere. This ends up seeming like illusions and pain that only Mr. Kanekura is experiencing, as Shadi starts to leave with the puzzle in hand before coming across Yugi, who is excited and thinking that he is getting his puzzle back, but a bit confused as to why this guy has it. From this, Shadi ends up realizing that there is more to this kid he met earlier, because if he's claiming this to be his puzzle, that means he was the one to put it together, to which whoever is able to put the puzzle together will gain the power of darkness, which in turn means that they will have the same or similar powers that Shadi and the clan that he is from have, intriguing Shadi to start investigating and testing Yugi. To see the truth, Shadi uses his other Millennium item, the one he carries around his neck, the Millennium Key, giving him the ability to look into the soul of another, doing that now to Yugi. Inside of his mind labyrinth, a familiar place that we explore in the regular Yu-Gi-Oh series, Shadi ends up finding and coming face to face with this other entity living inside of Yugi, that being Yami Yugi, with him confused over how this is even possible, as Yami is kind of aura farming by chilling alone, smirking in the darkness like he's been waiting for someone to open this door and find him here like this. Do I look cool? Hello? Guys? Shadi gets to have a conversation with Yami as he gets this odd pharaoh-like presence coming from him, and I wonder why that is. I hope it doesn't take, 5 seasons, a movie, and more just to get to that part where we get some real answers to all of this. Okay, I hope it does. Well, I guess I'm glad it did. It was my childhood and a lot of yours as well. I actually thoroughly went through all 5 seasons and a bunch of other extra stuff. If you haven't seen that video already, I will leave it linked down below. You can check it out if you want to. So I guess this is a better time than any to let you know, or remind you if you've already heard it before, that I am currently deep diving basically all of Yu-Gi-Oh here on this channel. As after covering the original run of Yu-Gi-Oh, I covered the GX series, and yes, you don't need to adjust your screens. What you're seeing is correct. That is 15 hours of yapping about Yu-Gi-Oh GX. And coming up in just a couple weeks or so, we are going to be starting our journey covering all of Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, aka the 3rd generation of Yu-Gi-Oh. And I've never had a more requested thing to cover in my channel's history ever. So I hope to see you there for that. From their talks, we get to hear Shadi explain more about the Millennium items in general, specifically calling them the Millennium items of darkness, and that they were made by the ones that served the ancient pharaohs as a way to punish thieves who would defile their tombs and steal their treasures, cataloging all of this knowledge within the Book of the Dead. Shadi's goal right now is mainly wanting to learn what powers the Millennium Puzzle truly holds, with Yami not willing to provide that information so easily. Plus, in general, this guy doesn't even know who he is himself. He doesn't know his past or how he's here, none of that. It's, what we have to wait 5 seasons, a movie, and more for to see the bigger picture, regardless of what's easy to know and figure out already or not. It's not like there was any other media already putting the puzzle pieces together for you around the same time or anything. So now for the two of them, it's time to play a game game where Yami promises to tell Shadi the secrets of the puzzle's power if Shadi beats him, with Shadi explaining his Millennium Key's power out loud, so that's a freebie Yami doesn't even have to fight for, as he explains that it has the power to manipulate and reshape the inner mind spaces of a person, which sounds so much more scary with how menacingly he says it. Anyway, this game that they play is for Shadi to find the real room in this mind labyrinth, the one that has exactly what Shadi is looking for to understand the power of the puzzle and all that. This all leads into a Scooby-Doo-like or Beetlejuice-esque sequence of Shadi opening up different doors with varying ridiculous outcomes behind them, eventually finding the room where Yami is now, only to then start falling into a dark void once the floor collapses under him. But Yami ends up saving him, showing a more true form of the good within Yugi's soul. From this experience, Shadi is shocked, but at least he's alive and back in the real world. He hands Yugi the puzzle back, telling him that there's no need to thank him as he's already in his debt, which confuses Yugi when the other version of him is brought up, as Shadi realizes that Yugi isn't even aware of this other presence inside of him yet, thinking that when their forces truly come together, the true power of the puzzle will be revealed. For now, he has other stuff to go and take care of, telling Yugi that he'll see him again soon enough, as well as telling him his name, which is something that he's never really done before. He keeps his personal information on a tight leash. Now, when it comes to the manga in general, things are slightly different, with Shadi alluding to Yugi in a more direct way about him needing to solve the mysteries of the puzzle and the power it holds. But our Shadi side story here isn't quite over yet, as we just continue right on. The following episode picks up right where we left off as we see Professor Yoshimori reading the newspaper talking about the death of Mr. Kanekura. So he actually died, with it being listed as natural causes, so while he experienced being devoured by some creature, he really just had a heart attack. Yoshimori wonders if this could be the Pharaoh's curse that is really behind this, but he should be more worried about what's behind him as Shadi returns. I guess when he said that he'll be back soon, he really meant it. He came back right away. For Yoshimori's hand in the expedition to get all these ancient Egyptian artifacts, the mummy, all of the tomb defiling, etc., Shadi now judges him with the Millennium Scale, with all of this resulting in Yoshimori falling backwards out of the window into the ground below. But thankfully, Grandpa was walking by to see this, being able to help bring him to the hospital for now. Shadi wanted Yoshimori to really feel the pain that the gods within the Valley of the Kings felt. Now, at the hospital, Yugi and his friends end up hearing about this curse and debating if it's even real or if they're even scared about it. And while they're all walking back home now, they are unaware that Shadi is following them. And when Anzu ends up splitting off from the group to go home, Shadi is able to use his Millennium Key to enter into her mind, wanting to figure out some way to use her in the efforts of dragging out this other version of Yugi, wanting to see what can actually cause that to happen. The next day at school, aside from seeing Jinochi wearing some chrome hearts, we see Anzu come into class, but something's clearly off about her, as she is then made to do things throughout the day like not acknowledging Yugi, tripping him down the stairs, and even getting him alone to try and strangle him, which is pretty wild. But when the others end up catching her doing this, Shadi speaks through her, which is both funny and creepy, as she then just runs off, causing the rest of the group to split up and go looking for her. From here, Shadi finds Honda by himself, being able to use his powers to make him a zombie, basically, that will now go after the others to keep them busy, because Yugi ends up finding Shadi on the roof of the school. And along with him is Anzu, who is now standing on the edge of a makeshift plank setup that could easily drop Anzu to her death. Because of this, Shadi succeeds in being able to bring out Yami Yugi, trying to explain to him that if he was able to solve the puzzle, that means he's the chosen one. So while Shadi is really looking to see if Yugi is this chosen ally to him, Yugi, or rather Yami as well, have no interest in exploring that based on the worry and anger of what's going on with Anzu, and by extension, what Shadi is doing to all of his friends. Now, thanks to these statues, Shadi explains that a game between them has already started, as he knows that Yami has fear in his heart about the unknown power of the Millennium Puzzle since one of the statues breaks, as in this game, these statues represent the weakness within his heart, and when one of them shows itself to be true, a statue will break, and once all of them break, Anzu will fall, as the statues are tied through a fence with the connected ropes holding up the plank Anzu is on. But the Millennium Key is also hung up by a statue, with the ropes from Yugi's statue going through the opening at the top of the key. So if Shadi ends up exposing and expressing any of his weaknesses of the heart first, then his statue will break, resulting in the key sliding down Yami's rope to touch Anzu's hand, defeating Shadi and returning Anzu back to her normal self. Now, Yami gets sent these trials that he must conquer in the game, like playing a stone matching game, then having to deal with a mean variant of Jinochi that for some reason has the look that he would have in the regular first season of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime thanks to his jacket being green here. The real Jinochi, however, has been dealing with the zombie-like Honda, leading to him falling out and hanging from a classroom window, which ultimately helps him see what's going on with Anzu. So back in the game with Yami, we see that he's on his final rope, which is barely holding up Anzu, but before something awful happens, Jinochi rushes up the side of the school building, saving Anzu now by holding up the board with her on it. Thanks to the power of trusting your friends, Shadi's statue breaks, because it just blows his mind, leading to his Millennium Key sliding over to Anzu to help bring bring her back to herself. But Honda right now is still a zombie and starts attacking Jinochi, making Jinochi drop the plank, but before Anzu can fall, Yugi ends up rushing in and grabbing her hand. Luckily as well, the Millennium Key ends up hitting Honda, so he can return to normal, and now that everyone is safe, Shoddy, well, he just walks away and pieces out for now. So I wouldn't really call that a satisfying conclusion to it all. The manga ends up having things play out differently, as well as give us more to the whole resolution in the end. In the manga, Kanekura is still reported on as being dead for the same reasons, only we see that it's Yugi and his grandpa at home figuring this out from the news, leading to the discussion of curses being real or not. Then they happen to run into both Jinochi and Anzu, while Grandpa and Yugi were heading over to see Professor Yoshimuri to cheer him up, hopefully after the news came out. Before they even get to the university he's at though, Shoddy pays the worrying professor a visit, planning to kill him as well as punishment for being a part of raiding the tombs. But in knowing Yugi and the others are on their way to see him, he decides to control him instead. When Yugi and the others do arrive and get to Yoshimori's lab, they end up meeting this terrifying puppeted version of the professor, freaking them out as he rushes in to start choking Jinochi. Shoddy appears then as well, wanting this to be what can bring out this other version of Yugi, but that didn't quite work. Anzu is able to help rescue Jinochi in this moment, but this gives Shoddy an idea and the opportunity to go after Anzu now, looking into her mind as Yugi and Jinochi are left to deal with the zombie-like professor that progressively is looking more zombie-like from all the fighting going on and his face getting messed up. At one point, Jinochi is left to deal with the professor as Yugi finds Shoddy with a controlled Anzu, with the threat of her life in the balance being the thing that does pull Yami Yugi out, with Shoddy setting up the final challenge of Anzu being on the plank hanging over the edge of the roof, with the statues holding it up. Yami is then put through the trials to test his weaknesses of the heart. Here though, things start off with a riddle before it goes into the stone matching game and then having this mean variant of Jinochi come around. But in the end, with the rope holding up Anzu breaking and Jinochi hanging out of a window, he's able to see and get to her to hold up the board so she doesn't fall. And it's kind of like a payback where she just saved him from being choked out, and now he's saving her from falling off the roof. After she's turned back into her regular self again, the zombie version of the professor ends up attacking Jinochi, causing Anzu to nearly fall, but Yami Yugi is the one to save her, which I just want to point out specifically because in the anime, it's clearly regular little Yugi who saves her, which to me is way more impactful to their characters. Like having Yugi show off this feat of saving Anzu instead of this being a more heroic saving of her done by the same person who saved her from the criminal that she knew couldn't really be Yugi, just feels like it means something more. But that's just food for thought regarding her character and how her relationship with Yugi goes. Also in the manga, Shoddy and Yugi exchange way more words than in the anime during this bit of aftermath from the high stakes game, with Yugi saying he learned something about the Millennium Puzzle, and that's that it's like his friends. No matter how far apart they may be, they always come back and fit together just like a puzzle. And that's the power of unity, which is the power of the puzzle itself. But see, my analogy about them all being like puzzle pieces that come together was legit. The whole power of unity thing really shocks Shoddy for whatever reason, like it just seems so dramatically drawn here. But speaking of Shoddy still, he ends up saying that his bloodline has been looking for someone like him for a long time, thinking he may be the one to open the door, teasing some greater purpose for Yugi and the spirit living inside of him, with Shoddy then saying goodbye from there instead of just disappearing and leaving without really saying anything. Also, since this all takes place the evening they all run into each other at the start of this, we get to see the characters wearing their cool fits that we see them in for a bit in the anime before they go back to their school uniforms the following day in that version. So it's cool that we get to see Jinochi getting this big heroic moment, and it looking way cooler in my opinion because he really has that fit on, if you get me. This panel in the manga just goes so hard. It's just interesting to me to see all these little changes here with the Shoddy stuff and all the surrounding details, with both the anime and manga having choices in context to what's going on within those mediums that I both like. Like, I think it's great that Yugi and not Yami Yugi saves Anzu in the anime, and in the manga, I love the conversation between Shoddy and Yugi in the end, as there's just so much more depth there. Overall, I think it's just kind of cool that there are two ways to experience these stories that sometimes have very little differences, but other times have these major changes that make you wonder why this was.
It's not over yet! I didn't think I would ever see you again.
Now after all that seriously shady shoddy business, it's time to make like that one 2008 VIC song and get silly. We end up seeing this bully named Kujirata, who is making lots of money and isn't afraid to show it off, but based on what other students are saying, this guy used to be shy and nice, but something's gotten into him, and now he's a big old rich jerk. We also see that someone is spying on him, secretly taking photos, so that's odd, but who cares? The largest new craze is here as we see Jinochi in class getting in trouble for playing with his digital digital pet game, which is basically a Tamagotchi. And honestly, this whole scenario is so relatable for this time period in school. Between myself and others I went to school with, we've tried getting away with Tamagotchis, Beyblades, trading cards, Pogs. No, not those kind, the ones on screen. Walkman or other music devices, paper footballs, heck, cell phones when everyone started getting their own, and every time we'd either get in trouble or they'd be taken away. If you couldn't tell from everything I just said, I'm old! Jinochi basically gives us a breakdown of how these digital pet games work, and we can see that the creatures in the devices can interact with other creatures when connecting two devices together. Then the teacher just punches him. Ah, the 90s, am I right? Honda here isn't into these games and is just making fun of Jinochi and the others for caring about it in the slightest, with Jinochi just claiming Honda's jealous because they're so popular and sold out everywhere, and he clearly didn't get one. Randomly, Miho comes in, caring about it all too, and talks about how she wants to go to Australia no matter what, as she shows that the winner of this upcoming competition to see who has the strongest creature will win a trip for two to Australia. So now Honda naturally has to care about it too, especially when she claims that she doesn't want to put any sort of effort into raising a digital pet in order to win, despite her just claiming that she needs to go to Australia no matter what. She just hopes that someone will do it for her, playing into Honda's interest in her, as she notes to him that the trip is for two people, so it can, you know, be a nice bit of a private time for the two of them, as Honda drops everything and fully commits to doing this for her, doing a full 180 on everything he was just saying to Jinochi about not caring. We then see that there is this other classmate of theirs named Hayama that Yugi oversees Kujirata taking money from, thinking that Hayama is getting extorted for cash for whatever reason. And I just want to say, I love this small detail about how Yugi's hair has emotion to it as well. So when he's scared or sad, his hair reacts accordingly, and I just love it. It's a really cute detail to add into the animation. After Yugi speaks to Hayama and promises him not to tell anyone about what he saw after he asked Yugi to please not, Yugi hands him one of his digital pet devices, saying he has plenty of them, as he wanted to cheer Hayama up and maybe push him to enter into the competition as well. At the same time, Honda is missing school now and spending all of his time playing his, well, Miho's digital pet in order to win this trip to Australia for her and, by extension, himself, as he wrestles with his, well, less than pure thoughts about Miho and what some time together on this trip, just the two of them, could bring. The next day, a special limited edition gold digital pet that has less than 100 copies made of it is being sold at the shop in town, drawing in a crowd of people who all want it, as it's said to have an amazing creature to raise that for sure could guarantee an easy victory in the competition coming up. But there's one problem. It's very expensive, costing 50,000 yen. But there is someone who does have that kind of money, as Kujirata walks up to the window and just punches it, smashing it in, as he then grabs the gold digital pet for himself. Naturally, the owner comes out being extremely mad about this, but Kujirata just tosses him double the cost of the device and money for repairs. So now the owner is happy, but this doesn't make Kujirata look cool, it just tells me that he's bad with his money. What? I never said I was good with money. Later on, everyone in class is having fun with their digital pets, showing them off to one another as we get to see Yugi's, which looks just like himself because of the hair, but eventually Kujirata interrupts them all to show off his powerful and expensive new digital pet named Devil Master. And it's literally just this. What is this? Some extra from Miss Spider's Sunny Patch Friends? Okay, well, this perspective shot of him from within the device is clearly more terrifying, but hey, so is Miss Spider's Sunny Patch Friends. Truly just pure nightmare fuel. Kujirata right away starts connecting his device to others' devices, first by taking Anzu's little heart-shaped pet by force and killing it with his Devil Master, then doing the same to Jinochi's pet. But in a heroic entrance type of moment, Honda makes his grand return after his training arc hiatus. But when he fully enters the frame, we see that he's just really tired and worn out. It's a pretty good bit that they have going on for Honda in this episode. Despite this, Honda threatens Kujirata with his digital pet, to which everyone laughs at it for its looks and name, but Honda is confident, getting into a battle with Kujirata's Devil Master, and to everyone's surprise, Honda wins, causing Kujirata to curse, slamming his gold pet on the table, and walking out. Outside of the school, we see an angry Kujirata getting recorded by the person we've seen spying on him, as it turns out to be Hayama. In the meantime, when Miho and Honda are walking home together, she talks about having bought some romantic nightwear for this trip, as Honda is lost in his imagination over it all, but in this distraction, Miho ends up getting taken, as a note from Kujirata for Honda is left that tells him to come meet at a warehouse, as Honda then rushes over to it. Yugi, while walking the streets and thinking about the situation Hayama's been in, ends up seeing what looks like Kujirata running by with a giant sack, which gets his attention to go and follow him now. Honda ends up arriving at the warehouse and there finding Miho all tied up, as he then meets Kujirata's body as it falls in front of him, having these visual cuts all over his back as Hayama appears, showcasing a whip as a weapon that he's been using to cause all those markings on Kujirata's back, as well as he has some purple hair now for some reason, and the scariest face in general. You know what, can we just go back to Miss Spider Sunny Patch Friends now? Please. Hayama basically has been treating Kujirata as his own real-life pet, calling him pathetic for losing in that digital pet match, so that means he had to get punished for it. He explains that for his own enjoyment, he's treated Kujirata as a pet by changing him with money to change the way that he would see and carry himself, going from the shy kid to a loud mean bully, documenting everything mainly through all these photos he's been taking and scrapbooking. But now, he's worthless to Hayama, as he wants Honda to be his new pet now. Yugi ends up arriving at the warehouse as well. He gets attacked by Hayama, which hurts so much worse after all the true kindness Yugi showed him because of what he thought he was going through. Honda tries to be a hero again, trying to stop Hayama, but ends up not being able to do anything because he's too drained of energy based on his lack of sleep. So Hayama just beats him up. Yami Yugi then comes out, challenging him to a fight between their digital pets, with Hayama's pet being the one that Yugi gave him earlier, but we can see how evil and ugly it has been turned into thanks to Hayama. In the battle, Yugi's digital pet ends up evolving, much like how we see Yugi evolving into Yami Yugi essentially, and from there being able to win the battle, and as punishment, Hayama, after beating his digital pet that's not so digital at the moment, is forced to deal with that pet now turning on him, as Hayama suffers the visions and feelings of getting eaten by the creature, but in reality, he's just passed out on the ground. Well, basically everyone aside from Yugi is now passed out on the ground. Anyway, in the manga, things were way different, like extremely different. The story in the manga has a lot of similarities, but it is a way smaller in scope chapter of the manga. Everyone at school is into the digital pet craze, aside from Honda, claiming he has a real dog anyway, which is true. We see his dog named Blanky appear in chapter 82 of the Yu-Gi-Oh Duelist manga, as well as we see her in the Game Boy Advance goated set of games, The Sacred Cards and Reshif of Destruction, with her English name being Lucky. Jinochi and Yugi want to mate their pets to create new ones, and maybe the pets have to do that romance dance from Viva Pinata to keep things more clean, who knows. Anyway, I love that we also get to see the cool perspectives of the creatures from how they see things from inside their virtual space, which must be terrifying that this small room is all you're in, and it's all you know, and then there's just this big window with these massive, strange-looking creatures all staring in at you. And then also, at any moment, another creature can connect to your world and it might kill you. Kujirata is here as well. He's still kind of a jerk in this, at least in the ways that he's coming off by wanting to show off his digital pet that he claims is a secret hidden one that he was able to unlock and raise, and claiming it to be a glitch or a virus of some sorts, as others call it in the digital pet space, as we get to see it, and it being what looks like Devil Master looks like in the anime. And after we see him just gloating about it all and showing it off to the others, late one night at his house now, his digital pet starts talking to him, menacingly demanding more food, but not any more of this digital treat crap. He wants something else. There's a bloodlust, and as he becomes more evil by the second, he basically starts controlling Kujirata, claiming him to be his pet instead now. As the following day at school, Kujirata is forcefully taking other people's devices and making their pets sacrifices that his pet can eat, with the creature's gluttony having no end in sight. Eventually, Yugi gets in the mix with his pet named U2, like the band, and in the end evolves into Yami U2 as it defeats Kujirata's pet, and I just love how Kujirata snaps out of the hold that he's been in and goes, oh well, my digital pet's gone. I guess I can just go home and get more sleep or something, and just leaves. It's great. But then we get a random bittersweet ending to the chapter where apparently the data in U2's programming shows that by the morning, U2 will pass on and go to digital heaven. So Yugi just stays up all night watching him until he's gone, and wouldn't you believe it, digital poop. But for me, I have digital Snoop. That is. Yeah, that's a Snoopy Tamagotchi. Episode 8 of the anime is another anime-only episode, creating a new bit of story going on as we get to see Kaiba again, with him wanting his revenge, of course, and teasing that he's calling upon his 4 game masters to come in and try and defeat Yugi. The game master we're focusing on here is some old guy named Sheldon that is having this weird doll and puppet tea party that gets completely destroyed when Kaiba picks him up in a helicopter. But for now, we go back to the school where we see Yugi is playing some duel monsters, specifically with Miho, and she's not very good at it, and Honda gets mad at Yugi, calling him a disgrace to all men based on him winning against her. We get this funny visual back and forth between Jinochi and Honda, with Honda being a beautification member, something that's been brought up since the start of the series, as he's really into cleaning things or keeping things clean, as Jinochi always makes fun of it, basically calling him a glorified janitor and just getting the name of what he's a member of wrong. And hey, for real though, no disrespect to janitors, okay? I got my first ever Shonen Jump magazine from a janitor in elementary school. True story. See, I still have it, and it changed my life. I believe I talk about it more in my actual Shonen Jump video if you want to go and check that out. But yeah, you know, it's definitely seen better days, but you know, I loved it and I read it a lot. I'll link the Shonen Jump video down below if you even care. Lucas from Washington State. During their back and forth, we see odd visuals like them being in squid costumes or Honda being a Mandarin, but all the goofiness is interrupted when Yugi is called to go to the nurse's office over the school intercom, to which he meets this random lady there. As we're all just presuming that this is the nurse, I don't know, Yugi and this person have never officially met, and she just instantly starts talking about duel monsters and how strong she heard Yugi was when it comes to playing. Excuse me, lady, I don't think this has anything to do with medical practices. From there, they get into a game of duel monsters against one another, and she keeps going on and on about all this mumbo jumbo that makes things sound deeper than they need to be, because ultimately it's just how she then justifies why her creatures are getting certain boosts. In the end, she wins, and for winning, she helps herself to a prize card, taking Yugi's Neon Knight as he's yelling about that being a really valuable card of his. She sends him back to class, saying that he'll have to duel her again sometime, and if he wins, he'll get it back. Then, after Yugi leaves the room, the lady turns towards the camera and starts speaking with a deep manly voice, as it's revealed that the Sheldon guy was really just marionetting a realistic puppet, and Kaiba's there too, as this guy questions why he was brought all the way here to duel an amateur. He also keeps carrying around this doll of a little girl he calls Fiona, and that's, weird, but whatever. Kaiba talks about Yugi not having shown off his true powers, and that he has some further plans. Later on, Yugi heads to the arcade to play a new game that's supposed to be there so he can cheer himself up, but he ends up getting tricked by an employee and led to a limo out back, forcefully held down inside of it as they take off. Sitting in the front seat is Sheldon, but he's speaking in the same voice he used for the nurse puppet earlier, while holding Yugi's Neon Knight. The employee who kidnapped Yugi and is holding him down in the back of the limo removes his mask like it's Mission Impossible, revealing himself to be Kaiba, telling Yugi that this is one of his 4 game masters. Hopefully we get the other 3 at some point. Sheldon asks for Yugi to truly show him a shadow game, as if Yugi even really knows what's going on with this other Yugi that's inside of him, or the whole shadow game stuff that's going on, as they eventually end up at this unsettling makeshift arena where the audience are all just this dude's creepy dolls and puppets. Even Yugi calls them creepy. Like seriously, whose mans is this? From here they get started with another duel, as all they want from Yugi is to bring this inner strength out, leading to the plays getting more aggressive, with Yugi somehow feeling the attacks and getting knocked to the floor by a lightning-based attack coming from Sheldon playing Yugi's Neon Knight for himself. But when getting back up, it's Yami Yugi time, as the duel continues going back and forth with us seeing the visuals of the monsters fighting, somehow. It's unclear when the shadow game really began, or if it even did begin, or if they're seeing the fights of the monsters, or really feeling the pain. I don't know, it's all weird, it's not really established. Heck, maybe they're all just dolls, as it seems like that's the reveal, but honestly, who even knows with the way they kind of reveal it or talk about it. Either way, Yami even calls all this doll business creepy, and I am glad that every rational person agrees on that at least. Yami ends up winning, there isn't a punishment, so I guess there was no shadow game, and Sheldon just starts heading home sadly in the rain, as Kaiba exclaims that he'll get Yugi next time like he's the villain of a Saturday morning cartoon from the 80s. The next day at school, Miho is playing duel monsters with the boys in class, offering up a kiss to whoever she loses to again, and the boys go crazy and all want in on this, with Anzu seemingly getting mad at Yugi for getting in on wanting a kiss, putting cards in his face and telling him to kiss the cards instead before storming out of there. And whew, oh boy, that's the sign right there, man. Yugi, you need to lock in. Who cares about Miho? She doesn't really exist outside of this Season 0 anime series anyway, and she talks in the third person all the time. Focus on Anzu, brother. And also, it's pretty funny that with it being called Magic and Wizards in the manga at first, that the backs of the cards look like a regular Yu-Gi-Oh card, while the card game is called Duel Monsters in the anime, and the backs of the cards have an M and W on them for Magic and Wizards. But yeah, this may be one of the weirder and more bizarre episodes of Season 0, and that's saying something. But oh, trust me, there are plenty more weird and uncomfortable moments yet to come. It's just that this one sticks out for so many reasons.
It doesn't matter. I must win. I'm the winner.
You like yo-yos? You like Yu-Gi-Oh yo-yos? You like Yu-Gi-Oh and Bobobo? Okay, no, but for real, check out my vintage Yu-Gi-Oh yo-yo that I've had since I was a kid. This thing used to light up, I think. Yeah, but man, this thing was so cool back in the day. I used to play... It's broken. If you couldn't tell, yes, this episode is all about yo-yos. We see a gang terrorizing others with yo-yos, setting up where the whole plot is going, as we then check in with Jinochi, who is into yo-yoing, showing off some of the techniques that he can do with it. Honda, being a bit of a goody two-shoes like usual, is getting worried that bringing a yo-yo to school is something dangerous, which, you know what, fair. Jinochi is making it look really dangerous at the moment. Anzu brings up this whole delinquent gang going around using yo-yos to beat up people like a student from their own school, because why not have this fear of yo-yos being a gang-affiliated weapon? The next day, however, Jinochi doesn't show up for school, worrying everyone as he has never been absent. So after school, they all head over to his house, which is a place that he never invited anyone over to because aside from Miho just trying to barge in since the door's unlocked, they are met with a beer bottle being thrown at the door and Jinochi's father yelling at them, thinking it was his son, calling him a good-for-nothing brat. They get out of there and start looking around town, eventually seeing him with that delinquent yo-yo gang. Yugi tries to confront him, asking him why he skipped school and why he's with them now, as Jinochi claims to not know Yugi for some reason. We meet this guy named Hirotani. He's the leader of this group, and it's who Jinochi used to hang out with in middle school, as he tells Jinochi that he's a disappointment. But, you know, it's nothing he hasn't really heard before from his father already. He also claims that he should have ended up at the high school that they go to instead of Domino High. Yugi begs Jinochi to come back, but this doofus in the beanie sucker punches Yugi. No! Not me, the other doofus! Jinochi gives no reaction to what happened to Yugi, as Anzu and Honda then call Jinochi out, cursing at him, calling him the worst, but he keeps walking away with the delinquents and doesn't look back at them. Yugi and the others try and understand what is going on with Jinochi as Honda explains that back in middle school, Jinochi was wild, getting into fights all of the time and being a delinquent just like the crowd he was running with, to which he cut ties with when going into high school, and with that, choosing to go to a different school than them, as he picked Domino High instead. Yugi remembers what brought Jinochi and him together as friends in the first place, and that's the Millennium Puzzle, telling the others that Jinochi hasn't changed, eager to prove it and have Jinochi back to himself and away from those guys. But Honda seems to be taking things personally with what's going on with Jinochi, saying he wants no part in this as he walks away for now. We then see the Yo-Yo gang getting into a fight with a rival gang, as Jinochi is used to fight them off with his fists. When Yugi, Anzu, and Miho get to the delinquents' base of operations, they end up seeing Honda walk by alone, claiming to himself that he's the only one that can help Jinochi open his eyes to what he's doing. He's a caring friend at the end of the day, regardless of how they bicker with one another, and it seems like he was gonna go and try and handle things on his own so that the others wouldn't have to be involved. He's also wearing this sash around his uniform that makes Anzu crack up, and when they do confront him, he refuses to tell Yugi what it is, but when Miho asks, he doesn't hesitate to turn around and start explaining it, claiming that he and Jinochi were able to win a relay race together in middle school with the sash being used instead of a baton, and this is what made Honda and Jinochi become close friends. It's a symbol of their friendship, and I guess you can say it really helped Jinochi start running with a different crowd. Oh, boo you, boo you. In this cafe they're in, which houses the gang's hideout, the employee working there explains that it seems Jinochi was forced to be with them and be back in their gang. And once the gang is in this warehouse area that they're hanging out in now, Yugi and the others try to confront Jinochi about not wanting to be there, but he says that this is all his own choice from his own free will, and that he doesn't want to be friends with them. Honda tries showing him the sash, telling him to remember their friendship, but Jinochi takes it from him, drops it on the ground, and steps on it as they get into an altercation where Jinochi punches Honda in the gut. The next day, Yugi and Honda head out to this other high school looking for Jinochi, as they're not going to give up on their friend. But he's not with the gang at the moment, so the Hirotani guy pulls out his yo-yo, showing that it has spike powers now, and sends it flying at them, combining that with personally beating up Honda. But when sending in the yo-yo again, Yugi jumps in to protect Honda as his Millennium Puzzle blocks the yo-yo, sending it back towards Hirotani, scratching open his face a bit. He says that this is unacceptable, as they then tie and hang up Yugi in the warehouse, beating him up pretty badly. Jinochi enters in and it seems like he's going to join in on hurting Yugi, but he doesn't. He instead attacks one of the gang members with his yo-yo, as he then tells Hirotani that it was promised that if he were to join their group, that they wouldn't lay a hand on his friends. But, like, where was this attitude the first time when they beat them up, or the previous night where you beat them up? Yugi understands that Jinochi was doing this over the sake of caring about his friends, wanting to protect them, with Jinochi now threatening Hirotani with this yo-yo. But since they did hurt his friends, he's instead ready to throw down and fight right now, regardless of any threats about it that they could give each other. His friends have already been hurt, so it's only fair that he gets to hurt Hirotani and the rest of the gang, right? But if he's also the one who had to hurt his friends, does he end up hurting himself? There's a lot of loopholes here, a lot of things that just don't add up, but whatever. We're talking about yo-yos, okay? Yo-yo gangs, yo-yo Ma. The other gang members surround him, using their yo-yos to try and hurt him, but Jinochi shows his strength by walking through the attacks to try and get to Yugi to save him, and even getting to deflect Hirotani's yo-yo, which, by the way, has happened twice now. This guy is absolute weak sauce F-tier garbage at yo-yoing. Maybe we need to get him like a yo-yo ball instead or something. Okay, alright, yeah, alright, this is pretty fun. From the deflection, the yo-yo then cuts down Yugi to set him free. Once they start beating on Jinochi some more, Yugi turns into Yami Yugi, leading some of the gang members to the roof, where he now has a yo-yo. I guess everyone has to stay strapped with one of these just in case now, as he then challenges them to a shadow game, with the rule of the game being that the last person standing on the roof will be the winner. Jinochi gets into a confrontation with Hirotani at the same time, leading to a moment where Hirotani ends up breaking a shard of glass, throwing all the bits at Jinochi's face and messing with his eyes. For Yugi, he purposefully used his yo-yo to puncture the roof in a circular pattern while they all attacked, leading to them being in the middle of this circle as it then collapses underneath them. Jinochi ends up getting the best of Hirotani, as we see him hanging over a ledge now as Jinochi almost falls over with him, but thanks to Honda and the sash, Jinochi does this cool swing around move using the sash to hang onto the ceiling hook that brings him right back up to where he was. He then shows off his yo-yo technique of walk the dog, which is said and done in such a JoJo coded way, as his JoJo yo-yo hits Hirotani's fingers that were holding himself up on the ledge, causing him to fall down to the ground as well. Now that the day is saved and everyone is friends again, Jinochi shows off more new tricks at school, like one where he basically creates a large enough gust of wind on accident that lifts up both girls' skirts as everyone gets shy, embarrassed, and if you're Anzu, incredibly angry. It's a weird episode in general about yo-yo gang wars and violence, but at its core, it's about your friends, or doing some cool yo-yo tricks. Now, in the manga, things start off relatively the same, with Jinochi in class showing off all the tricks that he can do with his yo-yo. We then meet this other student named Nezumi, who has some bruises and bandages on his face, saying it was from this gang who beat him up with yo-yos and took his money. Nezumi asks for Jinochi's help in getting back at them, to which he agrees, but something is up with Nezumi. He's acting mad suspicious. He eventually leads Jinochi and Yugi to the warehouse, where this gang is, as Yugi and Jinochi recall this location, mentioning that this is where Hirotani had his torture chamber thing going on, with the manga literally reminding you of the events that took place in volume 2 of the manga series, referencing a 2-part set of chapters called The Wild Gang that are basically the events of the anime episode we just watched, minus all the yo-yo stuff. So this episode combines both these 2 chapters about the gang and these 2 chapters about yo-yos into one mashed up episode of the anime. It's honestly impressive how they tore out bits and pieces of these different sets of chapters to make one singular episode that doesn't feel like it's 2 different stories being stitched together. For those earlier chapters, it picks up with Jinochi not being at school and following the storyline of him being with his old gang now, again just without yo-yos. This time when Yugi talks about Jinochi couldn't have been changed again to be like this, Honda agrees, rather than saying that he won't be a part of this. Jinochi ends up fighting back against the gang earlier, getting a good punch in on that beanie guy. No, not me again! Jinochi can't fight all of them off as they overpower him and bring him to their warehouse torture chamber. Jinochi's the one that's all tied up in the warehouse like how we saw Yugi in the anime episode. And here they threaten him with a taser, and even then he's still fighting back. His screams of pain though do help alert Yugi as to where they took Jinochi, as we see him searching for him in the pouring rain, not giving up, using the Millennium Puzzle as a way to see where Jinochi actually is, with this relating back to the power of the puzzle and how no matter how far apart they are, they always come back together, like what Yami was saying. Yugi enters into the warehouse as Yami Yugi and challenges them all to a game, tying up his Millennium Puzzle over one of the knocked out gang members, as he then lures them all into this puddle that is there thanks to a hole in the roof. Yugi says that the game they are playing is about them having to find some sort of switch to deactivate a bomb that will most certainly kill all of them. Hirotani realizes that it must be their tasers, since they are now all soaked in water, opting to not use them and thinking that they figured it all out, but really the switch was that knocked out guy, as Yugi propped his arm up over the puddle of water with a taser in his hand, and having the Millennium Puzzle hanging over him to drip some water onto his face to wake him up, causing him to drop the taser into the puddle, shocking them all. Did they die? Maybe. I don't know. But at least for now, they just rescue Jinochi in the end and leave. All is good. But now from that detour, we head back to the original pair of chapters that is about yo-yos, and as we're now at that same warehouse we saw from the earlier chapters, we see that maybe the gang did survive, or at least some of them, All of these guys with yo-yos come out and start attacking Jinochi as Hirotani appears, claiming that he won't stop until Jinochi is part of the gang, as he wants Jinochi as his number 2 and not just as like a henchman. Because of Jinochi's reluctance, they string up Yugi by his Millennium Puzzle to a ceiling chain, raising it up to start choking him. Jinochi does the heroic walking through attacking yo-yos thing, saving Yugi and saying that the pain from these bruises he's getting is nothing compared to the pain of betraying a friend. Hirotani orders his goons to kill them all, as Jinochi asks to borrow Yugi's puzzle, as he uses it like a yo-yo, spinning it around to deflect and collect in all of the others' yo-yos, getting them all tied together as he strings them up to another ceiling hook. And for the remaining members, Jinochi goes to deal with Hirotani while Yami Yugi comes out to play again and goes and deals with the rest of the gang members. Both situations end the same way that we see in the anime, aside from Honda not being here and having that whole sash thing going on. In the end, they don't know where Nezumi went, but they know that he purposefully led them here to this ambush. And look, I'm not advocating for violence out here, but it's only right that he gets beat up as well, I'm just saying. Entering in on the next episode, we get to meet this beauty-obsessed and self-obsessed teacher named Miss Chono. She's no nonsense and overly strict, but she's also flirty, as we see her being playfully persuasive to the vice principal to try and get the rules changed to be more strict. This other random side character girl has a crush on Jinochi, wanting to get him a gift as a surprise, as Miho tells her that he must like adult videos based on how much Honda and him talk about them. Anzu grabs Yugi to ask him about a gift idea, to which he suggests the same thing, but later on they end up at Yugi's grandpa's card shop, where she finds this jigsaw puzzle present that she can write something on, thinking that this gift is romantic and perfect. We see more about the teacher outside of the school and how awful and vain she truly is. Like, she kicks over and berates this kid who accidentally trips and falls slightly onto her, and like, thank the Egyptian god cards that this dude that she's out with is all like, nah, you may be pretty on the outside, but you're just disgusting and morbidly hideous on the inside. Okay, I definitely added in some more descriptive wording there. That's my bad. At school, the girl hides the gift in Jinochi's desk for him to find, but currently he's running late for school. Why? Well, because he stayed up too late watching movies, to which Honda blurts out the obvious, asking if it was adult movies, but then Jinochi finds the present for him, not knowing what it is, as the teacher then takes it, opting to open it up, solve the puzzle, and read aloud the personal message written on it. Kind of like when a teacher would catch you passing a note back and forth in class, most times they would take it and read it out loud in front of the whole class. This confession of a love note is making the whole class laugh, while the girl who wrote it is feeling extremely embarrassed. The teacher threatens that whoever wrote this is breaking some sort of school violation and could get them expelled. So in order to find out who, the person either needs to come forward now, or she'll just solve the puzzle and figure it out anyway. Anzu takes the blame so that the other girl wouldn't get embarrassed any further, as then after class, Anzu has to have a private talk with the teacher, who tells her to petition for changing some of the rules if she believes they're too strict. As Anzu asks if part of the petition can also be for allowing after-school jobs, to which, we all know she's been secretly working and doing already. As Anzu begins working really hard for her petition campaign, the teacher begins sabotaging everything about it, making other teachers fall in line with trying to discipline her more in classes, or making it so other students won't want to be involved with the petition in general. When the other students end up trying to fully destroy Anzu's petition, Yugi and Jinochi try helping, with Yugi getting pushed to the ground while Jinochi punches one of the other guys. All three of our main characters here end up getting in trouble for fighting, and once they leave having their conversation with the teacher, the other three students that were harassing them get to go in and meet with her, but Yugi decides to spy and listen in, overhearing that they did this because she asked them to, as she then makes it so that they don't get in trouble for fighting. Yugi then confronts the teacher, but as Yami Yugi now, challenging her to a game, saying that if he wins, Anzu will no longer be in any sort of trouble, but if he loses, he'll keep quiet about everything he overheard. There is also the threat of expulsion up in the air for Yugi's fate. That's fun to throw around. But the game that they play is perfect for the theme of the episode. It's a jigsaw puzzle, but here, it's made of mirrors that Yami dangerously tosses up into the air so that they shatter on the table in front of them, as they have to rearrange them back into a full mirror, with the first one to do so being the winner, as they also have to do this blindfolded. But not long into it, she starts cheating, leading to her completing hers first, but since she cheated, we see her face start to crack open in the shape of puzzle pieces. Yami calls her out for being this hideous monster wearing a mask to disguise herself as a teacher, as Yami uses the mirror and what it reflects as a metaphor for her face now going to reflect her true nature, with her beauty now shattering as she looks real old, showing this as her true face because she claims all her makeup is now off. And we see how she continues on with this cope of it, applying so much more makeup that everyone notices it and questions what's going on with her and why she's being weird, as she'll never have a moment of peace in regards regards to her looks again. Or at least until the effects of the punishment wear off, or that is, if they ever truly do. And also, I just love this detail of when Yami sees the reflection in his mirror. We see regular Yugi because his true inner self is purely good. In the end, for the girl liking Jinochi, Anzu just plays off the whole thing as a prank towards Jinochi, since she took the fall for writing a love note to him, and she wanted to clarify it was a prank so that things wouldn't be weird between them as friends, as well as her not wanting to have Jinochi think that she's into him. Plus, that girl who did like him had just had some other person at the school confess their love for her, so now she's moved on already, with Jinochi being none the wiser to any of this happening. As for the manga, things are different, surprise, surprise. Here it's Honda who is wanting to confess his love to Ribbon. It's like what I mentioned briefly for an earlier episode. Honda ends up being the one to get this jigsaw puzzle present with the message he writes saying, "My beloved Ribbon, you look so perfect in your yellow ribbon. I love you more than anything in the universe." And you know what? Yeah, sure, yeah, it's sweet, but Honda's not really a good poet, is he? Let's see how that works on my girlfriend. I love you more than anything in the universe.
This is the IRS.
Oh shoot.
Actually, we're
I don't know you. This is not George Fringe. This is Wood from Beat 'em Ups. Don't call again. I think I handled that well. The same teacher is here in the manga as well, and for the sake of being awful, she enters class and randomly says it's time for a desk and bag inspection, leading to the puzzle being taken from Ribbon's desk where Honda had hid it for her to find. The teacher starts putting it together and reading it out loud, but before Honda is going to get outed for this, Yugi stands up and starts taking the blame. But then the classic trope of others standing up and taking the blame happens, with Jinochi following suit before Honda does as well, which is a really nice moment for how much Yugi and Jinochi care about Honda and what they do for him, risking getting in trouble or worse just to save him from this embarrassment. That's real brotherly love right there, just like what Anzu did for that other girl in the anime. But I wouldn't count on Miho joining in. Like, I'm just not surprised that she didn't. Boo, we don't like Miho. All my homies hate Miho. Friendship ended, well, it never technically even started, with Miho. I'm new best friends with that green-haired girl that likes Jinochi, or at least did. The teacher just continues to put it together to read the name and expel the real person behind it all. Yugi then turns into Yami Yugi, and then turns her face into a jigsaw puzzle that starts having all the pieces falling off of it in front of everyone, embarrassing her as she runs away before anyone can really see her true face, saying that she won't soon forget this, and then she just, she just runs off. She never comes back. As we then see Honda later on getting the courage to just go and talk to and ask out Ribbon directly, to which she rejects him, which we already knew because it was mentioned earlier. Are you even paying attention? Sorry, I totally blanked. What were we talking about?
I turn the tables! Your defenses are weakening!
One of the early kind of spin-off type of games that Yu-Gi-Oh was really invested into in the manga and here in the anime was something called Capsule Monsters. And here we get to see our first showcasing of it in the anime. This episode introduces Capsule Monsters, which is the technical spin-off game that we would see continued in the Yu-Gi-Oh world mainly through some video games, and eventually a weird spin-off mini-arc of the main anime. But I'll bring that up again later on. For this episode, Miho ends up getting a gifted gachapon machine on her desk at school, and while everyone's confused as to what this is all about, Yugi knows what's inside, getting excited to talk about the game of Capsule Monsters, where each capsule holds a monster inside of it, and the game is played similarly enough to chess, as you're setting up these capsules on your side of the field, and only revealing the monster inside when the game starts, so it's a surprise to your opponent who's coming out, and as you'll see through this episode, it could also be a surprise to you with how it's played, so it's hard to even know what you're fighting against, or even what you're fighting with. Miho probably wouldn't be excited about this, but inside the capsules, instead of figures, is a bunch of jewelry, even mentioning that some earrings here are from Tiffany's, but all I ever heard about Tiffany is her breakfast. The gift was from a university student named Warashibe, so that's weird, but because of the gift, she's happy. Honda's not. To him, it's like he's losing her to this dude, whoever this weird older dude is. Yugi ends up going to one of the gachapon machines in town, seeing a long line of younger students waiting while Warashibe is doing what Pokemon card scalpers do, and basically clearing out the machine with full disregard for anyone waiting in line behind them. Yugi and Warashibe apparently know each other from being in the greater gaming community, and he explains his creepy behavior by noticing Miho walk by one day and secretly following her as he became infatuated, and yeah, this guy seems to really like lollipops. Ugh. I hated everything about saying that, but moving on, as we're later now at Grandpa's shop, Miho stops by and asks for one of the capsule monsters for whatever reason, not really being into it, but still wanting it, or I guess needing it for something, not seeming too interested in playing the battling aspect of the game and then just leaves. Yeah, also, I don't think she paid for that. Meeho really just gets whatever she wants, doesn't she? Well, except for a creepy older guy and everything else that happens to her in this episode, I guess. She didn't ask for that. No one asked for that. Speaking of the creep, the next morning, Warashibe comes to Yugi's place, making him come with him in a hurry over something terrible, leading him to what he calls his secret base, and wouldn't you know it, it's another warehouse. Great. But inside, however, it's filled to the brim with capsule monsters as he claims to have them all, but his terrible problem is that he doesn't have Meeho yet, and he's calling her the goddess of Capmon, which is slang for capsule monsters. Come on, keep up, be hip to the lingo of 1998. He mentions her not knowing her true destiny and everything here, as he then shows Yugi a note that she wrote him as a thank you for the gifts earlier, and that she's trying to learn more about this game since he loves it so much, and you know what? That's kind of sweet in general. Someone willing to learn about your hobby since you're so into it, and in any other case but the situation we're in here, that would be sweet. But since we're dealing with Warashibe, and with Mio not really knowing the full situation here, yeah, it doesn't feel right. Warashibe then tells Yugi what he needs his help with in order to seal the deal for Meeho to become his goddess of Capmon, to which we don't get to hear, only getting Yugi's freaked out reaction as he tells him that maybe they should, get to know each other first, exchange some more letters, have a real conversation, something, as Yugi just wants to get out of here. And also, for a university student, your man here is looking pretty rough, only making him being into Meeho like this even creepier, so there's that. But as Yugi tries to leave, Warashibe, unlike Krunk, pulls the right lever that then drops bars down to seal the exit, trapping Yugi there, making everything more worrisome for whatever his plans were for Meeho. But then this guy just starts crying and throwing a whole tantrum on the floor, saying that he and Yugi are supposed to be friends, not understanding why he's trying to leave. But I can think of a few reasons. We then cut to Meeho walking alone as Yugi, wearing a red sheet mask, jumps out to try and seem menacing, but she knew right away that it was Yugi. But then a lollipop comes flying in to hit Yugi, with him pretending to be taken out as the hero who is saving Meeho from this clearly dangerous criminal is none other than Warashibe, to which she's not impressed with what she's looking at. And bro here is the literal definition of scaring the Meehos away. Then things feel too uncomfortably real for a moment as he tries to take her back to his secret base to show her a world of love and capsule monsters as she screams and begins hitting him with her bag, saying she doesn't know anything about the game and he's still just not letting go. But luckily she does manage to escape from his grasp and run away, as Yugi just hopes that this guy gets over her and leaves her alone. Like, he feels bad for him, but also knows he's a creep, so he deserves what he just got. We see later that night that he's in his warehouse going crazy over all that just happened, smashing around all of his capsule monsters as he claims that she's his goddess and she's supposed to be all his. So while he's fully losing it, the next day at school we see the friend group discussing this guy. Jinochi's laughing about the whole thing, Honda is filled with rage wanting this guy to never talk to her again, but in disguise is Warashibe as he has these Fortnite chug jug looking blue drinks that he ominously just leaves with Jinochi, Anzu, and Honda, having overheard them and thinking that they're the ones manipulating Meeho or something. After drinking this drink from a stranger that you probably should have never drank in the first place, they all have their stomachs hurting and end up in the nurse's office, as apparently what they did drink was unpurified water, and they'll eventually be alright. And also we can see that the school nurse looks just like the puppet that we saw in the earlier episode, so that dude either made one to look just like the nurse, even if her and Yugi have never truly met before, or he's just still pretending to be this nurse for the good crack of it. Either way, Meeho ends up finding a note in her Gita backhoe, which is what she should also be telling this creep, if you get what I'm saying. The note reads out like one of those threat-mantic emails from that one episode of The Fairly Odd Parents, as it's from Warashibe and it says, "Those who got in the way of our destiny have received due heavenly punishment. You can rest easy leaning on my chest," as she then epically crushes the note in disgust and anger. She ends up finding Yugi walking home and angrily demands that he takes her to where this creep is right now. And then, by the way, we get these ridiculously beautiful shots inserted into random moments throughout these episodes. Like here, we get to see such a cool dramatic shot of their silhouettes walking in front of the sunset, or even just before that, the sky having these array of colors right before the sun begins to set. God, I love the look of 90s anime so much, and I love these segue in between shots being inserted in, all for the love of the game. Once the two of them arrive, Warashibe is excited to see her, but she scolds him for what he did to her friends, with Yugi backing her up after finding out he was responsible for that, calling him awful, rightfully so. But he's just like, hey, it couldn't be helped, they got in the way of destiny, you know, and who am I to deny destiny? Urshibe then challenges her to a game of capsule monsters, one that if she wins, he'll never approach her again, but if she loses, she must follow whatever destiny bullcrap he's talking about, and she agrees to it. When they start, he mentions that he's going to be using a specific board chosen for just this match. And I love that Kazuki Takahashi really loved all types of games so much that when creating or bringing existing ones into this world, that he truly detailed how to play the game. Not only so the viewer or reader can follow along and get it, but for the viewer or reader to be able to actually go and play it. I think it's been done well enough in the anime thus far, and I love how detailed it's written out in the manga, almost like it's an instruction booklet that's easy enough to follow. They then take turns getting random capsules, going back and forth, and things don't seem fair because she pulls 3 level 1s, 1 level 2, and 1 level 4, while he pulls 3 level 5s and 2 level 4s, with those numbers representing the power ranking of the monsters inside of the capsules. As Miho gets fed up with this guy during the game, her eventual outburst ends up startling Yugi, causing him to knock back into the capsule dispenser as he realizes something is off with it, as Urshibe admits to having rigged it, alternating low-level and high-level capsule monsters so it can always be in his favor. Miho claims that by default she wins because he's cheating, but he has other plans, calling it unacceptable for her to try and leave, as he reveals a massive capsule pod built just for her to hold her inside of it, claiming she'll be the best there is. He also says that she belongs to him now, as her and Yugi try and make a break for it, with Urshibe pulling the lever to trap them in, but he pulls it a little too hard, causing the beams above to break and all come crashing down. Coming out of the dust though is Yami Yugi as he holds a passed out Miho, and I just love that sometimes when Yami has to come out, all we get is a Millennium related glow, and then you know it's about to go down. Yugi says this prank has gone too far, and you know, I don't know, I wouldn't call any of this a prank. This dude belongs in jail or on a list, or heck, I wouldn't even be surprised if he appeared in a specific set of files, if you know what I'm saying. And Yami then says it's time to play the game.
It's time to play the game.
As well as that he'll just continue from where the game left off, being at the major disadvantage that Miho was at, with Urshibe just going, alright, I guess if you wanna do that, I'm not gonna stop you. The only difference now is that Yami says that this will turn into a shadow game though, and Urshibe's like, okay, whatever, dude. He doesn't know what that is. But as the match goes on, we see the creatures come to life with their movements and attacks. And when it looks like Yami's only down to 1 level 2 monster left and might lose, he purposefully baited Urshibe to have his own set of monsters lined up for this ultimate chess move, well, capsule monster move, with Yami's creature having this special ability that can be used once in a game, where it can one-hit KO attack level 5 monsters for 7 consecutive spaces, and so, yeah, Yugi just wins then. And also, that's way too much of an OP move, what the heck? Urshibe throws another tantrum about it, as his punishment then puts him in a capsule, with Yami saying that he's getting let off easy with that punishment, as Yugi and Miho just leave. And hey, now Miho's kinda into capsule monsters in general, and when she later trips, she ends up spilling a bunch of capsules out of her bag. Did she buy them? Did she leave Grandpa's shop with more of them without paying? Did she just help herself and rob Urshibe's hoard of them? Who knows? But we did learn one lesson. It's not about the level strength of the monster that's important, it's about the heart of the cards, or I mean the heart of the capsules, or something. Okay, but now in the manga, there is a whole thing about capsule monsters, but it's not even close as to what happened here, as we are introduced to them at the end of the 3rd volume. Heck, they're even on the cover of that volume, but we get to learn about them and see how it's all played through a more important character than Creepo McGee from the anime, and that's through Seto Kaiba's younger brother, Mokuba. Now, more so in the manga than what we saw in the anime, they really make it known that this game is meant for younger players. So Yugi is kind of judged for being into it, where he unfortunately then says the cringiest thing ever: age doesn't matter to a real gamer. And whoa man, just take it easy. I know how you meant that to come off, but it's time to stop. Now after Mokuba shows up, he gets pretty antagonistic towards Yugi for all that he's done to his brother. And with Mokuba being skilled at Capmon while Yugi is just a beginner of sorts at it, Mokuba wants a shot at avenging his older brother, having his little goon squad here surround Yugi and end up pulling out tasers and guns. Like, what the heck? These are all young kids. And after all this, can you guess where they bring Yugi? Yup, it's a warehouse. Again! All these kids start going in on Yugi, basically bullying him, but with more severe threats like burning his house down, or worse, forcing him to look at this dude's poorly covered up Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius Code Lyoko looking forehead. Those bangs ain't doing you justice there, bud. He also calls Yugi skinny as an insult, and like, come on, I'd kill to be called skinny. When they try and mess with and take his Millennium Puzzle, a second doesn't go by before Yami Yugi comes out, yelling at them to get their filthy hands off of the puzzle. Mokuba's excited about this because his brother told him that when it comes comes to games, something happens to Yugi that brings out this different personality of him. The battle setup is identical to what we saw in the episode here, with the board being the same and both of their gachapon picks being the same. But to spice things up, Mokuba says that if he wins, he'll cut off one of Yugi's fingers with his pocket knife, as Yami confidently says that if he wins, Mokuba will have to face a penalty game punishment. The match, 1-for-1, ends up going the same as in the anime. Yugi ends up winning, and the punishment is a giant capsule that forms over Mokuba, trapping him inside of it as he tells Yugi that his brother will get his revenge, warning him of something called Death Tea coming soon. Who doesn't love a little bit of foreshadowing? He now gets trapped in this pod that only he can see and deal with, as the others there just kind of look at it like he's going crazy, with Mokuba knowing that this is something similar to what Yugi did to his brother, leading to what made him seemingly go crazy. Yugi walks away in the end saying that they can play again sometime once Mokuba knows the rules, aka doesn't cheat. Do you like money? Do you have a hunger for it? Well, it's time to build that money sandwich. It's time to get that bread, it's time to get that bacon, it's time to get that cheddar, it's time to get that BBC, Can I start over? We start off this episode with a TV game show going on where there's this one high school contestant named Ryuichi, who is the defending champion of the show for many weeks in a row, with them calling him the luckiest fella around as we continue to see him win at the show. And in school, we see Jinochi being so obsessed with the game show and the earning potentials from being a winner on it. With the earnings stacking each week for whoever keeps winning week to week, Jinochi fantasizes over winning the potential 1 million yen you can win after the 10th week of winning, thinking that if he had that kind of money, he could be able to pay off his idiot father's drinking and gambling debts. His words. He mentions how awful life has been dealing with all of these debt collectors, let alone a father who gets pissed drunk, pisses away money, and gets pissed at you for just existing. So the dream of just winning this sum of money to make things better pushes him forward to hopefully have this better life. Honda brings up how hard things have been for Jinochi, saying he's been paying for everything for himself since elementary school, from tuition costs and general living expenses, which is a crazy weight to have on your shoulders, especially as a kid. At least he doesn't have to worry about his sister Serenity and winning the money from the Duelist Kingdom tournament to afford her surgeries to save her vision. Well, you know, not now anyway. Randomly, it seems, this Ryuichi guy ends up joining the class as a new transfer student. Everyone's shocked about this, but he's a prick, you know, the type who thinks he's better and smarter than everyone else in the room. And here, that includes the teacher, as he makes a bet over a coin toss with him over where he'll sit, winning this and choosing to sit next to Yugi. Everyone in the class wants to talk to him, and they're just eating up and loving all of this "I'm better than you" and gloating type of stuff that he's doing, explaining that he's good at the game show because he's just got what it takes, and he knows famous people but couldn't care less about them, and he's making lots of money every week but has no clue how much he's really making or even spending. And all of this has Miho heavily interested, and usually this would be a moment where I could poke fun at Miho, but for what she just went through in the previous episode, you know what, she gets a pass for this episode. We see Honda and Anzu talking about not liking this guy as Jinochi is quiet for some reason. Everything gets interrupted when the students catch wind of a surprise test coming in the next period, so they all freak out and start studying, with Yugi not even sure he knows what to study. But then Ryuichi flips open Yugi's book to what he needs to study, telling him he'll be golden if he just studies this page, coming off as a nice guy specifically to Yugi. When the next period comes, there is a test, and wouldn't you know it, he was right, and Yugi couldn't believe how he knew and how good he just is. And then only seconds later, Ryuichi brings his paper to the teacher, which by the way is the beauty-obsessed teacher, but Ryuichi's test page is blank, with him saying that he doesn't have any worries about getting zeros. There's more to life than that, especially for the chosen people, as he then walks out. When the teacher gets angry at his attitude and him walking out, he stops her in her tracks by saying her makeup's rubbing off, making this whole world feel more lived in because of the little details and callbacks like this. Plus, this is the best transition in history that I have ever seen. Her whole face cracks and falls off, with the next scene being in her face as a window to take us to it. That's insane, and it adds levels to her punishment from the other episode. After school, when walking with Yugi and his friends as well as trying to deal with the clinginess of Miho, he offers to treat them all to a nice meal at this expensive restaurant they pass, and when they walk in, this luck for him continues as he's the 10,000th customer since the restaurant opened, with the meal being completely free for them now. Before walking into the restaurant when the others were worried about the price of it, he says that they don't really get him yet, and after they go inside and everything is free, he's like, see, this is what I mean, without really going into detail about this being luck related, or if there's anything else going on to explain the luck that he seems to have with everything. During the meal, Jinochi is still being being really quiet as he stares Ryuichi down, with Honda thinking that Jinochi's going to snap and wants to fight this guy for some reason. And Honda really just wants that to happen so that he can enjoy his free food here and see this guy get hurt for stealing Miho's attention and admiration. Later on, after the meal, they end up walking by a game of luck where you can have a chance at winning some sort of prize while most people are just winning a consolation prize for playing. Ryuichi wants to make this fun and interesting, challenging Yugi to a bet of sorts where whoever gets the better prize, or the A prize with how it's categorized, being the winner, with the loser having to do one thing the winner says no matter what. Alright, that's a bit odd, but Yugi just goes with it. Yeah, sure. I'd never be so easily tricked into something like that.
Hey, pick a number from 1 to 10. You get it right, you win. You get it wrong, you give me $100.
Alright, you son of a shepherd, I'm in 6.
No, it was 7.
Dang it. Yugi ends up spinning for a prize first and ends up winning the consolation prize of a small package of tissues, while Ryuichi spins and wins the top prize, which is a trip to Italy. Why are all the prizes for random things trips to somewhere? Like the digital pet competition was a trip to Australia? This is a trip to Italy? Next you're gonna tell me that I could win a car at a Beyblade tournament. To be fair, I remember a lot of game shows specifically offering random destination travel packages as prizes, and God, I wish I was a contestant on Figure It Out. Oh, congratulations, Jonathan, you can turn slices of cheese into the shapes of states. Whoop-dee-dee, have a bowl of me! Okay, I'm gonna have a reference overload in a minute. I'm sorry, I'll back off. Anyway, Jinochi seems like he's about to snap on Ryuichi, but to everyone's, and mainly Honda's surprise, Jinochi didn't want to hurt this guy. He wanted to beg him for a chance to be his disciple. Wanting to learn how to be as lucky as him, as Ryuichi's just like, what are you, stupid? As he then just ominously tells Yugi that he'll see what he has in store for him for the bet that they made soon, as he just walks off. Jinochi starts tailing him, not wanting to give up on trying to be lucky like him, as he sees this group of little kids chasing after Ryuichi for an autograph, as they literally run into traffic and all nearly get hit. And now with them all crying and reaching up their hands for help, Ryuichi refuses to help any of them, claiming his luck will run dry if he touches unlucky people. And seeing this definitely makes Jinochi mad, so maybe Honda will get to see Jinochi beat him up at some point after all, or not. Pulling up next to Ryuichi ends up being someone sent by Seto Kaiba to come and get him, and during their meeting, it's revealed that Ryuichi is another one of the 4 game masters that Kaiba started introducing to us to try and deal with his Yugi problem. If you thought this Ryuichi guy was already crazy enough, he then showcases his luck to Kaiba right in front of him in a way more drastic way, unlocking a revolver that was on Kaiba's wall with his first passcode guess, and playing Russian roulette with no hesitation and like, yeah, okay dude, we get it. You're lucky, now can we all just calm down? But this dude really only cares about the thrill-seeking aspect of the stakes at play here, claiming that he's only here to help Kaiba based on being promised some life or death related battles, ready to put it all on the line as his motivation for doing any of this. After this convo, Jinochi is explaining to the others what he saw Ryuichi do, as they all then realize that Yugi isn't around, worried for what he could be involved with that guy, as we cut to Yugi being pummeled with billiard balls, as he's confused as to what kind of game this is that he's playing with Ryuichi, as Ryuichi says it's whoever gets the most hits wins, as we hear his inner monologue thoughts that this forcing Yugi to do what he says thing is him just trying to drag out the other side of Yugi, hoping to get him riled up enough through random billiard ball torture. Jinochi and Honda find the room that they're in and try to attack Ryuichi, but they both have bad luck and end up getting embarrassingly stopped and hurt from it. The girls walk in as well and see Ryuichi for who he really is, as things are just kind of left as is from there, as they attend to Yugi's wounds back at the game shop. Honda finds a letter for Yugi from the TV station that offers Yugi a chance to appear on the game show Ryuichi's on, with Kaiba setting up and pulling the strings on this thanks to his connections to the broadcast. Jinochi then begs Yugi to let him accept this and go on the show in his place. He wants a chance to face this guy and do so in this way if he can't just, physically beat him. That and, the potential of the prize money he could win. When we cut to the game show, they introduce Jinochi as Yugi, and Ryuichi doesn't seem to care, claiming things will still end the same way no matter what. They start things off by playing a game called Electric Concentration, seeing who can get the most cards from the board to be claimed by the winner, but with a hidden joker card in the mix, the person who pulls it will have to give all of their cards to the other player. It's a simple matching game, but with a twist, as Ryuichi ends up getting a pair of cards correct, which leads to Jinochi getting shocked, really putting the electric part into the name of the game. Ryuichi just wins, calling them all out instantly, as we also see that the joker card was just hidden in the middle slot the entire time, and that's like the most obvious spot, come on. After this, and backstage now, Ryuichi comes to see Jinochi and the others, entering the room by saying, "I am a god. Alright, slow down there, Yeezus. That album doesn't release for another 15 years at this point. As he then starts going in on Jinochi about his sob story, thinking it's pathetic and disgusting, but Jinochi's too weak to really fight back. Ryuichi just wants to play against Yugi, still wanting to force out this other side of him, as he just goes and kicks him in the back of the head. As he starts leaving though, Yami Yugi comes out to confront him, saying it's game time as they end up playing the same game as before, Electric Concentration. Only now with the stakes going up because the shocks will be a lot more powerful than they were on the show, as well as they will each take turns regardless if they get a match or not, making it so that Ryuichi can't just win with one shot and get the whole thing right. Yami ends up calling out the same two cards to flip every time, constantly getting them wrong and confusing Ryuichi, but from the electricity shocking Yami, the power ends up going out. But when it comes back on, Ryuichi's luck changes as when he calls out where he should believe a card should be based on Yami already revealing it multiple times, it turns out to be the Joker card now, meaning all the current cards won by him are now Yami's. All of the electricity all at once goes into shock Ryuichi, leading to his proper defeat, and his luck is all gone too from this, it seems. As later on another day we see everyone watching the game show with Ryuichi on it, and with this being right before getting to win the big amount of money for this win streak, he ends up losing. But hey, at least he didn't try testing if he still had luck or not with the game of Russian roulette, am I right? How was the game won here with the electricity going out and things switching places? I don't know, it's not really explained, it just kind of happens and we're just gonna go along with it as if luck changed or something, I don't know. But yeah, that's another one of Kaiba's game masters defeated. But for how things go in the manga, this chapter is only really about Jinochi, as he is going to be on a game show called the Get the Million game, where you can win 1 million yen. So yeah, the title really is on the nose, but he wants to win the money for the same reasons as we see in the episode. And that's all nice and good, but the producer of the show is claiming that a sob story like Jinochi is perfect to make for good television, claiming this kid will go through whatever it takes to try and win this money, even though no matter what, they will find a way to not give it to him in the end. Once on the show, the producer is trying to frame how pathetic of a person Jinochi is to the audience, to garner hope and sympathy for him, as Jinochi begins making his way through the challenges as the higher amounts of money are won, with him having to play a dart throwing game, then some electrical helmet operation type of game, but with that, Jinochi just needs to beat one more challenge game before completely winning the million yen. At one point, Yugi ends up needing to use the restroom, but on his way he ends up overhearing the producer talking about how the final game is rigged for Jinochi to lose, but hey, the ratings are up and the only one making money is the producer, so things are looking good for him. Well, they would have if Yugi didn't hear all of this. The final game is just spinning a wheel where one of the slices says 1 million yen, while all of the other ones say lose or have some sort of lame prize like some tissues. Oh, just like Yugi won in the episode. Behind the scenes, the game is rigged so that no matter when Jinochi says stop, he'll lose, but Yami Yugi is here, saying he'll expose the truth unless they play a little game of tug one of these ropes here and hope it's not the one attached to a bucket of paint. Yami wins this little game as the controls for the wheel get all covered in red paint, making it so that the producer can't find the right red button to push to make sure Jinochi loses, as Yami gives him the penalty game of Mind on Air, where yen symbols take over this guy's eyes and he ends up yelling into the broadcast camera that everyone watching is broke and they should give him what money they do have, as Yami drops the hardest line by saying, apparently, true poverty lives in the soul. And hey, Jinochi ended up having some luck here after all, because his call to stop the wheel resulted in him winning the 1 million yen. Or not, because while Yugi was helping to make sure Jinochi wouldn't be losing forcefully behind the scenes, by doing so, the results of the producer going crazy ended up bankrupting the production company, and Jinochi didn't get paid for anything. So he's just walking away crying at the end here because, the check bounced.
What? Oh no! You cannot beat me.
I can read your future. Watch. I see you clicking like on this video and subscribing if you aren't already. Well, if I'm wrong, it's probably because I can't read. Also, this is just a fushigi.
Fushigi!
How do they do it in the commercials? Ow, this thing is heavy. We get introduced to a character who goes by the name of Lord Kokurano, who is seen as this great prophet, being a student at the school that for some reason may just have psychic powers thanks to his foresight abilities to predict things happening, and guess what? Then they happen. Like this one person's house catching on fire that we see at the start, as that guy claims that the prophecy he was told was right. So more and more students are believing that this dude can really see people's futures. And come on. He literally tells another student that as long as they don't die, die, they will continue to live. But he's building up a cult following, so that's fun for him. Now, Jinochi and Honda end up wanting a reading done without wanting to admit that they truly want that, as this dude warns them that he isn't a fortune teller, he has the power of premonition, so specifically just the ability to see the future. He ends up telling Honda that he will marry the girl of his dreams, with Honda envisioning himself with Miho, so that's enough for Honda to accept everything going on here. But then an earthquake hits, with this so-called prophet here pulling out a piece of paper to claim that he saw the earthquake happening earlier this morning and wrote it down that it would happen. It just says earthquake today, and bruh, he can really just always be carrying this stuff on him on the off chance an earthquake does happen and just ready to whip it out and say, look, see, I called that happening today, I was right. Yugi's kind of skeptical about everything as everyone ends up believing what the guy says. We then see Yugi having a nice moment with Anzu about them walking home together and hanging out in general, but Kokorano interrupts, wanting to specifically give some future readings for her, but for now, she's not too interested. Plus, the dude is creepy. So the following day, Kokorano ends up walking by our main group and ends up telling Jinochi that he will be assaulted by a bright light, which sucks, but thanks for the warning, I guess, as he also tells Anzu that some guy is watching over her, but from an unknown location, in a more protective way, not a creepy way. And if she wants to learn more, she needs to come and visit him at his shrine. She's, again, not too interested in finding out more, claiming it all to be stupid, but also continues the day daydreaming over if someone really was admiring her from afar, and thinks about if it's the person who has saved her multiple times in the past. She's not fully convinced of anything that guy said, but that's until during gym class when a light fixture from the ceiling ends up falling down directly towards Jinochi, matching the prediction given out to him earlier. When Anzu ends up going to visit Kokorano now, he claims to have predicted it, pulling out another piece of paper to be like, see, I knew you'd come, as she lends him her hand that he then fondles in a creepy way that makes both her and Yugi uncomfortable, as he then says that the person who has been watching over her will soon appear before her, saying that she needs to wait in the science room of the school at 6 for the person to appear, and she'll certainly swoon into his arms. Yugi has had enough, jumping into the conversation to call this guy a fraud now, as he gets into a bit of a back and forth with him about his powers being real or not, leading to Kokorano seeing Yugi's future, telling him that countless letters fall from the heavens and bring disaster upon him. You know, whatever that means. Is it going to be like that one scene from Harry Potter? As Yugi and Anzu discuss things, Anzu's just claiming to be curious about who will show up. Like it could be the guy she's thinking of, meaning Yami Yugi, or it could be a random unknown stalker, but she tells Yugi not to worry about it for her. Yugi's all down in the dumps because he feels like Anzu might go fall in love with someone else, and that he quote unquote broke the rules of the game by trying to expose the tricks behind fortune telling or this whole premonition type of thing. He's pretty much feeling like the king of lames at the moment. That is, until he stumbles across a book in the hallway that makes him feel like he should go return it to the library like the good little student he is. But when putting it back, all of the bookcases start falling over to rain books onto him, aka the letters raining down from above. But as this happens, Yami Yugi comes out, aura farming that he dodged them all for the most part, as he catches a glimpse of someone running away, knowing it's Kokorano, and that he's behind making his own predictions come true. We cut to the science room to see Anzu waiting for whoever is coming, but surprise, surprise, Kokorano ends up appearing, saying it all came true, didn't it? As he's the one who appeared, as he then chloroforms her, causing her to pass out, or in his words, swoon into his arms. But Yami shows up, calls his predictions crap, even though technically he was kind of right. There Yami is, the guy Anzu was hoping for anyway. And upon hearing his voice, she starts waking up, but her vision is all hazy and she can't really make out what the guy looks like who's talking, and eventually falls back asleep. So for the challenge that Yami brings to Kokorano is having these chloroform bottles rigged up to the ceiling with strings that are all secretly attached to the clock on the wall, with the minute hand moving to cut each of them. But they have no way of knowing which one will fall corresponding to being cut, except, you know, for whoever set all of this up, because this is all pretty intricate, and I feel like Yami would know exactly what's what here, because he set it up. I'm assuming he did every little bit of this, but I digress. They need to take turns trying to catch the bottles, not knowing which one is going to drop, and if they are too slow and can't catch it, the chloroform bottle will break, and the fumes will get out, and that person will become unconscious. Kokorano starts panicking a little bit and ends up resorting to cheating, tripping Yami on one of his turns, but luckily he tosses his Millennium Puzzle, which somehow ties around the bottle as the puzzle itself gets stuck in the wall, saving the bottle from hitting the floor and breaking. Ridiculousness aside, he calls out Kokorano for his cheating ways, but chooses to continue the game, or at least the illusion of it, as when he goes in to run to grab the next falling bottle, Yami opens the door of darkness on him, as the bottle shatters and knocks Kokorano out, where we see countless predictions pre-written lining the cloak that he wears. Yami ends up carrying Anzu out of there as she's barely conscious, only seeing the shadow of the person helping her and the injury on that person's hand. Come the next day, when everyone's talking about making their own future come true and not living by some predictions, Anzu notices that Yugi has that same injury on his hand, ending the episode with her starting to put the pieces together, but also not fully believing that that could be true. There's no way Yugi is that guy, right? Well, maybe he is that guy, pal. Now, in the manga, the whole start of everything plays out the same aside from now having Anzu in place of Honda when Jinochi is first interested in getting his fortune told, and then after the earthquake happens, Anzu immediately is into getting her fortune revealed as the creep fondles her hand again. Gross. Basically, things continue to play out all the same up until the game Yami and Kokoranu play, as here, Yami places the bottle of chloroform on some scattered sheets of paper, as they each need to take turns pulling out the pieces of paper quickly, and whoever spills the chloroform loses, and in the end, the dude tries believing so hard that his powers are real, and thinks he can levitate the bottle to win when faced with a certain loss, but none of that's real. He just loses, and Yami takes Anzu to safety, calling her a sleeping beauty. There is no her waking up a bit to see who is really saving her. This was also a very early on chapter for the manga, so it's not like they were fully digging into any of that yet, at least as aggressively. Also, I never would have guessed I'd ever say chloroform as many times as I have in this video here, but you know, every day is a new adventure. And sometimes those adventures mean that I have to talk about some creepy dude in an anime or in a manga. And now it's time for a beach episode, amusement park episode. Okay, it's kind of like the same. There's a water park. They're in their swimsuits. It's the same thing. Continuing from what Anzu is suspecting from the ending of the last episode, she ends up asking Yugi out on a date of sorts to a water park. Well, it's also an amusement park too, but whatever. Yugi says yes because why would he ever say no to that? And oh yeah, there's a serial bomber on the loose, so that'll come into play at some point. Jinochi, Honda, and Miho overhear everything and want to go and spy on them to see if they are really going out on a date and secretly together, hiding this information from the rest of the group. There's this whole bit when buying entrance tickets that Yugi looks younger than he is, with them not believing that he's in high school, but nevertheless, he still gets in, and the whole younger looking aspect comes into play for a certain point though, so it wasn't just for poking fun at Yugi. Anyway, Anzu and Yugi start having some fun in the water, leading to one of the most iconic panels from the manga being animated here. Just look at him. He's cooked. Jinochi's kind of mad that he's fifth wheelering, since Honda is too busy with Miho to help him spy. So that sucks for him. The other ladies there won't even give him a chance. Poor Jinochi. Maybe he'll find a nice lady someday. Who knows, maybe a nurse. When the sun is beaming down, Anzu believes that she sees this other version of Yugi for a second, only for that moment to get ruined when Yugi gets sprayed with a water gun and chases after the kid who did it, with Anzu realizing that the regular Yugi she's known forever is really just like a little kid, not just with the way he looks and his height, but from his more childish nature. Anzu is still thinking about this other side of him though, wondering if it is true, then how will he come back out? Is it only if she's in danger? Well, she starts trying to put herself in fake danger, like pretending to drown, but other guys get to her first, and then little Yugi here needs help himself. Then later, when Jinochi in sunglasses as a disguise accidentally bumps into her, Anzu yells for help from Yugi, calling whoever touched her here a pervert, as these other guys then rush in to deal with Jinochi before she realizes it was him. Anzu just wants her privacy with Yugi so she can just get this other Yugi out, so she runs off saying to Yugi that they're playing tag, as they both kind of run away from now, and I guess Jinochi just has to get stuck with being called a pervert. Anyway, the bomb guy is coming into play here, as he's setting his sights on the amusement park to cause chaos and destruction. And once Anzu is on the Ferris wheel and really high up, with Yugi rushing in too late to the area, a small explosion happens, stopping the Ferris wheel from moving. Then over the speakers, the park announces that everyone needs to evacuate because of, you know, the threat of bombs being planted in the park. When the police arrive and talk to Yugi, we see that Anzu, along with several others, are all trapped on the Ferris wheel, which are where the actual bombs are planted. And it's revealed that the big bad bomb guy wants to play some games around this whole setup, and through playing along, with them having to release different colored balloons into the air, and depending on the color of the balloon, a different gondola will explode on the Ferris wheel. We see the first one to go is cart number 1. So it's a game of them needing to find out what the color correlation is to what gondola gets blown up. And now he wants to raise the stakes, pointing out Anzu stuck in gondola number 3, as they now need to guess what color blows that one up, as the police are just like, man, is anyone here good at games? It would really be helpful if someone who was good at games were here right now. That would just, oh, that'd be so cool. Like, all right, come on. We love the campiness, but like, that would just never happen.
Help, help! Is anyone here a YouTuber? I need the lore of a TV show explained to me, or else I'm not going to be able to make it through my workday without that background noise.
Sorry, well, I hope you find someone. Wait a second, I'm a YouTuber who does just that! Yami ends up becoming Yami Yugi, snatching the phone away from the police to speak with the Bomberman as Anzu sees the transformation, knowing this is the different Yugi she's been thinking about, confirming her thoughts on everything. So now Yami gets given 15 minutes to try and figure everything out and understand the correlation of all the balloons, or the guy is going to blow the whole Ferris wheel up essentially. To help, the guy says to release a yellow balloon, promising it won't be related to a gondola with someone inside of it, as it ends up blowing gondola number 10 up. So with Yami putting things together, he realizes that the guy is doing this from somewhere nearby and is able to watch everything happen. And now with time running out, he starts thinking of the Ferris wheel as a clock, and mentions if there is a flower clock in the park that splits up the colors into the corresponding 12 numbers, with Yami running to a vantage point to see if he can quickly spot it and call out the right color for gondola 3 in time. Once Yami makes it with only seconds left, he tells the bomber that they are going to play a different game now, one where Yami is going to call it exactly where the bomb is, all in a way to bait out exactly where the bomber was hiding all along, being on gondola number 13, which is kind of obvious if we're thinking about a clock here with, with 12, and then there's a 13th cart. But Yami gives him a penalty punishment, opening the door of darkness to make him think he's hearing and seeing a bomb with him on that gondola, and that it's about to go off, causing him to jump out of it as the police capture him and take him in. Now that the day is saved and Anzu is alright, she just asks him about where the cool Yugi went, since he's back to being a regular Yugi, which, ouch, yeah, that one kinda hurts. Anyway, she's just happy that she confirmed for herself that this other version of Yugi is who has been saving her. In the manga, this chapter takes place way closer to the end of the 7-volume run, being placed in the 6th volume, and things are kind of the same, as we start out with Anzu and Yugi arriving at the park after she asked him out, and yes, here's the iconic panel in the manga that we saw in the episode earlier. Nope, you gotta zoom in a little bit further. Yeah, there it is, perfect. Look at little Yug there, just cheesing. We see you, my boy. She's wanting this other version of Yugi to appear all the same, having a clear interest in that version of him. To get his attention with the danger stuff, she doesn't do the whole drowning thing, as well as Jinochi isn't the one she calls a pervert. Instead, all that happens is a random dude tries hitting on her, and she calls him a pervert. And then we get to her going onto the Ferris wheel after an announcement of a bomb being hidden in the park, and she's way too excited about putting herself in real danger here. Oh no, there's a bomb in the park? I guess I'll get in the Ferris wheel. Maybe the cool Yugi will come out and save me. The game being played between Yugi and the bomber, though, is going to be different, as we see it's clock solitaire instead as Yami Yugi comes out to play. The game has you take a standard deck of cards, remove the jokers and shuffle the 52 remaining, then dealing them into 13 piles of 4, all in a clock formation with the 13th pile being in the middle. The game starts with the turning over of the first card in the middle 13th pile, going from there to flip over cards in the corresponding positions based on the last flipped card. So here, when the card flipped in the middle pile has a 3 on it, it goes into the bottom of the 3 position, and then that top card is flipped, revealing a 4, and placing that 4 onto the bottom of the 4th position, and so on and so forth. And here, once Yami fully completes all of the 4s in this seemingly easy game, gondola number 4 explodes, and Yami understands that the only way to win is by getting all 4 kings in the middle 13th position for the game to be over. But with time running out and the number 3 spot being filled with 3 out of the 4 threes needed to blow up Anzu's gondola, the heart of the cards really comes into play here as Yami luckily draws the 4th king card and wins the game. Anzu is rescued, Yami tells the police that in gondola 13 is the bomber, explaining how he figured all that out, and Anzu never brings up anything about seeing Yugi in the transformed way that she wanted to. She just wants to continue their date. But at least we get this cute drawing after the chapter ends. Man, Yugi's just still geeking. It's time for another anime exclusive episode of the series. We're mixing together some witchy vibes and duel monsters here, as we first end up seeing these supposed witches doing some witchcraft related witch stuff. Sorry, I don't know how else to describe it. But more importantly, we see that Grandpa has got in some new duel monster cards, and Yugi and Anzu are each given a pack on the house. How kind. Yugi doesn't pull anything new or exciting, but Anzu ends up pulling a card called Violet Hecate, a card that Yugi really wants. It's one of 3 witch sister cards, and because he's so into the card, she gives it to him, and he's all excited, but at the same time, one of those witches from the beginning is in the shop and notices this card being pulled before disappearing without anyone noticing. I do want to mention that when Anzu ends up giving this card to Yugi, she commentates to herself over his excitement, finding it hard to believe that both Yugis are the same person, and that this Yugi is childish, but she's not meaning it in the specifically mean way it sounds, only just in an observation type of way for his attitude and joy over stuff like duel monsters. The next day at school, things take a bit of a turn for Yugi's love life as he ends up finding a love note left for him, to which Anzu gets pretty jealous about, not easily hiding her protective feelings over Yugi, as she ends up reading the note where some person named Arisa Kagayame is expressing how much they like Yugi and and want to meet up after school at the park. While Anzu is feeling a type of way about this, it is kind of funny to see Jinochi and Honda really just overly excited to see if this girl who is into Yugi is ugly or not. Then when a girl starts walking towards Yugi as the rest of the gang are watching and providing their own commentary, they notice this girl's uniform is from the Black Roses Girls Academy, which is a school for rich girls. But surprise, it may just be a school for witch girls instead, because yeah, this is one of the witch girls here, specifically the one who visited the shop at the start. She ends up saying hi to Yugi, handing him something she sewed for him, but when she notices the Millennium Puzzle, thinking it's a cool pendant, something happens to her where she recoils to it and ends up running off and saying bye to Yugi for now. And what she made him was a nice summer outfit, but Yugi's clearly kind of confused and not really sure about anything going on, as Anzu's all like, so now what, you gonna go out with her, huh? Is that what you're gonna do? Poor little Yugi is just overwhelmed and unsure of it all. Through her jealousy of this, Anzu is called out by Miho, to which Anzu responds that she's worried as a friend, which Yugi seemingly takes as a friend zone type of moment. Later on in the night, Risa ends up calling Yugi, asking to meet again the next day, and he agrees to it. But his plans are to tell her directly that he isn't interested. He just wants to do it respectfully and politely because he's just a nice fella. Right when they meet, she brings another gift to him, this time being some gloves that she made, but Yugi just questions her about the note that she wrote him, wanting to know why she wrote it in the first place, as she explains that she fell in love with him at first sight at the game shop, and she is clearly playing a game here with Yugi's emotions, claiming that I guess there's someone else in Yugi's life and that, you know, she should be going. But Yugi stops her, calling her pretty and saying that what she's saying is not the case, as we get to see the evil-like smirk on her face, knowing he's falling right into her trap. After they plan to meet again soon, with Yugi now being around his friends, Yugi pretends that maybe he was dumped and he isn't talking to or seeing Risa at all, but he's noticing more and more that Anzu is feeling something over this, so maybe the whole friend zone thing is not what it could seem. He does think to himself that the next time he meets Risa that he'll officially do it and break things off with her. Later on, when walking around with his friends, Yugi notices Risa from a distance and sneaks away to go and see her, but this catches someone else's eye, Seto Kaiba's to be specific, as he sees Yugi with her and for some reason knows who this girl is and is worried about her being with Yugi. For now though, Yugi is back home as Anzu visits looking to see him, but Grandpa tells Anzu that he's a bit sick, as she just goes upstairs to see him anyway, as we see Grandpa just sigh and say that he's now responsible after failing to do anything to really stop Anzu from going up to see what she's about to see, and I just think that's funny for him, because what she does see is that Yugi is actually sick, but Risa is there taking care of him. Then there's this whole bit where Anzu is trying to help, running out to the store to get different things Risa needs to help take care of Yugi, but every time she comes back, Risa already has what's needed thanks to someone else having shown up, like Jinochi and Honda. Every time she goes out though, another girl is following her, eventually pushing her down an escalator, as Anzu blames it all on Risa, but how could that be because she never left Yugi's side when any of that happened? Risa then asks Yugi about having something to hold on to that's his, you know, kind of like a keepsake in a relationship, as she tries helping herself to the Violet Hecate. But Yugi says that he can't let her have that card because someone precious gave it to him, which definitely gave him some brownie points with Anzu, but definitely the opposite with Risa. He tries offering her other cards, but she says she's not into it and leaves feeling angry and slighted by Yugi. So of course Yugi ends up feeling bad about it all, but after saying goodbye to the rest of his friends, Yugi ends up finding that other girl that Anzu got pushed by in his room that he even mistakes for Risa, as she's looking for that card, being alerted to Yugi and attacking him. Luckily, through Yugi's struggle, his friends are alerted and end up rushing back in to help him, and now with Yugi free from her grasps, they all try to escape from the house, getting constantly cornered by who they believe is just Risa, but after Jinochi sacrifices getting his scapegoats whipped, the others are able to make a break for it, and as Anzu and Yugi are running, they end up surrounded by what looks like 3 Risas as they realize that these are triplets, with them snatching Yugi's Millennium Puzzle, wanting a duel from Yugi over him getting his puzzle back and them getting the card that they want from him. So then we just cut to them having a duel, and while he can't use the power within his puzzle to help out or make this a shadow game, the witches surprise Yugi with the cards still coming to life thanks to them explaining that they have a special mechanism that allows for the illusions of the monsters to come to life. Through the start of the duel, the witches also show off that they have the other 2 witch cards, Red Hecate and Yellow Hecate, so it's no wonder that they want the third one from Yugi so bad. After the witches start quoting some dialogue that makes them seem more menacing for their anticipation of all 3 cards coming together, Seto Kaiba appears from the shadows, calling them all out for just quoting lines from the 3 witches of Macbeth, with him surprising everyone here, but especially Yugi, because Kaiba starts lore dumping about the Kageyama triplets and their well-known dueling tactics in the world of duel monsters. He then sits down next to Yugi, wanting to take over the duel, offering up his usual offer of a briefcase of cards on the off chance that he loses to them, as well as adds the Violet Hecate to their hand to give them the advantage here in the match. Right away, Kaiba brings out his blue eyes white white dragon, which is surprising, as the witch sisters fuse all the Hecates together to create the legendary Gorgon, coming out with the same attack points as the Blue Eyes, but having an extra buff based on the field they are played on, meaning that if they each take each other out, Gorgon will still stay standing from that buff. But then, even more shockingly, we get Kaiba showing off that he has a second Blue Eyes, and now everyone's getting a little worried here.
Alright dude, what the flip?
And I think this is such a brilliant teaser of what's to come for his character in general, making it known that he has two Blue Eyes right now for some reason, and it's kind of taking a bit of a moment from the manga, but you know, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, Kaiba wins, telling Yugi after he asks why he came here and dueled for him, that Yugi's not the type of man who would lose to these fools, and then he just starts leaving. Which, all of this is kind of weird, but okay, let's be real. Kaiba just wanted to show off his dueling skills in front of Yugi, building up that he wouldn't lose to him again. Either that or he has a crush on Yugi too, and hey, the verdict is still out on that, and you can't tell me otherwise. But you know, before truly leaving, he does tell Yugi that the only one who will defeat Yugi will be him. So he's kind of like a guardian angel, but he's also gonna be like a devil, but he's not Angel Devil. That character's too precious. You just gotta love Kaiba sometimes. He's just genuinely a madman, both in this season's Hero series and just Yu-Gi-Oh proper.
Well, that doesn't affect me much at all. I'll keep attacking.
Serenity now! Serenity now! No, that wasn't just a reference to Seinfeld. And if you got the reference, you're old like me, congratulations. In this Jinochi filler anime-only episode, we end up getting introduced to Jinochi's younger sister, Serenity. Well, that's not her name here. It's actually Shizuka, but much like we know her from the anime, she's in the hospital here too. Firstly, at the hospital, we get to see that the main doctor here is an absolute prick who gives little care to those in need of his care, and those who work under him, like the nurses and the staff at the hospital. Jinochi is on his way to the hospital and ends up running into Yugi. Then after a whole kerfuffle with this big stuffed bear that he was bringing that ends up getting destroyed, Jinochi asks Yugi to come with him as he opens up about his sister, and how his parents divorced and how his mother took her with her as he ended up staying with his father. He claims that his sister has always been fragile and in and out of hospital her whole life, and today is her birthday, and Jinochi just wants to help make her smile more, asking Yugi in general to keep what he's saying about all of this a secret between just them. We get to see them all meet and how Jinochi can make her smile and laugh, and everything seems so wholesome and nice, especially when the boys meet the nurse, named Miyuki, that is helping take care of her, as she ends up attending to Jinochi's wounds and scrapes as well from all the stuff that happened earlier. He even feels so loved and taken care of, and it seems like he's catching some sort of feelings for her, but after they leave for the evening, it seems that the doctor himself has some feelings for her too, trying to get her to go on a date with him as she continues to reject him and solely just wants to focus on taking care of the patients. The next day, the whole friend group arrives at the hospital as Yugi didn't keep things a secret, and after the nurse says hi to them all and reminds Jinochi to come and see her later so that she can change his bandages, the others all think he's only really here for the nurse. Heck, his own sister is like, you know, she's single, right? Honda takes Jinochi with him to help him have a chance with her, handing him a random bag saying there was a present inside that he should go and give her. So he does so without knowing what's inside, and when he gives it to her, she ends up seeing that it's underwear, to which Jinochi freaks out, grabs it back, and tosses it aside, but hey, you know, at least that old man is happy about it. He also might be dead. The doctor ends up cornering the nurse a bit once more, trying to get her to go out with him and go on a trip together, as she is clearly saying no to this, but he continues to persist. Jinochi sees and hears all of this, threatening him to stop what he's doing or else, but the nurse slaps the doctor, letting him know even more clearly that she's not to be treated this way by him, and she cares about her job and helping others. And after this whole mess happens, Jinochi continues his days being sad over fumbling things with the nurse, and for jumping into a situation she clearly was able to handle on her own. But Yugi later on confronts Jinochi using an old line that he once told Yugi all the way back from the start of the series, as Yugi yells, "You will never become a man," which ends up cheering Jinochi up a bit from the humor of it all, having his own words used against him by the same person he told them to. So now back at the hospital with some flowers and some pep in his step, he gets informed by his sister that the nurse is being forced to leave by the doctor as he wants to make her regret what she did to him. We also get a flashback to see that Jinochi didn't completely fumble things, as after he runs after her, after she slapped the doctor, I think I just said after too many times in that one sentence, we see that he apologizes for any problems he caused, and she ends up smiling and wanting to treat his wounds again, as we see the doctor then spying in on this happening. So now with Jinochi pissed at everything, he ends up confronting the doctor, knowing that she was wrongfully terminated based on how he's framing why she was fired, because he was there and knows that none of that is true. But the doctor starts threatening other things, like the fact that Jinochi's sister may not be staying long in this hospital, which has everything she needs to properly be taken care of that a lot of other hospitals just don't have. So if Jinochi wants to ruin the doctor's reputation, he has no problem making sure Shizuka doesn't have a place here in the hospital for her. So Jinochi ends up running out of the hospital, feeling helpless in what he can do, and taking all of the blame personally for the situation, as he's now at the beach during sunset and crying in front of Yugi. And the emotional spark Yugi feels over seeing someone like Jinochi cry has Yami Yugi come out, as we get this haunting shot of Yami's shadow, where the eyes and the Millennium Eye on the forehead are shining out of it as we traverse the halls of the hospital to make it to the doctor's office. And here, as the doctor is on the phone bragging about him firing the nurse for not accepting his advances on her, he is caught off guard to the sound of his voice saying that over and over again, as in the doorway is Yami holding a tape recorder, showing he captured everything he just said, as he tells him that it's time to play a little game now. At the same time, Shizuka tells Jinochi that Miyuki is going to leave town and is heading for the train station, but he could probably go and reach her before she leaves, as he contemplates what he should do. For Yami and the doctor, the game they play is basically some golf in the hallways of the hospital, and oh my god, is that a Millennium golf ball? Anyway, Yami is playing the game with a stethoscope as his golf club, using it like a slingshot in order to hit his ball, which just makes the doctor believe that he's already won. But Yami hits a ridiculous hole-in-one, causing the doctor to get angry and to try and attack him, but uh-oh, that's not allowed, is it? So Yami opens the door of darkness, and no, I mean like literally this time, as a bunch of zombie patients bust open through a door and swarm the doctor, as they most likely resemble all of the patients that he's let pass away due to his negligence and outright disregard for their health and care. As for Jinochi, he does reach the train station and ends up finding Miyuki, asking her to come back to the hospital, as he'll help prove her innocence, as he tries handing her the flowers that have all now fallen out due to him running there. She takes them with a smile, but tells him that she wanted to leave that place a long time ago, as we see she's with another man here, as she says she's going with this doctor to work at a small clinic on an island, telling Jinochi to come and visit sometime during the summer or something, as she then leaves. So while he didn't get the girl and still feels down about how things went down, back at the hospital the next day, every one of his friends are there to all surprise him in the efforts of cheering him up. So that's kinda sweet. They're kinda busting his scapegoats a bit, but it's nice. And as for the doctor, well, the audio recording of him saying what he said is on repeat next to him, as he's stuck in his punishment on the floor, as the rest of the staff witness him doing this. For this episode, I did think that the storyline of Jinochi and this nurse was going to go in a way of where he feels so loved and taken care of, in a way that feels not like he ends up with a crush on her, but as if he was missing some form of motherly love and care in his life. Someone who would help him if he got hurt and let him know that everything's going to be alright, based on him talking about his parents splitting up, and him being with his dad, and probably not getting to see his mom a whole lot. Aside from that though, what's really interesting here, at least to me, is that Serenity, or Shizuka, does not appear in the original 7 volumes of the manga, and is only brought in later in the Yu-Gi-Oh Duelist manga series that is more in line with the main Yu-Gi-Oh anime. So it was cool to see some other origin-related stuff with her character within Season 0 here. To continue our string of anime-only episodes, we move forward once again with the Game Master plot. We get to meet this Game Master right away, as she is the famous model named Eileen, who ends up visiting Japan, and as she is getting swarmed by paparazzi and the press upon arrival, she ends up getting picked up by a famous soccer player named Harada, which stuns the paparazzi even more. This guy though thinks there's something more to being called by her to come and get her, as she's all about going and seeing someone else here in the country when it comes to games. But he says he's somewhat of a gamer himself, wanting to take her back to his apartment. But once they get to where she's staying, she ends up introducing him to the game that she wants to play, called Raijinhai. He says that if he wins, she'll have to come back with him to his place, as she says that if she wins, he will lose something important to him. We find out that she easily won, as the next morning when meeting with Kaiba, she explains how she quickly beat this boring opponent, as on the news we see the guy all beaten up and going to the hospital as he cries about not being able to play soccer anymore. Ouch. Kaiba then changes the TV to show Yugi being her next opponent, as she thinks this is some sort of joke, admitting that she's part of the Game Masters specifically to be introduced to intelligent or famous men to take them down. Kaiba then shows her the other side of Yugi, which quickly makes her more into facing off against him and crushing him. At the game shop, Anzu is freaking out over Eileen being in town, as she's a super fan of hers, as originally before becoming a model, she was a dancer who even appeared in a Broadway musical, with Anzu claiming her to be her idol. And hey, look at that, she just so happened to walk into the shop. How convenient. convenient. But when she does walk in, Yugi just turns to his grandpa and says she's a foreigner. And alright, Yug, I can't tell if you're just excited over the fact of meeting someone from a different country, or if you just have a little bit of racism going on there. But either way, Anzu is freaking out over meeting her. Eileen is clearly into games, wanting to know what Yugi is good at playing, and she even makes a comment asking if Anzu is his girlfriend. And based on his flustered answer, she gets all the info about her that she needs to know. She ends up inviting both of them over, wanting to hang out, play some games, you know, just have a chill, fun time, with Anzu being way more excited, feeling like this is her big moment with her idol, when secretly her idol is just using her in a way to get to Yugi. As she has Yugi setting up some game-related stuff, she shows Anzu her dance room, having her do some ballet poses before telling her to hold a certain pose, which triggers her ability to keep Anzu frozen in time and stuck in that pose, as she then goes to tell Yugi about it, saying that if he wants to save her, then he has to go up against her in a game of Raijinhai. Through his worrying over Anzu, he immediately transforms into Yami Yugi, as Eileen begins explaining how this game is played, and it is essentially a blind battling game. Each side has these different figures that either are stronger or weaker to the other figures, or even have a once-a-game use of invincibility to win a battle, and on the board they play on, once the divider goes up, each player chooses one of the figures they will send out, revealing it to each other at the same time, and seeing who beats who here, with the overall winner being determined based on who runs out of figures first, basically. Randomly, in the middle of the game, Eileen raises the stakes, showcasing that she has this giant tiger on the ready to pounce and kill Anzu, depending how things go from here. Yami understands that she's trying to read his moves based on emotions and distress, so he just starts playing blindly, not trying to think about or even look at what figure he's about to play in order to try and throw her off. And Yami showcases how quickly he has understood the game, as well as the tactics his opponent is using and how to truly use them against her, especially when he drops the bombshell about the origins of this game coming from ancient Egypt, as he says he has 5,000 years of Egyptian knowledge versus the 2,000 years of the tactics she claims that this game has. And for the first time ever for her, she loses, dramatically now looking out of the window. Yami then asks her how she would even have the power to freeze Anzu like that in the first place, as she explains that her words can enter the subconscious of people's hearts, and as she goes on about this, it doesn't explain anything. She could just do that to people, I guess. Then there's kind of this real honest moment between the two of them about even though you lost at a game, it doesn't mean that you lose everything, as well as speaking about how Yami truly did play the game with his eyes closed in that moment to not know what he played. It really just kind of fascinates and impresses her. Yami tells her that she was a particularly strong opponent, and she's grateful for hearing that. And as she opens the door for him to go get Anzu, the freeze effect wears off and Anzu slaps Yami, turning him back into regular Yugi, as she thought he was interrupting her private dance lessons with her, as neither of them have a clue as to what happened here in the first place. In the end, Kaiba tells Eileen that she's no longer a game master, and she tells him that Yugi is stronger than him, as he yells for her to leave, as he angrily curses Yugi. What a great way to end things, is what I would say if there wasn't this final bit with her flying home and wishing to play the game with Yugi again in the future, as maybe the crushing him turned into a crush on him, because she says the next time she'll see him, it will be a game of love instead. She's 19. But let's -1 from that, because it's time to talk about episode 18. Things start off way different than usual as we get this whole sequence of some ancient time in history, and there's this jar that spills open and holy crap, is that a dragon? Well, all of this was just a dream that this kid named Amori is having. Well, I guess it was more of like a nightmare. But anyway, our main group here end up seeing him being bullied and pressured into playing a coin tossing game, as Yugi steps into play, winning it, with Jinochi and Honda making sure that these bullies leave without making things into a bigger fuss for now. Amori actually looks up to Yugi, wanting to be more like him, claiming that he isn't good at games like Yugi is. During class later on, Amori ends up writing a note for Yugi, just as a way to thank him, but also inviting him over to see his secret base, which isn't weird or creepy at all, but of course, Yugi, being the kind soul he is, ends up going to his house to see this secret base, as it was just technically a hidden cellar within his house, and at least it wasn't another, warehouse, am I right? He explains to Yugi that this is his space where he can't be bullied, and can just get away from the world, as he also has a bunch of games to play, but Yugi notices that they're all single-player games. Amori asks Yugi if they can be friends, to which of course Yugi says yes to, with Amori then breaking down crying, claiming that he's never had a real friend before this in his life, and because of this friendship, he offers to show Yugi a more unique and rare game that his parents have, leading them into a deeper, near dungeon-like area of this house, like what is going on here under this house, and while there, his Millennium Puzzle starts acting funny once they reach this weird door that's hard to open. But with Yugi being Yugi, he figures out the puzzle-like nature of the door, revealing the image of a dragon on it, the one that we saw at the start, as it now opens, and inside is that same jar. They end up up going to Grandpa with it for some answers as to what this game is, but he warns them that this is not to be opened. It's very dangerous. He calls it the Ryuhai, or simply the Dragon Block, saying it's an ancient Chinese game that was used to teach Taoism and Feng Shui, with Grandpa going into what Feng Shui is, going into Taoism, as well as into yin and yang from there, in regards to the world being balanced by light and darkness. He explains that if the Dragon Block were unsealed, that yin and yang would erode each other, and a mixed power would come to be created. To what that power would be, I don't know, probably not something good. It transcends human knowledge. Grandpa reiterates the importance of never opening the jar, the seal, it can't come undone, but you know what's about to happen. As Amori is walking home, thinking to himself what it would be like to have that kind of power, something greater than our own human knowledge, the same bullies he was dealing with earlier show up and they trip him, knocking down the Dragon Block game as it breaks open and spills out everything inside. We see it starting to glow a bit as an earthquake begins to happen, as we see a whole island that sinks into the ocean from there. That's odd. I hope that it's not the same island that the nurse was going to. In school the next day, Anzu talks about one of the bullies who was messing with Amori was just found laying in the middle of the street with no clue as to what happened to him. And as for Amori, something about him is off. His demeanor has changed, and he pulls Yugi aside and asks for his homework because he didn't have the chance to do it last night. When Yugi doesn't know what to do, Amori pulls the "I thought we were friends" card, as Shinochi overhears everything and sticks up for Yugi to not listen to this guy. He's just being selfish. That isn't friendship. Amori calls Yugi a traitor and later on steals his Millennium Puzzle, leaving a note behind that says if he wants it back, he needs to come to his secret base, signing the note as the Messenger of Darkness. Yeah, okay, man, relax. Yugi heads over to Amori's as he's already waiting for him there, surprising Yugi as he undoes the seal of the Dragon Block, saying he can get his puzzle back, but they must face each other in a game of Dragon Block first. Amori explains that the only way to seal the game back up is to sacrifice the loser's soul into the pot, which kind of explains what happened to that bully from earlier. Amori then sets up the game with a map of Japan, as well as some tiles to represent each player's base. From there, they must take turns grabbing 6 blocks from the box, with each block representing dragons with different powers. Once you match 3 of the same block, you can summon a dragon, and you want to complete 2 dragons in your hand and hope to have the stronger pairing to end up the victor in the battle against your opponent. You remove blocks out of your hand to end up drawing another, and that's how you really build your hand. There's a whole other element chart explained about what types of dragons are stronger than another, as Yugi ends up summoning 2 fire dragons while Amori summons 2 water dragons, with Yugi being defeated in this matchup. But the larger twist is that wherever the base was put for the person who lost, a natural disaster ends up taking place there. Then Yugi gets stabbed and his soul is taken, which I swear was just Okarune's golden ball. If you know, you know. But Yugi's body just goes limp from this, collapsing onto the table, but thanks to his hand landing on the Millennium Puzzle, Yami Yugi is able to come out, take the puzzle back, and now play the game properly against Amori. This time, Amori puts all of Tokyo on the line if Yami loses, making the stakes, you guessed it, even higher. Amori summons out his dragons first, this time being water and wood, with Yami's being metal and earth, with Yami explaining that his 2 dragons work really well together. The earth dragon gives power to the metal dragon and vice versa, giving them protection from Amori's attacks, but Amori strategizes here as well, with the water dragon helping out his wood dragon to become more powerful to start taking out Yami's earth dragon. Luckily, Yami's metal dragon is able to weather the attacks and manages to cut through Amori's wood dragon, setting free his earth dragon, and then being able to finish off Amori's water dragon, resulting in Yami's win and Amori's defeat. Yami sends Amori's soul into the jar as he gets Yugi's back, but this wasn't just Amori's soul, it was a darker entity that had taken over him, getting put back and sealed away as the real Amori wakes up from everything that happened. Yami helps seal the Dragon Block back where they found it, and all is good. In the manga, some things are slightly different, like we start out with Amori just coming into the game shop one day with the jar, wanting Yugi's grandpa to take a look at it as he claims that this is something his grandfather had, and Amori wants to learn more about it. Grandpa explains that the game here is called Dragon Cards, and the seal on it must never be broken. We then cut right away to Yugi's Millennium Puzzle getting stolen by Amori, and the location of where they meet is just a random room within the school itself. For Amori's motivation in stealing it, he claims that he saw how Yugi used to get bullied all the time, and then one day things changed after he built the Millennium Puzzle, claiming to know that he got the powers of darkness from it, and now he wants the same for himself based on his own situations. He has all of this knowledge of old games in ancient Egypt thanks to his grandpa, and he really wants to win Yugi's spot here by having the puzzle to become the Guardian of Darkness himself, claiming that he and Yugi will be playing a shadow game with the Dragon Cards, which is a cool bit of role reversal here. The game is played the same basically, only now these cards have a bit of a leveling system that can determine the power of the dragon, which isn't much more important here, as well as there is no threat to random parts of Japan for natural disasters to happen, so that's nice at least. Yugi plays a fire and a metal dragon that end up losing to Amori's 2 water dragons. The same thing happens to bring out Yami Yugi, and the next match begins with Amori having his water and wood dragons come out, going up against Yami's earth and metal dragons. Yami ends up winning and then gives Amori the penalty game of having his soul eaten by all of the dragons, as the husk of Amori is left sitting there motionless, as Yami is just happy to get Yugi's soul back. And man, you know, what a terrible and scary game this is. No wonder you shouldn't open the seal. If only someone had warned us about that. But yeah, that's it. We don't really know what happens to Amori. He's just seemingly lifeless and left in the classroom. What a terrible and scary game that was. Anyone up for some Pokemon Master Trainer?
Yu-Gi-Oh!
So this episode's pretty interesting, and not for what it's really about, but for what it actually teases. This is partly an anime-only episode, and I say partly for specific reasons that we'll get into in a minute, but the main setup is this popularity contest going on at the school, with the story mainly focusing on Miho here going up against another student named Kaukuro. Even though Miho at first doesn't have any interest in participating, she eventually does after meeting a certain character that she thinks is attractive. Others like Jinochi and Anzu sign up, with her signing up specifically because of the prize, that being tickets to a musical on Broadway, so I don't know if that includes the cost of the flights and hotel. Probably not. This is a school-ran event, but I'll count this as another contest with a destination-related prize. When the contest is going on, Jinochi is constantly getting booed and humiliated by the audience for being in this. He even performs in drag at one point, but it's really just a battle between the girls here, as the audience just cheers each of them on. Things are also being rigged behind the scenes, leading to Anzu getting clowned on as well. And once Miho is also sabotaged by the other girl after taking so much of the spotlight away from her in the competition, Yami Yugi comes in to investigate and handle things his own way, confronting Kaukuro and challenging her to a game of taking flowers from the bundle that she has, between 1 and 3 each time, with whoever pulls the last one being the loser. Yami ends up winning because of course he does, and he just turns her old, making her skin all wrinkly, which is pretty funny to see. He tells her that beauty doesn't last forever, and then snakes come down and kind of tie around her wrists, but in reality, when she's on stage, she looks normal and she's just holding 2 ropes, as she then pulls them, which releases buckets of water that pour down all over her. And just be glad your name isn't Carrie and it wasn't buckets of blood up there. She's turned into a laughingstock and is humiliated even though she technically wins. For the most part, this whole episode is nothing all that special, just another story within this world with our characters, but that's just on the surface, as partway in, Yugi ends up bumping into an important character that has a larger role to play soon, that being Bakura, who has this kind of basic back and forth with Yugi, as Bakura wasn't sure if he did anything wrong for why they're stopped and speaking to one another, thanks to him having some memory issues, something Yugi takes notice of and is also kind of dealing with. While there is nothing too incredible to write home about from their encounter, Yugi's Millennium Puzzle reacts to Bakura for some reason. And also, Bakura is the reason why Miho changes her mind about being in the contest, thinking she could have him accompanying her on stage for part of it, but you know, that never happens. And this Bakura entrance is not how it's even done in the manga, so I'll wait to speak on the manga in those comparisons until they actually happen. But this isn't the only tease that we have here, because at the very end of the episode, while Yugi is walking around and thinking about this new Bakura character, someone's little brother ends up driving by and seeing Yugi, as we get the entrance of none other than Mokuba, as he's alluding to something coming soon between them, clutching tight some capsule monsters. So while the episode is really just some random filler story that is fine at the end of the day, we do get some really cool build-ups and teases for the remaining episodes of the series. Now it's time to focus on the final Game Master. We start off focusing on Seto and Mokuba making preparations for something that's upcoming, as well as they are preparing for the arrival of their father, but in the meantime, Seto needs to handle his Yugi business still, getting ready to send in his 4th and final Game Master, as it ends up being this grandfather-like figure that is also maybe technically this butler that he had throughout his life, as we get to see some flashbacks to when Seto was young, and how the two of them would play different types of games together, and eventually, Seto got better and better at them. Also, I say butler loosely only because he resembles this guy from the manga a bit, who is Seto's butler, but cut to now, well, 1998 now, and this guy, Daimon, is still being kept alive through some expensive fancy Kaiba Corp technology, with Seto waking him back up for the limited time this technology keeps him up. Aside from the Kaibas using him for just Seto's random bidding, it seems they also use him for major business meetings and dealings because for whatever reason, a business meeting here starts with a game of duel monsters, naturally, and this is something that old man wins as a way to kind of show off how great of a duelist he is. Meanwhile, Anzu and Yugi are out on another date of sorts, with Anzu even bringing up that she wants to go to another amusement park soon, and like, didn't the whole bomber situation just happen? Why would you be wanting to go back to any place like that anytime soon? Anyway, while they are out, Yugi gets distracted with the shop selling Duel Monster stuff, so he runs across the street to go and check it out, right as a car comes swerving around the corner, and then swerving once more to avoid hitting Yugi and crashing into a pole, with the person in the back of the car being Daimon. Now at the hospital, Yugi takes all the blame for this happening, but the doctor tells them that this dude's been dead for a long time, it seems, and for whatever reason he has all these artificial organs inside of him, shocking the doctor over what the heck is going on. And right now, Yugi just thinks he killed a dude, but the dude wakes up at the perfect time to be like, yeah man, I'm kind of like a zombie of sorts, right? He also says that he lives for playing games. They give him energy, and thanks to him noticing Yugi having a deck of Duel Monster cards on him, he wants to play a match with him right away, and Yugi would never say no to that. Through this, we can see that Daimon is seeing Yugi in the same light he used to see Seto in when he was younger, so happy, so full of spirit, and someone who thoroughly loved playing games. But this guy's also really good at Duel Monsters, and Yugi loses here. It wasn't a high-stakes match, nor was Yami Yugi here out to play, but Yugi still lost. Afterwards, Seto ends up coming into the room, having his people take Daimon back to their own medical facilities to take care of him, as he tells Yugi that it seems there is some strand of destiny that continues to intertwine the two of them. How poetic, Seto. Thank you. Back at Kaiba Corp, the Kaiba brothers' father and founder of Kaiba Corp, Gozaboru, makes his entrance to figure out what's going on with his company since it's been left in the hands of Seto as the acting CEO. And their daddy here is mad because the budget for this upcoming Kaiba Land amusement park has exceeded its original budget by 3 times. But Seto isn't worried. He believes in his vision. So when Gozaboru tries taking his company back over, Seto snaps his fingers and shows that the rest of the board there all have sided with him and he's not going anywhere. Seto's the CEO for good now. He tells his father something that he used to tell him growing up, and that's that those who lose in the game of life do not deserve to live. As Gozaboru is shocked to hear this, he then looks down at the street below and then collapses from it all. I'm not sure what really happened here, but alright, that happened. Technically, this bit is adapting a part of the manga that comes later on after some big things go down between Seto and Yami Yugi, where we get some flashbacks to Seto's childhood and life growing up in the business world, bringing us to the same moment in the boardroom where after all these years of abuse he dealt with from his father, he finally has the chance to take over as CEO of Kaiba Corp, with Gozaboru yelling that he lost the game, saying to burn this into his brain, and that's that a loser deserves this, as he maniacally laughs and then jumps out of a window to his death, teaching Seto that to lose means to die. And also, that's the most traumatic thing ever. Your adoptive father just doing that in front of you, let alone at all? Man, the original Yu-Gi-Oh series had some wild moments, that's for sure. Moving on, Seto then gets preparations ready for Daimon, making sure that he understands that Yugi is his enemy and needs to be dealt with, which confuses Daimon because he's like, there's no way that that happy and smiling kid could be anyone's enemy. But if Seto says so, then I must forget about anything else aside from challenging and defeating him. Later, at an amusement park, Anzu and Yugi are having a nice time there, but Anzu is just wanting to see that handsome version of Yugi again, her words, and continues to view this version of Yugi as childish, but again, not fully in a mean way, but still it would definitely suck to hear if she said that out loud. All of a sudden, at a Monster House attraction, Anzu gets captured by one of the animatronics, and Yugi is brought up to a special dueling bubble, much like we'd see him face off against Seto in later on in the manga, as Seto has him face off against Daimon here to save Anzu. So right away, Yami Yugi comes out and the duel gets going. Seto talks about this Monster House as something that Kaiba Corp built, and the technology here connected to the dome is able to read the player's thoughts and bring them to life, so we can get more of an explanation of the cards coming to life again, and to show off the early technology Kaiba Corp was working on for hologram projections for duel monsters. During the duel, Yami wants to know why Daimon still in this state stays fighting for Seto, as he explains the attachment a younger Seto had with him, where he was seen as a grandpa-like figure who would bond and raise him essentially, because we all know Gozaboru wasn't really even there. As the duel goes on and Daimon is getting weaker, Seto tries boosting things up a bit, pumping more blood and medicine through him within the special chair that he's sitting in, along with putting on the special eye scope visor that can show what's in Yami's hand to him. But luckily, because this guy has some decency about how to play games like this properly, he takes off the visor, refusing to play the game like this, as what's the point of the game if you can just cheat to win? From all their talking and from the duel continuing on, Yami eventually drops some more hard lines like saying, you might know how to read people's hearts, but you cannot read the heart of the cards, as Yami then wins the duel. In the end, Yami tells Daimon that this was the first time he faced someone who respected the sanctity of the game, as Daimon pleads to Yugi that he might be the one to bring it back, and by it, he means Seto's kind heart, the nicer, happy side of Seto that he knows is still out there somewhere. As we see at the same time, Seto leaving the area, bumping into a little kid which knocks an orange out of his hand that he then steps on, before entering into a car, claiming that Yugi's next opponent will be him. I like that we get to deep dive a bit more into Seto and his past. I've always been fascinated with how all of Yu-Gi-Oh media has portrayed different parts of his life through his connection to the Kaiba Corp business and through his inter-family relationships in it. For this whole story we get to see here, it's definitely messed up for Seto Kaiba to be doing this, keeping this guy quote-unquote alive, just to have him around to duel or be used for something for a few hours at a time. Like, I know this guy is from a happier time in Seto's upbringing, the guy who basically taught him how to play games and become better at them, but come on man, let the guy rest! And all he wants to see at the end of the day is Seto smile and be happy again, and you're just puppeting him around for your devious doings. Overall, this was a decent anime-only episode that focused on both the Game Master storyline and something a bit deeper for Seto that was greatly appreciated. Now, a lot of things all start coming together and fusing into one, and you'll get what I mean as I talk about this. We first see that things are ready for Kaiba Land. It's everything Seto has been building up as both a general amusement park and something that will be a vessel to take on and deal with Yugi, hopefully once and for all. But before we get into any of that, we cut to Yugi's class in school where a new student gets introduced, this officially being the introduction of Bakura, continuing off that random run-in with him in that other episode. Miho is definitely stoked to see him, Honda's not because of that. Bakura showcases his memory loss by not remembering Miho, and that's kind of funny, but he is fascinated with Yugi's Millennium Puzzle, asking about it as after Yugi gives him the quick rundown of lore from where it's from, he's very interested, saying to himself that it's similar to his as he goes in to grab it to check it out, thus activating both Yugi's puzzle and whatever he's got. Hey look, I'm pretending that we don't know, so play along. As here they both start to glow. From this, Bakura feels some sort of pain and lets go of the puzzle, hiding anything to do with his own secret pendant, but he does start becoming a part of their friend group, hanging out with everyone outside of the school and discussing his own love for different types of games as well. This ends up bringing us to an arcade where it begins to blend a few different stories here into one, but I'll lay things out first before I break down how everything is blended in. At the arcade, they notice the names on the high scores listed as they assume that the KAI on top has to mean Kaiba, thinking that Seto is behind those scores. Once these other little kids confirm that it does stand for Kaiba and that he's essentially the king of games at this arcade, this comes as a bit of a shock to Yugi and Jinochi, but then the kids tell them that it's not the Kaiba they're thinking of, mentioning to them that it's Seto's younger brother, Mokuba. For now, everyone starts having fun at the arcade, maybe except for Jinochi, because he keeps losing at all the games, specifically fighting ones, but once they play a racing game, Mokuba takes over the screen, saying they'll never beat his records, tossing a bomb at them and causing them all to lose. But then Seto takes over the screen, talking directly to Yugi now, telling him it's time to settle things once and for all, saying he needs to come to Kaiba Land, and to ensure that Yugi does, Seto and Mokuba show off that they have kidnapped his grandpa. Womp womp. Seto teases a few things about what's waiting in store for Yugi, like the fact that there are several game-related challenges that he must complete before fully getting a chance to face off against Seto in a duel, but I've always found this funny that all Seto wants is this big dueling moment, and then all he does is put Yugi in other situations, when all he really needs to do is capture Anzu or any of his friends, or like in this case, his grandpa, and just doing so in the presence of Yugi, and Yami Yugi will come out, and then you could just have your duel. You don't need to put Yugi through a bunch of BS just to get to the same result as what I just said, but you know what, I digress. Seto explains to Yugi he's doing this because of the humiliation he caused him, and for some reason on the off chance Yugi does get past everything Seto has set up for him and ends up defeating Seto in the end, then there will be some sort of prize, but Seto thinks any of that would really be an unlikely outcome. Seto tells Yugi that he needs to be at Kaiba Land the following morning at 8 AM before disconnecting from the conversation. Once Yugi's puzzle starts glowing from the emotions going on, Bakura starts getting hurt again, leading to him having to leave for now, as he's not even supposed to be a part of this story anyway. Like, hold on, wait your turn, man, you're next after this arc. But aside from that, Yugi is trying to understand why Seto is doing any of this, why he hates him so much, and he starts blaming it all on these memory gaps that he's having, as when he becomes Yami Yugi, his memory is completely wiped for the most part. Anzu is unsure of how to help right now, contemplating on talking to him about this other side he has, but Yugi is just having some time on his own right now at the arcade to clear his head. But as he's thinking about things, a random opponent comes up to a connected fighting game machine and starts challenging Yugi to the game. Yugi ends up continuously beating this random dude, causing that guy to get angry and show off his Bruce Lee-like style, from his outfit to his techniques he wants to use in physical combat, and he ends up just beating Yugi up and then stealing his Millennium Puzzle. Like usual, that's the one thing that always gets stolen. When the others come back to find Yugi like this, Jinochi says, "Leave it to me, as he may not be good at games, he is good at getting in fights and holding his own in them." So he chases after the guy, and from confronting him, the guy wants to turn their fight into a game. So will Jinochi be good at it? Well, the game has the two of them fighting on this pipe over top a canal of water, and the first one in the fight to get dropped and fall below loses. Jinochi's all cool, being like, "I don't need to use my fists to beat an imposter like you," as he starts dodging all of the punches thrown at him. After Jinochi nearly trips him to fall, the guy pulls out some nunchucks, making the fight way more unfair, but he continues to dodge the attacks as he then opens a can of soda that he got from the arcade, spraying it on the guy, leading to him now dangling off the pipe. Jinochi tells him that he made him ruin the gift that he got for his friend, as he originally got that cola as a present for Yugi to help cheer him up a bit, but hey, at least it helped him win the fight here without even having to lay a real finger on the dude. Jinochi takes the puzzle back as he kicks this guy into the waters below, returning the puzzle now to Yugi and making him happy and grateful for the help. I also love that Jinochi just wants to get better at playing games in order to help Yugi however he can tomorrow for Kaibaland, as we see him trying to study a not PlayStation magazine, as if this is going to somehow help him out. But I mean, just look at this magazine. The PlayStation symbol, the off-brand chocobo on the cover, and is that a Sega Saturn logo? Why is that here? We also get to see everyone prepare in their own ways, like Anzu making meals for everyone, making sure to make their favorite foods, and wanting to help boost confidence all around, and Yugi's just trying to prepare himself mentally, standing in the darkness of the game shop, knowing that he and his friends are going to face this thing head-on tomorrow to save his grandpa. We also get another look into Bakura as he's looking into the mirror, wondering what's going on with him, feeling strange after touching Yugi's pendant and just being around it in general, as if something's fully getting activated in his. And from here, he reveals his own item, the Millennium Ring, believing that he is feeling pain from this specifically for whatever reason. As the next day starts, everyone begins joining into the group as they all head to Kaibaland, with Bakura seemingly heading there as well, but on his own as he feels something is calling him to go there. Yeah, there's a lot going on here in the episode. It combines a lot of different parts of the manga into one episode here, and it just fascinates me how well they made these big combination moments work in context of the show that were so separate and their own things within the manga. So let's start to break things down for what this episode blends together from the manga. First, we bring in Bakura, a character that doesn't even come into play until chapter 50 of the manga, which is the second to last chapter of volume 6, and then his storyline in the series is every remaining chapter spanning all of volume 7. He gets introduced all the same to the class as a transfer student, and it's almost like Yugi's daydreaming over him, but hey, at least here Bakura doesn't have to deal with Miho. We end up getting the same moment of Bakura touching Yugi's Millennium Puzzle and getting weirdly hurt from doing so, but they also talk about being into different types of games. Specifically here, they mention Monster World, which is an RPG-like tabletop game that becomes the main game played for the rest of the manga, as they all plan to go and play it together at some point. Bakura is a bit iffy on ever playing that game with others though, as he does let Yugi and company know that when he played it before with others, everyone seemed to fall unconscious and ended up in comas. So that's a lot going on for him. Plus, as we see in the school restroom, where we get the reveal of him having the Millennium Ring, he's starting to think that he's going crazy, suddenly hearing voices and feeling sharp bits of pain. As far as the Bakura stuff, I'll leave it there until it's relevant again, but all of this stuff is separate from all of this Kaibaland stuff. It all comes after this as the finale to the manga. Now, even before all of the Kaibaland arc starts, the whole thing with the Bruce Lee-like character and his dealings with Yugi and Jinochi happens. And here we see that it may have been Seto who was setting these high scores according to the kids telling them more about who's the king of this arcade, basically. Also in the manga, they reference Bruce Lee by name and mention some of his iconic movies, before Yugi then starts playing the fighting game against the same guy, as Yugi then beats him at the game and the guy gets angry, beats Yugi up, but here he then pulls out a knife to cut off the Millennium Puzzle from around his neck and leaves. When Jinochi goes after him here, the game these two play is a lot different, as the guy wants himself and Jinochi to each have a knife clenched in their teeth and try to avoid punches. And while this dude was going to lie and use a trick knife for himself, Jinochi isn't trying to murder anyone, so he just does his best to avoid the punches coming his way, as this guy does want to fatally hurt Jinochi. But thanks to a combination of the soda trick and then a massive right uppercut, Jinochi wins and gets the puzzle back for Yugi, while this guy is left with a broken jaw and hopefully a shattered ego. The stakes were a lot more deadly here, almost for no reason, but it does give Jinochi some incredible aura for how cool he played things, and then finished everything off in the end. There's possibly a really cool Easter egg here in the high scores that we see at the start of the chapter, as we see the listed name in second place of Ryu, which Bakura's full name is Ryu Bakura. So in hindsight, I can see it as an Easter egg that before we even meet that character, we get teased with him coming here because he's a gamer as well. He's just going to appear in a few manga volumes later. But a case against that would be that the character in the fighting game that was inspired by Bruce Lee is called Bruce Ryu, and the guy who beats up Yugi and fights Jinochi apparently is supposed to go by that name as well. Most people online have adopted that name for his character, specifically through a fan-based wiki that combines together a whole bunch of the lore from all of Yu-Gi-Oh, and Bruce Ryu is the name for this dude, so who knows? It makes sense because he's there playing the game, but I just find all of this random stuff interesting, and hey, maybe you do too, I don't know, you tell me. Now, as far as everything that leads to the invitation to Kaibaland, that's completely different as well. As in the following chapter after the arcade, a car comes to pick up Yugi and Jinochi sent from Seto to bring them to his house, and inside of the car is is Mokuba, making a return here in the manga after him and Yugi already had their capsule monster battle, with Mokuba talking about a special invitation that Seto has for them regarding the opening of this big secret project Seto's been working on, where just a couple chapters ago, Mokuba was teasing it during his Shadow Games punishment, Death Tea. Now, before continuing on, the major change from here is how we get into all of this Death Tea business anyway, as in the manga, Yugi and Jinochi end up at the Kaiba mansion dealing with Mokuba as they for some reason end up playing a game of Russian roulette but with food filled with poison. Jinochi gets sick, Yami Yugi comes out, tells Mokuba he's dead this time as he figures out how he's cheating here, and then uses the Millennium Puzzle to break the switch controlling the spin of the table, and Mokuba gets forced to eat a poisoned hamburger. Then, the following morning, Seto comes back into the manga series, waking up from the nightmares of what happened when he faced Yugi the last time, clearly still not being okay, but when he comes down to greet Yugi, his attitude and personality are completely different, having a smile on his face and saying that it's good to see Yugi and that he missed him. So, you know, that's odd, but he's playing nice all in the efforts to get Yugi to come to his new skyscraper, explaining to Yugi that after his father passed 6 months ago, giving us a timeline as to when that moment happened in comparison to this storyline, that he's been the CEO now, and this big project he's been working on is something he's so excited to show Yugi, because little does he know that all of this was kind of put together to get revenge on him. We see this building is the Kaiba Land Indoor Amusement Park, and so many people are there and excited for the grand opening of it. But the whole fun vibe here starts dwindling as Gozaburo's old right-hand man calls out Seto for having a part to play in his father's death, as Seto's demeanor continues to fade from happy and relaxed to being more monotone and stoic, with them now entering into a massive room for the big surprise reveal of what happens in the next episode.
It's time to get serious. There is no need for me to make excuses.
Okay, so a lot did happen in that last episode, but here we finally get to the point where all of Kaiba's plans are coming together that he's been setting up. Right away, we start by seeing a game of Duel Monsters being played between Seto and Yugi's grandpa as Kaiba Land is officially open and everyone is making their way throughout the tower to explore this indoor amusement park. But Yugi and his friends are brought up to see Seto and grandpa facing one another, with grandpa pulling out his Blue Eyes White Dragon, but from that witch episode, we already know that Kaiba has at least 2 of them on his own now, surprising Grandpa not just with the 2, but then with a 3rd, as Yugi has to witness Grandpa lose, as then everything aside from his grandpa fades away, with Seto now appearing on the TV screen in the room, telling them that what they saw was all virtual reality, as Grandpa breaks down in front of Yugi over all that is happening, handing Yugi his own deck of cards and telling him that his soul is in these cards, and warning Yugi just how terrifying Seto is. But all of Yugi's friends show their support for Yugi, believing in him and knowing that he'll defeat Seto at the end of the day, as Grandpa then loses all of his worry. Understanding this close bond here with his friends is what's going to make the difference, and he has complete faith in Yugi now winning. And then after this touching moment, Kaiba drops Grandpa down a random hole that appears under him, as he then introduces them all to Death Tea, with the T most likely meaning tower, based on each level of the tower having different game challenges to conquer as you make your way up it. With Seto waiting at the top and Mokuba warning Yugi that he'll still be facing him as well, Seto opens up the room that they're in to reveal that they are in front of a massive crowd, making Yugi and his friends journey up the tower the main attraction to view as a celebration for the opening ceremonies. They all plan on working together to help Yugi save his grandpa and defeat Kaiba as they now head to the first challenge. Also, Bakura is there in the audience as he's all like, hey, I don't even know why I'm here either, but I'm watching. The first challenge they make it through is a game of laser tag, essentially, as they all get fitted in these cyber suits and have laser guns, and they must hit the sensors on their opponent's suits to truly defeat them. Only one hit on the sensor will completely take them out, as the 5 of them have to go up against a group of 3. So the odds seem favorable, right? Well, all 3 of their opponents happen to be weapon pros, whatever that means, but Jinochi gets a little overzealous and ends up getting shot first, but to everyone's surprise, he takes quite a bit of damage and falls unconscious, as the laser guns here are causing real pain. This isn't your average game of laser tag, there are potentially deadly consequences. But you wanna know who saves the day here? Freaking Miho, as she gets scared and starts spraying and praying and ends up hitting all 3 of the opponent's sensors. You can't make this up. That makes her the most lethal person here. Anyway, Jinochi ends up fine and they all move on to the next round. Simple as that. They all enter a room with a bunch of levers on them and everyone but Yugi is told to go and pull them, as then the floor splits open, creating these gaps between the floor as a giant crusher robot with blood spelled with 2 L's written on it starts moving towards them that can easily drive over the openings in the floor and is not stopping. The only way to keep the robot at bay and save them all from their demise here is for Yugi to figure out which lever that one of the other characters needs to let go of, and then they'll win the round. With Yugi panicking over this, his friends try to stop panicking panicking themselves, telling Yugi that he's got this and they are right there with him. Heck, even Grandpa speaks to Yugi through his deck of cards. And seconds before he is crushed, he figures it out, having Anzu let go of her lever that says 11 on it, and they're all saved. Based on the numbers over the levers, they can all look like they spell the word blood, and Seto gave them a hint about the robot's name being Blood, but says that the robot hates when his name is spelled wrong. So with there being 2 L's, he figured that meant the 11 labeled lever was the right one. With no time to rest, Kaiba immediately sends them up to the 3rd challenge, which is a room full of falling blocks that can easily crush them all, as they have no clear objective to conquer here outside of trying not to be killed. From watching this, Bakura's Millennium Ring starts glowing. Maybe that leads somewhere, maybe it doesn't, but for now, that's how the episode ends, as it really adapts quite a bit of the Death Tea story arc in one episode. Mostly impressively and effectively, but now here's what happened in the manga so you can see all the differences. Continuing from where Yugi and the others were being brought, we see Kaiba being his usual Kaiba self again, and showing that he has Yugi's grandpa hostage and forced to go up against him in a duel, all in front of the massive crowd at Kaiba Land, where Kaiba does end up defeating Grandpa in the duel using 3 blue eyes, which is the big shocking reveal moment here in the manga to tease the power of what Kaiba truly has in store for Yugi. And at the end, he takes Grandpa's blue eyes and rips it in half like we see in the main regular Yu-Gi-Oh series. And while Kaiba now is real here in the manga, he lets Grandpa suffer dealing with the virtual reality monsters attacking him as a form of a penalty game. Then Kaiba's all like, Yugi, I spent like 10 billion yen on this whole setup, all for us to have another duel at the end of it. If you can even survive all that I have planned, that is. As Grandpa gives Yugi his deck of cards, says his soul is in them, and that he can do this as then Grandpa gets taken off to the hospital. Once Kaiba fully explains what Death Tea is, Jinochi says he's not going anywhere and he's here to help Yugi. And then making a massive turnaround in the manga is Honda, who really hasn't been that major of a player in any of the storylines so far outside of the start of the series, as he's just now there and willing to help out Yugi as well. And for some reason, he even has his sister's kid with him because he's being forced to babysit them. So sure, let's bring a baby into the scary death games here. Sounds like a good plan. They all head to the first game challenge and they end up running into Anzu, who claims that she ended up getting a job at the amusement park here and just works on this attraction, not realizing what Seto's really set up with all of it, as she wishes them luck in the first game, which is the same laser tag-like match, but she also has some sense because she calls out Honda for bringing the baby along with him. And the kid's fine hanging out with Anzu, mostly for perverted reasons. But now in the game itself, Seto has made it so that Yugi, Jinochi, and Honda's weapons are just toys, while the 3 weapons pros here have their power amped up to really leave anyone hit by them with a deadly shock. The weapons pros are slightly different as well, with the main difference being this guy being here instead of the girl that we saw in the episode. Jinochi gets overzealous here too, but he ends up just getting the chance to really stomp on one of the dude's faces before Honda gets a chance to realize that their guns aren't doing any damage to their opponent's sensors, while in the reverse, their opponent's guns hurt them very badly. Honda leads them all back out of the room and confirms this partially in thanks to his nephew trying to have more alone time with Anzu and firing a different laser gun, so in really playing the game now, Honda says leave it to him, walking in strapped with a real laser gun like the others have, but then they get the jump on him thinking that they have won. But he really planned for this, as on his back is his nephew with another laser gun, tossing it to him so that he can take them all out as Honda helps win this round, much to everyone's surprise. And honestly, as we'll talk about, Honda does become the VIP of this in the manga, but you know, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. And then this little guy only helped here because of perverted reasons. Anzu ended up quitting her job here now and of course tags along with the group, but before we get into the second game right away, there is this in-between bit to get them there, and it's hosted by Kaiba's butler that could totally be or not be Daimon, as this is an electric chair ride that they're all strapped into and forced to endure without making a sound or risk being shocked, of course. But when Anzu is in trouble of making a sound because of how intense the guy is making things for her, the kid with them wants to defend her, and since he's not strapped into a chair, he ends up crawling over to the butler and surprising him by taking a you know what, right in his lap, causing the guy to freak out and get himself shocked. Now arriving at the second game, things are changed here, as the game is in this haunted house and they end up having to have their hands trapped in a wall where they all have buttons to press, with the threat of a guillotine coming down and chopping them off if they don't figure out what's the right button to press and stop it, with the whole blood with 2 L's thing practically being the same, at least in the way of trying to figure out which button to press. Yugi has Anzu hit her button, and then they're all free. Plus here, the second L has an arrow pointing down, showing the exit is below them, and then this creepy silhouette kidnaps the kid, leading to this next random intermission bit that has Jinochi stepping up to save the kid while being chained up and having to fight a chainsaw-wielding maniac. Ah, my favorite movie, Tokyo Chainsaw Man Massacre. Anyway, it's then after this diversion that they make it to the third challenge, which ends up being the same setup that we see in the show, as all of them are in a room of falling blocks that could easily crush them. But before the blocks start falling, there's this really emotional and touching moment where they just are in an empty room and nothing is going on, as Yugi breaks down in tears, saying sorry to everyone for all that they're going through, and that none of this would be happening if he wasn't here, but Jinochi yells at him to not talk like that, saying they all willingly came here with Yugi because they are friends and they care about him. Heck, how many times has he been there for all of them? Jinochi shows his remorse for the person he used to be, even saying that he never learned to like himself until after meeting Yugi. He explained that his own problems were him being mad at himself and only masking it by taking it out on Yugi. There's a good bit to it here and it gets deeper, and Jinochi goes on with this whole speech to really get through to Yugi how much he means to him, and to Honda, and to Anzu, and to many others. As this wraps up with Anzu grabbing a marker, having them all put their hands together as she draws a smiley face to represent their friendships and bonds, saying that no matter where life takes them in the future, they will always be friends and never feel alone. While the marker may wear off, it'll still be visible to them when they think about it, and they will feel that in their hearts. And then the blocks start falling down to ruin the moment, but at least that catches us up in the manga. You can really see all the little pieces here that mixed into the first bit of the main Yu-Gi-Oh series, taking some of the earlier chapters when we first meet and deal with Kaiba to here with everything involving Grandpa being beaten in a duel with Kaiba, or the blue eyes getting ripped, to the drawing on the hand of the power of friendship, and even all that's left to come that I'll call out. It's just cool to see how it was all originally done, and what they took and redid in new ways to make for the beginning of the main Yu-Gi-Oh series. Now it's time to play some frickin' Minecraft. Picking up right where we left off, we have our group here having to deal with the falling blocks coming towards them. Together, they realize that they need to start climbing up to get to an exit above, but in doing so, Honda's shirt gets caught in between some blocks with no chance for him to make it out of there, saying that this is where he stops, as he makes sure he helped Yugi get out of there, as he's now smiling at the others as they need to move on without him, as he tells them, see you next time, accepting his fate as a block falls in front of the exit with everyone just assuming the worst. Except for Bakura, I think he's having like an IBS flare-up or something. You know, he's just like me, for real, for real. Okay, in all seriousness, he is in pain from his Millennium Ring going crazy, but from all that just had happened, Yugi's heart is racing as he is feeling the weight of Honda's supposed death all on his shoulders. Behind the scenes of this whole Death Tea operation, Mokuba calls out Seto for not believing in him, as the next challenge will be about Yugi facing Mokuba. And the two brothers here apparently made a bet, with Mokuba saying that Yugi will fall on level 4 to him, while Seto thinks he'll fall on level 5, making Mokuba angry that his own brother is betting on Yugi over him. All this argument between them does is push Mokuba to really want to prove Seto wrong and defeat Yugi himself. Speaking of Yugi, he starts opening up to the others, saying that he's been hiding these feelings of there being another him inside of himself, one that he knows nothing about. Whenever this other version of himself comes out, he loses all knowledge of what really just happened, and for the fear of losing his friends if they knew about this, he's kept things as hush-hush as possible, playing along for these gaps of time that he doesn't really remember. Jinochi assures him that of course they will always be friends, regardless if there is another him inside of him or not, and when Yugi starts pouring out more of his emotions regarding this being his fault, we get the moment similar in the manga where Jinochi ends up explaining that they came here to help him, and that this isn't his fault, as Anzu has them all put their hands on top of one another, with Miho also putting her other hand on top to account for Honda, and I just think that's really sweet, by the way, as they are all just bonded as friends. While this is still nice and everything, it really is way more emotional and impactful in the manga. It's just missing some extra oomph here, you know? I think it's really the speech from Jinochi about learning how to like himself thanks to Yugi that really is the icing on the cake, but all of this is interrupted with Mokuba raising them up to the next level, where Mokuba calls out Yugi for a game of capsule monsters, to which they have never played against one another in the anime, that was only in the manga. But Yugi tells the others that he's got this, not being scared to let himself turn into Yami Yugi in front of them, trusting this other entity inside of himself to take care of things here. Now all of the other characters aside from just Anzu can see and understand this version of Yugi existing, so that's a nice moment for everyone. But now it's time for this fourth challenge. The setup here for the game of capsule monsters is really cool, having this virtual reality playing field shown underneath them to showcase the board that they're playing on within this box. Mokuba also sets Yugi up with a really weak team of capsule monsters, but thanks to Yami having the smarts to trick Mokuba into just focusing on taking out all of his other monsters aside from one that slowly makes its way to Mokuba's side of the field to hit an evolution spot to upgrade it several levels, he can now easily use that powerful monster to then defeat Mokuba in the game. After Mokuba is crying about losing and how it shouldn't be possible, Seto appears to prep Yugi into facing him in the next and final level of this whole thing. He also wants to be like, I told you so, Mokuba, as he then starts filling the box Mokuba's left in with gas that makes him experience fake monster is attacking him per the rules of the loser needing to be punished. And Mokuba's freaking out because his own brother is doing this to him, but luckily, Yami saves him from this, pulling him out before things got worse for him, letting Mokuba know that the reason he won was because he has friends who believe in him, as it seems that Mokuba is taking some of that to heart. At the same time, the others are looking through the halls to try and find Honda and Yugi's grandpa, hoping that what they have feared isn't true, as they end up running into Bakura, who just doesn't say anything as he's wandering the halls and just points in a direction before vanishing. But from where he did point, it does bring Jinochi and Miho to finding a large hourglass-like device that has both Honda and Yugi's grandpa in it that is slowly being drip-fed water to over time eventually drown them. So as far as the manga goes, we continue in the same chapter where Yugi has that heart-to-heart with everyone as the blocks start falling, and the same outcome occurs, with them all climbing the blocks and escaping to an exit aside from Honda, who does help Yugi once more but ends up getting caught in the blocks, saying his goodbyes to all of them, as that leads to Yugi's breakdown, or I guess his second breakdown, maybe third, who knows who's counting, as here he's solely going over his hidden other self, which is done a lot shorter in the manga than it was in the anime. So I guess there's a give and take with these emotional moments between the source material and the anime adaptation. As far as the fight between Seto and Mokuba, things are definitely a lot more heated, and I guess Mokuba survived the poison from the hamburger, but Seto basically tells him that there is no such thing as brotherly love, and that he'll always be a loser, and Mokuba wants to go and do his best to prove him wrong. They play capsule monsters, Mokuba loses in the same way, but his penalty game-like moment that Seto puts him in is way more terrifying with how Mokuba is reacting to it all within these panels. But Yami saves him, and Mokuba has more of a breakthrough regarding how he sees everything that has happened with his brother, and that Yugi is not this awful person that Seto has made him out to be. Not a lot of differences here between the manga and the anime overall, just some slight changes in moving around of things that are happening. And now it's time for the big clash between Yugi and Seto Kaiba. We start off with Mokuba getting that moment to understand things more clearly about his brother as well as Yugi, as we see Yami head up to face Seto in the finale to Death Tea. But why just have it focus on the main duel that we've been waiting for this whole time, when we could have this whole other side thing going on, where Jinochi and Miho end up in a trap after finding Yugi's grandpa and Honda, as we get the return of Ryuichi and Eileen, which is kind of confusing because I thought Eileen was let go, but whatever, semantics, maybe, I guess, I don't know. But Jinochi and Eileen get put into these special battle suits as Ryuichi and Miho act as the ones controlling them, making it an IRL fighting game, which the concept in general, hey, that's pretty cool, I like it, and it is solely unique to the anime here, but what are we doing? Where's my battle between Yugi and Kaiba? Well, it cuts back and forth between both things going on throughout the episode. So now while the duel is getting started, Kaiba is feeling pretty good knowing he has 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons in his deck ready to take Yugi down. The duel itself is cool because we get to see more iconic cards that the both of them have here that they would both later on become well known for having in the regular anime series. But we also get to see what's in Yugi's grandpa's deck that we're building up to seeing, and that's Exodia. But it is funny that he has no idea what these cards are as he's pulling them, being like, what the heck am I supposed to do with all these random weak hands and feet? Jeez. Kaiba, however, plays his first Blue Eyes, making a big show of force as Yami is struggling to get the cards he needs to fight back properly. Kaiba calls Yugi's power of friendship something that is just a false belief, as Mokuba watches, saying Seto is wrong about that one, as he just kind of experienced it, as he begins remembering how things used to be between them when they were both younger. The days were simpler, just smiling while playing chess was all that was needed for life to feel good. Seto is feeling good though, sitting pretty in the duel with his second Blue Eyes out on the field, but Yami feels the love and support of all of his friends, and ends up drawing Protective Sealing Sword of Light, better known as the Sword of Revealing Light, holding back Seto's monsters from attacking for a couple turns. Yami, through his Yugi memories and everything, recalls what his grandpa once told him, and that was him speaking about these 5 cards that needed to come together to create this all-powerful game-winning monster, Exodia. But now Kaiba ends up getting his 3rd Blue Eyes out, and the spell card stopping them from attacking has vanished. So things aren't looking good here, but Yami uses the power of his friends to help him use the heart of the cards. But hold up, before we get to, Exodia and all that, we need to cut back to the fight with Jinochi, who after getting knocked down badly, has the same power of friendship moment that raises him back up. And that bit was pretty funny, not gonna lie. But okay, back to Exodia with Yami drawing his next card, and wow, can you believe it? The head of Exodia, as we find out where those blocks were coming from in the other challenge because Seto is crapping them out, with Exodia now being summoned and instantly defeating him. Yami then uses Mind Crush as punishment for all that has happened, and he says that the demon inside of Seto's heart has been crushed. Mokuba comes rushing in over what happened here, being worried about his brother still, but Yami tells him that Seto is just gathering the pieces of his heart in a darkness right now, making it seem like brighter days will come soon enough. This is the moment in the manga that Seto has a flashback of his life growing up that ends in the death of his father that we discussed earlier. Plus now we have stuff like Exodia getting summoned and Seto's Mind Crush happening that are all from the early moments of the regular Yu-Gi-Oh series shown in their technical origin form here, Now as far as Jinochi's fight thing, he ends up winning, and I guess he's good good at fighting games now compared to earlier, or maybe we just give that credit to Miho for playing, who knows, I don't know. What I do know is that everyone is okay, the day is saved, the audience watching is oddly silent. I feel like they should be clapping the loudest right now, but whatever, things are good, right? Right? Ah, crap. I forgot about Bakura again, didn't I? Bakura's still walking in the corridors some more, thinking it was cool to witness the duel that just happened, and is happy that Yugi was able to win, but his Millennium Ring starts glowing again, turning Bakura slightly different, bringing out this darker version of himself who says that Yugi has shown himself worthy of owning the Millennium Puzzle, claiming his next opponent to be him. And I guess that was Bakura's whole purpose for just being in the Death Tea thing, to get this moment right here where we allude to what comes next. But aside from that ominous setup, our main group celebrates a major victory after a long and terrifying day, as Yugi and Jinochi celebrate their friendship especially. And also, where's the prize? What did they win? I thought Kaiba said that there was like some sort of prize if on the off chance they won, but is the prize the friendship they had all along? I don't know what's happening. As far as the manga goes, everything is basically the same minus the random side fight going on, as well as some cards in the match are changed also. Like in the manga, we do get the appearance of the Dark Magician that doesn't happen in the anime, which would have been really cool to see here. Other than that, the crowd ends up cheering really loud here over the duel, and Honda makes his grand return here, helping out Anzu, Jinochi, and his nephew, who are all held at gunpoint by some of Kaiba's goons, leading to Jinochi being able to help out as well. But you know, thanks to the goons having guns, things don't go so great. But it's okay, Mokuba comes up to the goons and is like, hey, stop, as he's choosing to help Yugi's friends, and hey look, everything's all good again. But Honda also wasn't there when Yugi admitted to having this other side to himself, so he's all like, is something like different with Yugi? I can't tell, is it like a new cologne? And I think that's, you know, that's pretty funny. He just gets left out of things. We also get this really beautiful way of seeing a younger Seto rebuilding the pieces of his heart with a smile, as Mokuba claims that he will be there waiting for his brother to return to who he once was, ending off the whole Kaiba storyline for the manga, and that's really sweet. So we get the ending to this major Kaiba arc that's been happening, but things aren't quite over yet.
I'm not planning to lose either. My monster!
Welcome to the beginning of the end for Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0. We now get to pick things back up with where we left them at, with Bakura when we first saw him become a transfer student at their school. And at first Bakura just seems to be acting weird around them all, but it's really him fighting to hold back this other side to him that is forcing itself to come out. So for now, he just keeps choosing to get away from them when things are getting too out of hand with it. Bakura's struggle with this other side of him is truly causing him pain, with even more physical pain to come shortly. But during the day at school, this gym teacher with the widest neck I've ever seen is being a complete prick to everyone, but mainly to Bakura, exposing the reasoning of why he had to leave his last school and come to this one thanks to his other friends there starting to fall into comas after being around him. So the gym teacher is just telling them all to stay away for their own safety, but they all keep defending Bakura, which is nice to see. Although Bakura just agrees with the gym teacher, saying that, yeah, you know, you all should probably stay away from me. It's probably for the best anyway. But now all of them are just pissed at what happened, so they all decide that they should pay a visit to Bakura's house later on and hang out with him. He's a gamer, I'm sure he'll want to play some games. At Bakura's house before anyone comes over, he finds himself going back and forth with the entity inside of himself that comes from the Millennium Ring, with this entity that's been there finally being able to have a conversation with Bakura, all thanks to coming in contact with Yugi's Millennium Puzzle. So that's why it's just now that he starts hearing voices leading up to here, where they're going back and forth. Bakura then looks at his pendant to see all of the spike pieces from it now being punctured into his chest, as he's being told that no matter what, this entity isn't going anywhere. We get some flashbacks to when Bakura was younger, with the entity talking about Bakura always getting picked on and him having no friends, then showing him all these gaming minifigures saying that as the entity, he helped surround him with all of the friends he ever wanted, alluding to some pretty sinister stuff. We also get some Millennium item lore from the entity that says all the items contain some sort of spirit within them, with some containing guardians who protect tombs, and some containing the thieves that want to rob them, showing that the Millennium Puzzle has a guardian, while the ring here has a thief. It's this weird relationship between the entity and Bakura, as the entity acts as if it has its own wants, while also doing things for the host that it believes he wants. He tells, or I guess threatens, to make his new friends here stay close like the rest of his old past friends, but first he needs to handle something with the gym teacher who was being mean to them earlier, paying him a visit at the school and punishing him as we cut back to Bakura back at his house, waking up from that and claiming to have another bit of memory loss. And this was a really effective scene in showing what it's like in general to a regular person who isn't the spirit, how that memory loss truly feels for someone like Bakura here in the situation. The entity tells Bakura that that Yugi and the others are about to come over, trying to force its way back out as Bakura tries resisting, wanting to warn Yugi and the others to just stay away, but when he answers the door, the entity has taken over already and is leading the situation here. Inside, after making small talk and mentioning that the gym teacher got sick or something and he had to just go, and they're chalking it up to karma, right? Karma, sure. They then notice all of the miniatures around the room as Yugi gets excited because they are all for the game Monster World, an RPG tabletop game that I mentioned earlier, as they all decide on playing this together, getting to pick out little figures that basically represent them, and they're going to be getting to play on this massive game board as the entity as Bakura explains the rules of the game and how one side is the Dark Master side and they control the monsters of the world, while the other side is for the heroes who have to fight the monsters and take down the Dark Master. If the heroes all die first, the Dark Master wins, and if the Dark Master dies first, the heroes win, with the entity choosing to be the Dark Master. Fitting. All the figures representing each of them and the different roles they play are really cool, and man, I want my own minifigure. I just think that would be so cool. Before the game gets going, Yugi notices something is a bit off with Bakura, kind of like how the others felt something is off with Yugi before understanding his secret, but you know, it's all good. The game's starting, everyone's having fun, until they come across a figure that looks like their gym teacher that tries calling out to them for help, but the entity forces the teacher to assume the role he is meant to be in this game world and make sure that he knows that he should be lucky to be alive here and living within the world and not, you know, dead or something. So that's terrifying, but the game continues on. Nothing to see here, no weird stuff at all, until some weird stuff does happen. As the entity claims this to be a shadow game and the Dark Master character is revealed to them as Zork, as he first transfers Miho into the game itself to become the figure version of herself. The entity explains the rules and punishments that happen with all of the dark magic involved. But everyone's shocked, and Honda, well, he's pissed, and once they all realize that Miho is trapped as a figure in the game, the entity lets them know that the only way to get her or any of them out would be them properly defeating Zork. Honda becomes a figure next, then Jinochi, but before the fate is decided for Yugi and Anzu, they both claim that they want to be turned into their figures, knowing they want to be on the board fighting alongside their friends. Plus, Yugi has a little something extra. Ever heard of Yami Yugi before? Oh, you have? Oh. Well, great. So after they all end up on the game board, Yugi's body is open for Yami to take over and end up playing the game in tandem with the regular Yugi playing as a game piece alongside the others. It's a good setup point that we end this episode on, and as far as the manga goes, there's no Miho, so it's the whole group minus her, and can I just say, I love the artwork on the cover of volume 7 of the manga. Just, wow, purely gorgeous. I would love a poster of this. So starting off with the stuff in school post-meeting Bakura, he is dealing with all of the Millennium Ring stuff now, going back and forth with the entity, learn more about it, what it can do, what it knows, and Bakura just wants the pain to stop and wants the entity to leave. But that's not happening. We see the entity go ahead and turn the teacher into a minifigure in more explicit detail, and when it comes to the group coming over to play Monster World, Bakura almost has the chance to warn them to their faces to get out, but then as the entity switches to being in charge, it finishes the sentence by saying, "of the hallway." And I really like how both the manga and the anime handled these moments slightly differently for the transition between Bakura and the entity to happen. The anime having this extra bit of time as well to show what the memory loss feels like to Bakura was a nice touch too that makes you really feel for what he's going through. The other main difference is the order of how they all become minifigures, with Anzu being transferred into a figure first, with Jinochi going second and Honda following after that, as then it leads to Yugi offering to be transferred into the game to surprise Bakura with this other version of Yugi. And why is the entity kind of surprised in both versions here, man? You knew there was an entity in Yugi already because of the puzzle. You yourself are an entity within a ring inside of another dude. Hey Lois, I'm Beaver Warrior now. Now with Yugi and the others all in the world of the game, Yami knows the sacrifice Yugi made to put himself on the line in order to be there with his friends, telling him that that takes true courage, and it also has allowed them to meet face to face in a way for the first time. Yami asks all of them to lend him their powers and to not be scared. Together they will defeat Zork and get out of this. The entity lets Yami know that regardless of what's happening, if any of the players lose their HP, they will actually die. Zork runs back to his castle for now, waiting for all the others to eventually make their way to him. Or not. If they die, they die. You know how it goes. The game continues on. Yami ends up playing so well with the dice that the entity has to like nerf it all at one point and is all like, all right, we're just dropping dice now. We're not shaking them and throwing them all around. Calm down, Yami. Eventually, the entity tries trapping them between a rock and a hard place, or more so a spike trap and a Zork, with Yami doing what he can to prevent the worst from happening as he gets the crew to safety along with their teamwork, and from there, they get a good chance to attack Zork back, doing some real damage to this Dark Master, and the entity just can't figure out how Yami is doing this, thinking there has to be some sort of cheating involved or something, but Yami's all like, nah man, it's the heart of the dice. They respond to our emotions or something. But they are both just thinking these things, so I don't know how they're actually like talking to one another here. It's like they're mind talking to one another. It's like a vibe thing, I don't know, just go with it. And just when they think they've defeated Zork, he appears to be okay as the entity tells Yami that as a level 1 beginner, they lack the experience to truly defeat Zork, which is kind of like a cheating tactic to make it so that they never win, but you know, I'm just saying. And overall, there wasn't a whole lot of substance here in terms of story, as we stretch out the gameplay of the monster world to keep up with how much of it is in the manga. And it's all pretty much the same with what we do see in the manga, aside from, again, Meehan being involved, and for the number needed to be guessed to save them from the spikes, where in the anime the number is 99, but in the manga the number ends up being 33. Regardless of the lack of real substance here, it's still a fun match to see Yami deal with the entity while our main group are just cute little figurines fighting and struggling to survive, with them doing the best they can, and Yami using all of his luck and skills in the game to help them out. But here we are, we have arrived at the final episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0. So after this reveal that Zork is alright, the entity starts going power hungry, claiming that he basically can make all of the rules here that he wants. He's the king, he's the god, it's what he says that goes. Cue the Fallout New Vegas quote.
The game was rigged from the start.
The entity then pulls out a box of special figures that are all prepared for any situation ahead of time, as well as some special dice that he calls the mind dice that have souls inside of them and move to his mind's will. From this, he instantly rolls a critical hit, sending in a massive attack at our heroes, seemingly defeating them, but to his surprise, they aren't dead, they all have 1 HP left. And why is that? Well, the entity's left hand starts acting on its own, typing a message to him that says, hey man, it's the real Bakura here, I'm not gonna let you hurt my friends. As the entity freaks out and starts wondering how this is even possible, Yami takes notice of how he's acting, thinking something is definitely up with this guy. But to try and end things, the entity makes it so that whoever rolls closest to 0 gets to attack first, with Yami rolling a 9 as the entity at first assumes that he has won, as Yami's all like, do you have 2 holes in your head instead of eyes? With the entity then realizing that these aren't his mind dice because he had rolled a 10. And Yami is able to have Anzu's character heal everyone back up, but the entity knows that Zork won't be hurt from anything that they do to him, and he can just win after this. But in going in to toss the dice once more, his left hand is still being controlled by the real Bakura, sending in the dice from that hand instead and rolling a 99, which is a complete fumble, so Zork blows himself up for a second. But to get back at Bakura using his left hand, the entity stabs it into the top of the castle piece on the game board, which pierces all the way through, hopefully stopping Bakura. But from this outburst, Yami realizes that this isn't Bakura across from him at all. The whole time it's been someone else, or rather something else. But Zork here, he's back, he's okay, and for Yami to figure out how to get to the real Bakura, he ends up using Little Yugi's powers to extract a game piece representing the soul of Bakura from Zork's left arm, bringing him out to help the heroes now. Oh, big whoop, I have a mini Bakura figure too! Oh, I think this is a knockoff. Together, they all fight as one, pushing the entity to its final limits, its last resort, as it transforms Zork into this newer, stronger form that is ready to destroy them all again, as Bakura's white magician protects them, but completely being weakened from it though, and choosing not to ask for help in the next round, only wanting them to focus on dealing with Zork and defeating him, or else they're all gonna be toast. For their final stand, a summoned creature that has been with them for a while named Poki ends up sacrificing itself to help give everyone a chance to defeat this version of Zork. But Yugi is able to use his powers to go through with the attack on Zork's weak spot and still save Poki, and that's wholesome and I love that. Then they all do their best to defeat Zork, as everyone sends in their strength and power to Yami as he has his final roll to make against the entity's final roll, to which he is getting ready to use his Millennium Ring to help make sure that this last move is a critical hit, as he claims that he can only do this once. And lo and behold, both of them end up rolling a super critical 00, but in this case it means that it goes in the entity's favor, but then his dice start cracking open as the spirit of Bakura comes out of it to talk to him because his soul was in the dice, and he's saying that he won't lose any more friends to him, as the entity declares that he will erase his soul with the power of the Millennium Ring, but all of Bakura's new friends come to protect his soul, not allowing that to happen, as they mention the power of friendship while the dice explodes, and Yami finished off the game. In the end, everyone returns to their bodies and the Millennium Ring falls off Bakura. For now, things seem to be normal again, days continue on at school, the people turned into figures are now human once more, and Bakura is happy with his new friends here, and even makes a cool display box with all of their figures from the game, all in a way to commemorate their achievement of working together. It's really nice, but it's a very quick wrap up for the final episode of the series. Like, it doesn't give you finale vibes at all. In the manga, things are pretty much the same, aside from the entity getting physically hurt a bit more thanks to Jinochi stabbing Zork in the eye, and then in the end, it's Bakura's soul that sacrifices itself entirely to stop the entity, leaving Bakura technically dead for a moment, but thanks to having a part of Bakura's soul within this figure version of him, Yami is able to help get that soul back into the body, and essentially have him alive alive again, and we end with everything being okay, and Bakura makes that display case of everyone's figures, as the final words in the original manga series for Yu-Gi-Oh are, "Let's go again someday to Monster World." Why in the ever-loving, dice soul-having, card-playing flick would you want to do that? Now, for what it was, the ending of the manga is still kind of the same as the anime. Very abrupt, but that's because right after this there are some major changes that happen, and I'll speak on them in a second, but I do think as an overall semi-slice-of-life contained story, all of Season 0 and all of these 7 volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Really are kind of a nice package at the end of the day that I think hold up very well. At this point, Yu-Gi-Oh! In the main sense that we would come to know it as, would officially be the new direction that we would see the series take after Volume 7. As what it would continue, it would come out as Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist, resetting things at Volume 1, but in Japan, it would just be Yu-Gi-Oh! Volume 8. Volume 7, much like the anime, feels so abrupt because it wasn't technically the last chapter of anything for Yu-Gi-Oh! Because the first chapter of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist for the US release was technically the final chapter of Volume 7 in Japan, bringing in Pegasus as a character and just changing the full direction into focusing on the card game, as that would be the big teaser for the end of that volume to continue forward. So I find it interesting that for other audiences around the world once Yu-Gi-Oh! Was already established and being known for the regular anime, that they separate all of what equals out to be Season 0 in the manga and keep it like a weird secret that if you want to read and learn about, you can, but the image of the brand had changed, and when advertising Yu-Gi-Oh! It really needed to be about all eyes focusing on the card game. And I get that, and I love that side of Yu-Gi-Oh! But I wouldn't change a thing with how I came to love Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically. I am very nostalgic for the original manga run, and for Season 0 as an anime, as both are a really fun time. There are a lot of things that I do find weird, like why have these random filler episodes when there is so much left in the 7 volumes that weren't covered in the animation? Why have this Miho character be so inserted into everything when you didn't even bring in the character of Hanasake, who has several chapters focusing on his interactions with the main group, or even being there to give status reports to the group over Yugi's grandpa's condition, while the rest of the Death Tea stuff was happening? It's not that these additions were bad, it's just odd to see them here in the first place. If you want to hear more about what chapters, moments, and other stuff that I like that was left out of the anime, I just want to remind you about the members only video that will be coming out in the next day or two, as well as becoming a channel member will get you access to every members only video that I make, and it directly supports the videos getting made. But anyway, that's all there is for the story of Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0's original manga that it was adapted from, because there is one more piece of Season 0 related animation out there, the special 1999 short movie.
This is the end! It's over.
That's right, there's one little bit of animation left for Season 0. So this short movie that came out about 5 months after Season 0 came to an end really acts as more of a special bonus episode to the series, more so than a movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it still premiered in Japanese theaters and earned a box office income of 650 million yen, which is like about $5 to $6 million back in 1999. So not too bad for a short film with a 30-minute runtime, but to be fair, it was premiering alongside 2 other short films that were a part of Toei Animation's Spring 1999 Animation Fair, and those other short films were Dr. Slump and Digimon Adventure, and yeah, holy crap, I would have killed to see all of these together in theaters like this. But why this movie is important in some ways is because I do look at it as this bridge between Season 0 and what Yu-Gi-Oh! Would become, and you'll see why as I talk about the story. There is a massive shift in character design here, going from this more relaxed and cruder art style from Season 0, and designing things to be closer in look to what Yu-Gi-Oh! Would become. We first start off by following this random new character named Shogo, who is into duel monsters but isn't known for being too particularly good at playing the game. But after randomly buying a pack of cards from a shop, he ends up pulling the Red Eyes Black Dragon, and look, I can sit here and glaze this character as the best that there is, because Red Eyes is my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster of all time, but this movie will do it for me, as we get this really big reaction to it from everyone around. Like the shop owner telling Shogo that this card is on par with the Blue Eyes White Dragon, essentially. It's stupid rare and wicked powerful. I don't know why I got a bit Boston with it there, but they make the Red Eyes out to be something feared. And the way the shop owner talks about it, they make the Red Eyes this vessel to give Shogo the courage to fight, as he's very timid and not confident in himself or fighting back for himself. And also, the look of dual monster cards here have changed to be more in line with what the future of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise was focusing on, having complete new designs to the front and backs of the cards that are even more specifically designed to look like the original Bandai cards from 1998, and you already know I got my Red Eyes right here, don't even play with me. Anyway, we catch back up with Yugi and friends as he's Yugi's playing some duel monsters with Jinochi, and really speaking on the strategy behind things so you can feel the distinct shift and push to Yu-Gi-Oh only focusing on this card game for now. Shogo ends up arriving at this spot where everyone else is playing, as the other kids his age start bullying him about even showing up there because he sucks at playing the game, but Yugi overhears this and wants to head in and help things, but Shogo starts pushing back on what they're saying, mustering up the littlest amount of courage to hesitantly say that they'd lose because he's got that thing on him, and by that I mean the red eyes. Then everyone in the shop does a spit take or is gagged from hearing that, and of course, they don't necessarily believe him, but he whips it out, shutting them all up, and claiming that he's the strongest now, and they're not gonna do squat about it. Apparently, Yugi just knows all of the lore about Shogo, you know, from gossip in the card gaming scene, and gives us the rundown on Shogo wanting to be this first-rate duelist, but he can never fully get a grip on mastering the game with the cards he's had. But aside from just losing every time he plays, he's full-on scared to play because he's afraid of losing in general. So when having the red eyes, his courage isn't coming out and wanting to fight back, he's using it as a shield to keep others from wanting to duel him because of how powerful it is, or how it may seem. Kind of smells like a lesson to be learned or something, I don't know. We also see that Kaiba is here, along with his new hair color. Everyone welcome back the Kaiba you grew up with, as he has a whole database of duelists and the cards that they own, getting alerted to the Red Eyes Black Dragon being in Shogo's possession. We also find out that this little spot here where everyone's playing was a trap for Kaiba just to gain all of this info on everyone, and that's pretty freaking ridiculous. But you have to love how over the top Kaiba goes for whatever ideas he comes up with, all to get silly things like card information or to just duel Yugi. On top of this, and leading into what I just said, Kaiba has a fun little thing he's setting up, sending out these invites to everyone on his list so that they can come participate in a tournament of sorts that pits duelists against one another, and the winners of the duels end up getting to take the loser's best card. So, you know, it's like a test run of Battle City or something. It's kind of cool. Kaiba really just wants to get to Yugi through all of this, coming off as if this is him just wanting a rematch with Yugi based on their first duel in the anime, where it was a draw rather than what just happened in the Death Tea arc, where Yugi beat him with Exodia, but continuity here is loosely played with. Again, it really does feel like this in-between piece of media from what Yu-Gi-Oh was to what it becomes, so whatever, you know, I'm still having fun. Red Eyes is here. We see both Shogo and Yugi get invites as the following day before the tournament starts in the evening, Jinochi is mad that he didn't get an invite to play as well, and hey, we love a good Kaiba-Jinochi petty feud always happening. But in this moment, Shogo comes running by them and is being chased and caught by one of Kaiba's goons. Jinochi and Yugi try to help protect Shogo as he doesn't want to participate in the tournament, but they are trying to force him to, as the goon also mentions that the one requirement on the invitation is for whoever got the invite needs to be present. They're not allowed to say no, which is crazy. Yugi's like, well, screw you, dude, I'm not gonna go now either. But the goon mentions that it's all set up by Kaiba and you have no choice. Kaiba is making this goon here make sure that people show up. Jinochi starts attacking this dude some more, giving Yugi and Shogo a chance to run away a bit as they get to this back alley to catch their breath for a moment, with Yugi trying to talk to him about why he's not really playing the game anymore, and he says that he'd just win, using the same excuse as a barrier. A different goon shows up to rough both of them up, as Jinochi eventually finds them bruised with all of their cards scattered around, as both Yugi's Millennium Puzzle and Shogo's Red Eyes have been taken as a way to bring them there to the tournament in order to get them back. Jinochi immediately starts running after where the goon went, as we see Shogo crying about him being nothing without the card. Jinochi eventually reaches the goon at the venue of the tournament, and then gets into a full-on fight with him, as we see inside of the building that Kaiba had just beat another duelist, as it's kind of an early design look at Rex Raptor, so that's kind of cool. Yugi and Shogo end up finding Jinochi barely able to stand out in the streets, saying that he couldn't get the puzzle back, but he was able to get the Red Eyes Black Dragon back, albeit a bit scuffed, but still very much playable, and just seeing Jinochi with the red eyes, it's just perfect. It's a match made in heaven. Why is Shogo even here? The Red Eyes belongs to Jinochi, who in the main Yu-Gi-Oh series ends up getting it for himself off of Rex Raptor in Duelist Kingdom, so it's kind of funny how all these things are closely related here as well. Jinochi does kind of cut the BS with Shogo though, calling him out about either playing the game or pretending he's already won by having this Red Eyes and never playing it, with Shogo crying and admitting that he's just scared, and if he uses that card and loses, that he'll never recover from that kind of shame. Shogo would rather run away, spilling all of his cards as he does, so he starts scrambling to pick them up, as Yugi says, hey, I'm not gonna force you to duel if you don't want to, and that he is just gonna go face Kaiba himself, as he can't forgive the tactics that Kaiba's using. Jinochi has Yugi's back and invites Shogo along to at least see Kaiba get beat by Yugi, and right away when Yugi enters and sits down opposite of Kaiba, Kaiba tosses him his Millennium Puzzle back, getting Yugi right where he wanted him. Yugi instantly becomes Yami Yugi, as Jinochi explains that's Yugi's other face. Now, just for the fact that Yugi's here, Kaiba gets rid of the table and chair setup, introducing the first iteration of what would become the proper duel disc that we would see for the Battle City arc and onward. And it's cool that it looks similar to the original iteration that we would see Kaiba testing out in Duelist Kingdom. So we get a really cool virtual battle setup to bring everything here to life, making it the most dynamic duel monsters fight visually for for the series at this point. We get Kaiba bringing out one of his blue eyes white dragons, and finally, we get to see Yami play the Dark Magician, or its Japanese name, the Black Magician. We get this awesome back and forth where Yami defeats the blue eyes, but then in such a cool, stylish way, Kaiba brings out another that instantly defeats the Dark Magician, with him continuing on to then resurrect his other blue eyes and then bring out his third, as well as using Wicked Chain that binds all three of the dragons together to act as one beast, which kind of in a way felt like the prototype for the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which is sick, but just, wasn't a thing yet. But when things seem hopeless here, Yami draws the Red Eyes Black Dragon, surprising Shogo as he didn't even know that he didn't have it on him, as Shinochi says that he switched it out, telling Shogo that he couldn't sit there and watch him pretend to be a duelist, telling him to stop holding that card and dreaming. Either be about it or be up out of it. As the duel goes on and things still aren't going too great for Yami, as he's refusing to play the Red Eyes, it ends up concerning Shogo. Shinochi explains that Yami won't play it until Shogo's ready to show he's willing to fight too. We hear Yami inner monologuing that just like the Red Eyes card right now, Shogo has his back to the enemy, and whether it faces the enemy or not all depends on Shogo's courage to fight. Kaiba's taunting his soon-to-come victory, as Yami says that a duelist's true strength comes from believing in the potential to win. It all depends on having the courage to fight in the end. And yeah, it's getting very heavy-handed here with the messaging, I get it, but Shogo's still freaking out, and I just want to see the Red Eyes already. So finally, Shogo has his breakthrough moment, shouting out that he will fight back and shouting out, "Go, my Red Eyes Black Dragon," as Yugi summons it on his behalf, giving the best beast around the coolest entrance of all of them. And man, his tongue is so green right here that I thought he ate Kaiba's old hair. But then instead of just powering up Red Eyes, Yami fuses it with Meteor Dragon to create Meteor Black Dragon and uses that to beat Kaiba, with Shogo in awe of the potential power of the Red Eyes Black Dragon. Kaiba respects the match that they had, saying he admits defeat and tells Yami that he's the only opponent worthy of fighting him as he leaves. Throughout the credits, we see that Shogo is starting to find joy again and having fun playing duel monsters right there alongside everyone, and that's nice, but okay, now we are at the end of the Season 0 era. For just the movie itself, yeah, it's a decent time, it's inspiring, Red Eyes is in it, what's not to like? It really is just nothing more than a slightly longer episode of Season 0 that has a story closer to something you'd see in the regular anime series. So it's interesting for that alone, and it's animated incredibly. As for Season 0 as a whole, I think it's such an amazing piece of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, but on its own, it's still really good. It's not perfect, but still really good. And regardless of it not really leading anywhere because of what comes after with all of the changes, you still get a solid 27 episode season that delivers on amazing character dynamics that leave you feeling like this is a real friend group here. They make jokes at each other's expenses. They get into silly situations, but at the end of the day, they are always there for each other. Getting to see all of these relationships build from how we met them at the start to where the series ends shows you how much growth they had, especially for characters like Yugi and Jinochi, who we get to explore their growth the most, I'd say. Having real breakthrough moments with Jinochi that let you into his world, how his upbringing shaped who he was, and how finally finding real friendship changes him into the person he wants to be. Yugi starts as this kid who almost feels like he's in the background of life going by, but come on, with that kind of main protagonist hair, please. But he becomes someone who feels the effects of the support from his friend group, helping build his own level of confidence while maintaining the pure and kind person he is, holding on to his strong beliefs of fighting for what's right, while the other side of him gets a different level of justice taken care of. Plus, when it comes to the style of Season 0, it's a lookbook of fashion and I love it. Seeing so many different outfits for the characters, especially for Jinochi, where we see him wearing at one point this awesome Letterman jacket, to him then wearing this like random suspender getup in the Death Tea arc. You just can't beat it. But beyond the fashion is the color palette. Everything has a nice softer tone with these great pops of color that make the world feel lively and the characters all stand out. There is also this Saturday morning cartoon Scooby-Doo-esque feeling to the series thanks to how most episodes start, with some mysterious thing going on with a bad guy or other character that will come into play later, and the gang here just find themselves in the middle of it all. But overall, it's funny to see how out of order the anime adapts the manga, fusing several different chapters into one cohesive episode at times, and it's honestly just impressive how they were even able to do any of that and make it work in the first place, on top of adding in a whole new character like Miho into everything. Let's be real. Miho didn't add a thing. Sure, she has some highlight moments in this series that I do enjoy, I won't take those away, but overall, why was she even added to this? Well, Toei Animation wanted another main character to expand the friend group and give reasons as to why Honda can be around more and be involved in all the situations. Not really a crazy big reason, I get it, but like, come on. We could have done so many other things than have Miho as a character here. As to why the stories from the manga are told in such an out-of-order way, well, with the anime adaptation premiering not long after the 7th volume came out, the anime was in production while the manga was still being worked on, leading to original filler episodes being made, storylines being moved around, and the horror aspect of the manga being pushed aside in the animation in favor of more games being played, with Duel Monsters taking a large focus overall. I just think it's cool to get two different experiences between reading the manga and watching the series. You'll get to a lot of the same points that happen, but the journey through them and to them might just be a whole new way to experience it if you only had done so in one of the two ways. It was also cool to see other stuff from the early on Yu-Gi-Oh era come to fruition, like the Japanese-only PS1 video game Yu-Gi-Oh Monster Capsule Breed in Battle, aka the first ever Yu-Gi-Oh game in general, as it took inspiration from the Capsule Monsters idea from the manga in Season 0, with it releasing in July of 1998. It's a cool mix of the actual Capsule Monsters chess-like game, but also kind of like the digital pet raising game, as we saw with like the Tamagotchi devices, but just a lot more fleshed out, and also not on a little Tamagotchi-like device. Several years later, in 2004 for the PS2, we would see another Capsule Monster game come out, that being Capsule Monster Coliseum, which was the only Capsule Monster game to come out in English, as there was another Yu-Gi-Oh Capsule Monster game that came out before that for the Game Boy Color in the year 2000, with that one having a heavier focus on the Monster World stuff with Bakura mixed in with the Capsule Monster stuff, and they kind of remade the cover of that volume, but with Kaiba in the background instead of Bakura, or well, the entity, I guess, and you know, that's just kind of neat. We also would see this random spin-off series of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime that was produced just by 4Kids called Capsule Monsters, that kind of has the same vibes of the original Capsule Monster idea, but it's just used as a random gimmick for the series to tell this random spin-off side story, and I covered all of it in my big Yu-Gi-Oh video talking about the original regular anime generation of the franchise. Season 0 and the original manga run in general are just one giant love letter to every type of game out there, from board games to digital games to card games to video games to nonsensical life-threatening games that test your true morality. Over time, Yu-Gi-Oh would grow into something much bigger than what it seemed, with Duel Monsters really connecting with the readers of the manga, especially since it would be shown off as a game being fully played multiple times over, and not something lightly explained. Takahashi's love of playing these games would show by how the rules of how to play would be explained, offering a way for those at home to basically play it themselves if they want. With Duel Monsters, the explanation of how to play mixed with how fun it was shown off led to an actual want from the readers to have more of it, like a lot more of it. The response this game created for a semi-one-off part of the manga was extremely loud and very much heard, as there was now an opportunity to expand on this one particular concept and not only make it the point of the grander franchise at large, but make it real and tangible for those who want to play. Shonen Jump would start receiving letters and inquiries about this card game. Where could they learn more about it? How can they actually play it? So of course Shonen Jump and Takahashi sat down to discuss this unprecedented reaction and how they can move forward navigating it. How can they reshape Yu-Gi-Oh to become even bigger while still keeping his vision for the series intact? Well, it wouldn't be easy, but it would require a light reboot of what the series was in general. Once the remainder of the original and darker manga was coming to its end, the series would shift into a more easily accessible and focused setup that would make Duel Monsters the core theme all around. Yu-Gi-Oh would then turn into what we know as Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist in manga form, and from there the expansion of the series would be focused solely on the card game for a broad scope of physical real-world product. In Japan, as I mentioned earlier, the series just continued on in manga form with Volume 8 basically just switching into this new direction of the series, and the rest, well, is history. Kazuki Takahashi really poured so much of what he loved into Yu-Gi-Oh! And was able to make a version of his vision that puts all of his ideas, his hobbies, and all the stuff that he loves directly at the core of it all, while then getting to focus in on what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is for it to become one of the most well-known and successful franchises of all time, and within that, a full-on physical card game that is played and loved all around the world. I think that is an incredible legacy to leave. Going back to where Yu-Gi-Oh! Started doesn't just feel nostalgic for me, it feels inspiring. I love how messy one thing can feel while another feels completely fleshed out. A true artist's Goldilocks zone of creativity put to paper in a raw form before it would become refined and then properly defined. What are your thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 or just the overall 7 original volumes of the manga in general? Are you a big fan of what they had to offer or not really? Let me know all of that and more in the comments down below. Make sure to check out my bonus video where I discuss further about what was left in the manga that didn't get animated and more. It'll come out in the next day or two for channel members, so consider becoming one to support the channel and get exclusive bonus videos like that. Thank you to those who are already channel members. yours. Your support means the world to me. Also, make sure to check out and follow me on Spotify for audio-only versions of these videos for when you're on the go or on a long drive. Thank you so much for watching, but before you go, make sure to hit like on this video and to subscribe for more videos like this coming soon. But until then, I've been Jordan Fringe. Later.
Yeah, he's pretty season 0 accurate. That's pretty sick, huh?
He's kind of doing the Arthur meme.